A loud thud echoes through a dilapidated space. The sound was caused by a body hitting the door of a rundown house. In that moment of impact, while on the verge of collapse, memories of a previous life suddenly flooded back. The individual is Achabai, a 5-year-old orphan from the slums, lying on the floor and close to death from malnutrition. As she fades, a worried voice calls out her name. Rushing to her side are 2 other orphans, Oniai, a 15-year-old boy, and Nin, a 13-year-old girl. They look down at her with concern, asking if she's all right after the loud noise from hitting her head. Now sitting up with Nin's support, Achabai insists that she's all right. Nin questions if she's forcing herself, but Achabai simply states that she'll feel better after some rest. Oniai observes, seemingly accepting her explanation. He then tells Achabai to make sure she rests, as he and Nin are going out to find food for them all. With a quiet voice, Achabai thanks them. As the 2 older children head for the door, they tell her they're leaving. Nin urges Achabai not to push herself and promises to return as quickly as possible. Achabai tells them to be careful. She offers a small wave as the door closes, Nin's voice calling her name one last time from the other side. Left alone, Achabai stands quietly. She acknowledges to herself that her memory is hazy and that she needs to sort things out for the time being. Then, a profound realization strikes her. With a thoughtful expression, she concludes that she has been reincarnated into another world, finding the prospect fantastic. Her past memories are vague and unclear, and she can hardly remember anything specific about her former self. From those fragments, she recalls a normal life in a world governed by science, where magic didn't exist. Now, she lives in a slum, a full-fledged slum kid. In this new life, without a proper name of her own, she is simply called Achabai. She isn't entirely alone, however. She currently lives with 2 other children, Oniai and Nin, who have gone out to find something to eat. Recalling stories of people in similar situations, she wonders if she might have magic or special skills. Kneeling on the stone floor, she decides to confirm it, calling out for her status to appear. In response, a translucent panel materializes before her. It displays her status, name Achabai, race human, age 5 years old. Her condition is listed as malnourished. She has no magic, but possesses a level 1 skill called imagination creation, which can be used once per day. Her eyes widen in astonishment. It actually appeared. Her excitement quickly sours into disappointment. She'd hoped to learn her real name, but the status confirmed it was simply Achabai. Furthermore, she has no magic, something she had desperately wanted to be able to use. Her attention then shifts back to the status panel, focusing on the one unique attribute listed, the skill, imagination creation. She puzzles over its meaning. Could it be an ability to create whatever she imagines? The limitations are stark, however. It's only level 1 and can be used just once per day. She sat alone, contemplating the new skill. It can only be used once a day, so she had to be careful. Wondering what she wanted most at this very moment, she decided she might as well try making something. Her first thought was immediate and practical. Given that she was so poor she lived in a slum, the most logical thing to create would be money. A brilliant image of a high-denomination banknote filled her mind, but the idea collapsed as quickly as it formed. A crushing realization struck her. Having grown up in the slums, she had no money and had likely never even seen the currency of this world. She couldn't imagine it. Defeated by this simple oversight, she flopped on her back on the stone floor, completely at a loss for what to do. As she lay there, a more urgent need made itself known. The gnawing hunger reminded her of her constant malnourishment, and she decided that food, after all, was the right answer. This new direction sparked an idea, but it hit another snag. She had never eaten anything decent in this world. Lying on the floor, she wondered what kind of good food she could possibly create. Then, a solution emerged from the depths of her memory. She could imagine things from her past life. Her eyes widened with excitement as visions of curry, ramen, a hamburger, and a rice ball danced in her head. Faced with so many delicious possibilities, she resumed her thoughtful pose on the floor. It had to be something not just good, but also filling. Her thoughts then shifted to her friends. She couldn't forget Nin and Oniai. Since the skill could only be used once a day, she resolved to imagine something they could all eat a lot of together, picturing how happy they would be. With her purpose clear, all hesitation vanished. She sat up sharply, determination hardening her expression. Her decision was made. She focuses her will, activating imagination creation. A memory from her past life surfaces, a 5-kilogram bag of no-rinse kashihikari rice. A brilliant light fills the room, and the bag materializes before her. Overcome with joy, she imagines how delicious it will taste. The flash of light catches the attention of Nin and Oniai as they return. Standing in the doorway, Nin calls out, welcoming Achabai back and remarking on how fast she was. Alerted, Achabai turns towards them with a start. Before she can speak, Nin rushes forward, enveloping her in a tight, worried hug. She peppers Achabai with questions, asking if she's truly well, if her head no longer hurts, and if she felt lonely while they were gone. She continues, confessing that she couldn't stop worrying the entire time she was out searching for wild plants. Achabai, her face squished by the embrace, happily reassures Nin that she's perfectly fine. Oniai watches the scene unfold from a distance. Having calmed her friend, Achabai proudly gestures to the large sack on the floor. She announces that it's a food called rice. Oniai and Nin stare, their expressions a mixture of shock and utter confusion. Her friends examine the strange object. Nin questions if it's really food, while Oniai seems more perplexed by the bag itself. Achabai clarifies that the food is the substance contained within the sack. Oniai presses for an answer, asking how she managed to get it. Achabai simply repeats the name of the food, rice. The term is clearly unfamiliar to both of them. She beams, her face alight with pride, and makes a grand announcement. She used her skill to create it. In the background, Oniai and Nin are rendered speechless by the revelation. Her declaration leaves them stunned into silence. Oniai can only manage a confused sound, while Nin struggles to form a sentence. Puffing out her chest, Achabai confirms that she has, indeed, learned a skill. The shock finally gives way to elation for Nin. She pulls Achabai into another tight hug, exclaiming over and over how amazing she is for using a skill to make something appear. Achabai laughs, basking in her friend's praise, while Oniai looks on, still trying to comprehend what has happened. She looked up to see tears welling in Nin's eyes and asked if she was crying. Nin quickly wiped them away, dismissing the concern by explaining it was nothing, just a memory from the past that had surfaced. Oniai, however, was focused on a more immediate matter. He eagerly declared that if it was food, they should hurry up and eat it, asking how they were supposed to prepare it. Achabai hesitated, trying to formulate an explanation. She then began to detail the process, visualizing the necessary components: a pot, water, and the rice. She explained that they needed to put the rice inside the pot with water and then watch over it until the water completely disappeared, which would result in fluffy, sweet rice. Nin readily agreed, deciding they should get the cooking done and confirming they would need water and a pot. Full of energy, Oniai announced that he would prepare the fire. As he went to do so, Nin took on her task. She held her hands forward, and a glowing sphere of pure water materialized between her palms. Oniai, in turn, focused his own energy. He clasped his hands together in concentration before standing over a small pile of kindling, ready to begin. Watching them, Achabai reflected on their abilities. Her memories from a previous life had returned, and she now understood that Nin could use water magic while Oniai could use fire magic. A pang of jealousy struck her. She thought how wonderful it must be to use magic, wishing she could become a magical girl herself. Their combined efforts brought a pot to a rolling boil over the flames. As they watched, one of them asked what a spell was, receiving the simple answer that it was similar to a little trickle. Soon, a wonderful aroma began to fill the air. Nin clasped her hands, remarking on how good it smelled. Oniai, his mouth watering, impatiently asked if they could eat it already. She, however, held up a hand, telling him not to rush. With intense focus and a bit of drool of her own, she promised she would make him eat the best rice. Her sudden seriousness left Oniai confused, wondering what had come over her. She presented her creation, 3 steaming bowls of what she called koshikran rice, each portion garnished with wild plants. Her companions, Oniai and Nin, stared at the meal, their anticipation palpable as they swallowed hard, steam rising before their faces. Without another moment of hesitation, they each took a bite. The flavor was a revelation. Oniai, wide-eyed, could only ask what it was before declaring it unbelievably delicious. Nin agreed, marveling that for her first time eating it, the sweetness was incredible. Their praise brought tears to Achabai's eyes. Overcome with emotion, she declared that rice was the best and that they absolutely had to spread this discovery to the world. Her friend were eager for more. Oniai immediately asked for another serving, and Nin shyly requested just a bit more. Achabai happily obliged, assuring them she had made plenty for everyone. Soon after, all 3 were completely satisfied. Nin hugged a very full Achabai, while Oniai patted his stomach with a blissful expression. Oniai gratefully thanked Achabai, admitting it was the first time in a long while he'd been able to eat his fill. Nin, equally happy, added her own thanks for the delicious meal. Their gratitude made Achabai giggle. She returned the thanks, reminding them it was only possible because of the wild plants they had gathered. Her words brought warm, gentle smiles to Oniai and Nin's faces. Achabai looks up with a gentle, grateful smile, her eyes shimmering. She feels that she should be the one thanking her friends. She holds their hands, reflecting on their kindness. Even though it's difficult for children to survive in the slum, and despite her being a hindrance at first, Oniai and Nin had still taken her in and cared for her. This realization brings a chilling thought. If they remain in the slums, the 3 of them will inevitably be in danger. Her memories from a past life surface, providing a grim understanding. She recalls the poor sanitation of the slums, a place where she was malnourished and couldn't eat properly. The image of a rat scurrying through the filth solidifies her fear. In such conditions, she knows it wouldn't be strange if any of them fell ill at any moment. Their very survival is uncertain. A jolt of panic and resolve strikes her. Since she possesses memories of a past life, she must make full use of them. A single, urgent thought dominates her mind. They have to escape this place, somehow. Her gaze falls upon her own hand, which seems to glow with latent power. She realizes she can use the knowledge from her previous life combined with her skill, imagination creation, to rise above the slums. Her mind immediately focuses on the first, most critical step. Before anything else, they need money. To achieve that, she must first learn about the currency of this world. She clenches her small fist, her body tense with determination. I need to succeed, she thinks, startling Nin, who can only offer a slightly bewildered "alright." With a bright, confident expression, Achabai throws her hand forward, imagining all the things she can bring into existence. She makes a vow. With her skill, imagination creation, she will make Nin and Oniai happy. She presented her creation to her friends with a flourish. Nin, kneeling before her, clasped her hands together and gushed about how cute Achabai-chan was. Oniai, however, looked on with a puzzled expression, asking if this was some kind of new game she had invented. The next day, with renewed determination and a mouth full of food, the young girl known as Achabai turns to her companions with a single, pressing question. How can she earn money? Her query prompts a moment of thought. Oniai repeats the word, money, as if considering its weight, while Nin thoughtfully brings a finger to her chin, pondering the possibilities. Nin is the first to offer a solution, suggesting they could sell any valuable items they might find in a store. Oniai, however, sighs at the idea, asking why they can't simply get a job. He immediately answers his own question with his somber expression, explaining the harsh reality that people from the slum are not permitted to hold proper jobs due to widespread discrimination. Achabai absorbs this grim fact. She now understands that since formal work is forbidden, their only recourse is to sell things to shops. Curious, she asks what kinds of things are typically bought and sold. Nin suggests foraged goods like medicinal herbs, nuts, or fruits, while Oniai adds that meat from hunted rabbits and mice can be sold to butchers. Her mind begins to churn with this information. Hunting and gathering are their established options, but she starts to wonder what she could create through her own imagination. She considers the classic ways to make money, thinking of valuable commodities like salt, spices, and sweets, all while savoring the simple taste of her rice. An idea sparks. She realizes she must create a common product, something that won't raise suspicion about its origins and fits within the scope of what a child from the slums could plausibly acquire. With a flash of insight, she activates her ability, imagination creation. In her hands materializes a jar of blended honey, complete with a label indicating a weight of 1,200 grams and a price of 4,800 yen. Oniai stared, utterly surprised by what she had made. Nin, looking at the newly materialized object, confirmed her suspicion, asking Achabai if this was the result of her skill. Before them sat a pristine glass jar filled with a golden liquid, a label with a bee affixed to the front. Oniai, perplexed, wondered aloud about the transparent container itself, while Nin asked what was inside. Achabai proudly declared that it was honey inside a glass container. The revelation stunned her friends. Oniai exclaimed in amazement at the sight of glass, while Nin's eyes sparkled as she recognized the sweet substance. Her eyes shining with purpose, a symbol for money appearing in one, Achabai announced her plan. They would sell this and make some money. Nin asked for clarification, wondering if they intended to sell it just as it was. She was taken aback by their hesitation, demanding to know why not. Oniai, with a serious expression, advised against it. He and Nin stood together, a shared look of concern on their faces. He elaborated on his concern, pointing out that neither of them had ever seen such a magnificent, perfectly crafted glass bottle before. Nin agreed, holding the jar carefully. She voiced her fear that the bottle itself might bring them danger. If they, as children from the slum, were to bring such a fine item to a store, she reasoned, the staff would likely become suspicious and assume it was stolen. She turned to Achabai and apologized, knowing the effort the young girl put into creating it. The explanation sank in for Achabai, who hung her head in disappointment. She finally understood. In this world, glass is a precious commodity. Her spirits lifted almost immediately. However, Oniai, tapping his chin thoughtfully, proposed a solution. What if they transferred the honey into a different container, divided it into smaller portions, and then sold it? Nin considered the idea, thinking it might just work. He then added a crucial warning, stressing that they must be careful not to go to the wrong kind of store. The cryptic advice left Achabai looking puzzled. She tilted her head, puzzled by the warning. From just behind, Nin clarified that some stores were kind to them, and others were not. This distinction dictated their approach. Oniai explained that if slum children like them used the front entrance, they would be seen as a nuisance by the townspeople. And so, they arrived at the back door of Joshua's general store. Achabai quietly asked if this was a friendly store. Nin confirmed with a confident nod that it was. The shop even gave them leftovers sometimes. Just then, the door opened to reveal the owner, a young woman named Jane. She looked down at them curiously, asking what was the matter. Faced with the shopkeeper, Nin grew flustered. Oniai noticed her sudden anxiety, but she pushed through it, stammering an unusual request. She wanted to ask Jane to purchase something from them. She presented their small container, nervously explaining that they had brought sweet honey. Jane's eyes widened in surprise, her interest piqued by their amazing offer. The shopkeeper asked to inspect the honey, requesting a small taste to judge its quality. Nin quickly agreed, and Jane dipped a finger into the container, drawing out a single, glistening drop. After tasting it, her expression brightened. She declared it to be excellent honey, with no unpleasant taste or appearance, and asked if it was all right for her to buy it. Overjoyed, Neen quickly agreed, remembering to mention the container. Jane readily assured her that she would, of course, give the container back. She explained that she would first transfer the honey to another container and weigh it. As the shopkeeper went about her work, Achabai looked up at Neen, remarking on how kind the woman was. Neen managed a faint agreement before the accumulated stress of the negotiation overwhelmed her, and she slumped forward, utterly spent. She and Oniai explained their past struggles to the shopkeeper, Jane, who has just returned. Neen recounts how other merchants normally refuse to even listen to them, and Oniai adds that even when they do, their goods are never weighed properly. In stark contrast to their past experiences, Jane kindly details the transaction. She explains that the honey weighed approximately 98 grams, and, after consulting her husband, she can offer them a rate of 2 riras per gram. From her hiding spot, Achabai processes this new information, realizing the local currency is called ru. She then presents the final offer, a total of 196 riras. The 2 older children stare back, momentarily speechless at the sum. Their silence breaks into a wave of astonishment. Both Oniai and Neen exclaim in disbelief, questioning if such a generous payment is truly acceptable. Overwhelmed with gratitude, they thank the shopkeeper profusely. Though Achabai doesn't yet grasp the value of the currency, she understands from her friends' ecstatic reactions that the sale was a great success. The reality of their achievement sinks in for the little girl. With symbols for currency gleaming in her eyes, she celebrates the simple, powerful fact: they finally have money. Later, enjoying a rare treat, Neen and Oniai express their heartfelt gratitude. They both thank Achabai-chan, acknowledging that it was her effort that allowed them to eat meat. Their meal is simple but precious. Rice from the night before, accompanied by a piece of field mouse's meat, a luxury that cost them 3 riras. As she happily eats, Achabai reflects that she learned about the food from a slum stall earlier that day. She then turns to her friends, thanking them in turn for handling the difficult negotiations. She continues to process the day's events, finally establishing a baseline for the local economy. 1 ru, she determines, is equal to 1 small copper coin, the price of a palm-sized loaf of black bread. Drawing on her past memories, she equates this value to roughly $1, or between 120 and 140 yen. She is still processing the sale, mentally converting the sum into a currency from her past life. The realization strikes her with force. The honey was sold for the equivalent of about 20,000 yen. This staggering value explains the utter shock on her friends' faces. Neen and Oniai exclaim that it was an incredibly high price, which makes their surprise perfectly understandable. To better grasp their newfound wealth, she had asked them to explain the local currency. She now understood the system. A standard copper coin is worth 1 ruru, a large copper coin is 10 ruru, and a small silver coin is worth 100 ruru. This knowledge, she realizes with a determined glint in her eyes, is more than just currency conversion. It represents a tangible first step towards escaping the slums. As they enjoy the fruits of their labor, Neen and Oniai savor the taste of the meat they purchased. They both agree it's delicious, remarking that it has been a very long time since they last ate any. While they eat with relish, Achabai's experience is more complicated. She knows her malnourished body needs the protein, but with memories of her past life returning, she feels a deep hesitation about eating dried field mouse meat. She chews the meat slowly, her expression thoughtful and wide-eyed as she processes the unfamiliar taste. Her strange, silent reaction prompts Oniai to ask with concern if the dried meat has gone bad. But it's not spoiled at all. A realization dawns on her. The saltiness of the dried field mouse meat and the sweetness of the rice combine perfectly, enhancing the overall flavor. As Oniai asks what's wrong, she can only think of how delicious it is. The next morning, while eating the black bread they bought for 1 ruru, she gathers the others. Chewing thoughtfully, she calls out to Neen and Oniai, announcing that she has something important to discuss with them. She begins with a serious declaration, stating that her idea concerns their future and what will happen if things continue as they are. Her somber tone immediately gets the attention of Neen and Oniai, who ask her what's wrong. Taking a determined bite of her food, she states with grim certainty that at their current rate, they will never be able to escape their life in the slums. Her stark assessment leaves Oniai and Neen confused, prompting them to ask how they could possibly improve their situation. Achabai counters that they need to set a goal and start by improving their lives little by little. To put it bluntly, she announces with sudden, startling intensity, their very first step must be to clean themselves. The directness of the suggestion catches Neen completely by surprise. The statement strikes Oniai and Neen like a physical blow. A shared, horrified realization washes over them as they finally confront the truth. They are filthy. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, both of them stammer apologies, admitting that what she said is true. Seeing their reaction, Achabai quickly apologizes for being so direct. She then explains her reasoning. Because of their current appearance, they can't even enter shops in town. However, she argues, if they are clean and presentable, they will be treated like proper customers and welcomed inside. The simple logic resonates with Nin, whose face lights up with understanding. She praises Achabai for being so smart and enthusiastically agrees that they must start by cleaning themselves. Oniai, ever the pragmatist, asks for the specific details of how they are supposed to get clean. Achabai holds up 2 fingers and lays out her plan: wash their bodies every day and wash their clothes often. Her plan immediately hits a practical obstacle. Nin points out that if they wash their only set of clothes, they will have nothing to wear. Achabai confidently replies that this is precisely why they will use the money they earned the day before. She declares the first step of her plan with bright-eyed determination. They will use their money to buy normal clothes and dress properly. Following through, they visit a stall in the slum. Nin is immediately delighted, exclaiming how cute her new dress is. Oniai, however, feels a strange sense of unease in his new outfit. The total cost for all 3 sets of clothing is 150 riru. Achabai internally reflects on the purchase. She considers 150 riru, which she equates to about 4,000 yen from her past life, to be a bit pricey for second-hand clothes, but seeing how nice they look makes her happy. Beaming, she proclaims that with these new clothes, all they need to do is wash their bodies and fix their hair, and they will no longer look like slum dwellers. While Nin hums contentedly, clearly happy with her new look, Achabai notices Oniai fidgeting. She asks him what's wrong, and he admits to feeling uneasy because his new clothes feel so tight. His discomfort, however, is far deeper. The shock of spending so much money at once makes his heart pound and his vision spin. He internally panics, questioning if they made the right choice. Achabai calmly notes that his reaction is just the common anxiety that follows a large purchase. She reassures him that it's all right, framing the expense as a necessary investment in their future. Oniai listens, silently processing that 150 riru was indeed a massive sum for children like them. Looking at him with renewed conviction, Achabai reaffirms their shared purpose, declaring that they will escape the slums together. Her words finally break through his anxiety. He gently places a hand on her head, agreeing with her. He understands now that in order to escape, he must be willing to take these necessary steps forward. A warm, genuine smile spreads across his face as he thanks Achabai for her foresight. He promises that he, too, will now do his best. With their new clothes secured, Achabai focused on the next crucial step. She knew she had to create something even more important today. Since her creation skill could only be used once per day, she decided to postpone making soap until the following day. Concentrating, she activated her ability, and with a flash of light, a large object materialized before them, a bathtub. The creation was a sizable model, one that would have cost a significant amount of money to purchase. Oniai and Nin stared in bewilderment at the object that had suddenly appeared. He remarked on its impressive size, while she simply asked what it was. She proudly declared it to be a bathtub. Achabai then explained her plan. Nin would fill it with water using her magic, and Oniai would then heat it with his, creating the perfect hot bath for them all. With renewed excitement, she urged them to get ready to wash all the dirt from their bodies. Oniai readily agreed, and Nin confirmed she would do her part. After Nin and Oniai combined their magic, the tub was filled with perfectly warm water. Achabai tested it, confirming the temperature was just right, and cheerfully invited the others to get in. Oniai and Nin, however, hesitated. He suddenly announced that he would go out for a while, and a blushing Nin quickly agreed. A confused Achabai simply asked them why they were leaving. Her innocent suggestion that they all bathe together sent a jolt through both Oniai and Nin, whose faces flushed bright red in shock and embarrassment. Overcome with embarrassment, he turned and fled, stammering that he would take his bath later and that they should take their time. With the bathing arrangements now settled, Nin, looking slightly dazed with swirling eyes, announces that it's time for them to take a bath. A somewhat flustered Achabai looks up at her and meekly agrees. Nin then gently explains that perhaps Achabai is too young to understand, but only the girls can bathe together. As Achabai listens, recognizing the obviousness of the statement, Nin grows flustered, her hands clasped nervously as she internally questions why she even said that. The young girl, in turn, begins to ponder her own recent behavior. She questions if her thoughts are being influenced by her new, childlike body. With a silent apology to the boys, she makes a mental note to be more careful from now on. A knock sounds at the door of a town shop. The shopkeeper, Jane, calls out that she's coming as a voice from outside announces they've arrived to sell something. Upon opening the door, Jane is taken aback. The 3 children, Oniai, Nin, and Achabai, stand before her, looking completely different in clean, respectable clothes. Nin smiles brightly, explaining with a cheerful laugh that they made an effort to clean themselves up. Achabai proudly elaborates, revealing that she used her imagination creation skill that morning to make a bar of plant soap. She explains it worked perfectly, allowing them to wash both their bodies and their clothes. Impressed, Jane tells them the new look suits them all and encourages them, saying that good things will come if they continue to present themselves this way. The children thank her profusely. Achabai then presents their item for sale, a jar of Ryra's honey, which she notes is a 102-gram purchase. With a hopeful expression, she asks the crucial question. Now that they're all cleaned up, can they finally come inside the store? Jane agrees without hesitation, merely asking that they not inconvenience other customers. The three children are overjoyed, thanking her enthusiastically. Achabai celebrates their success. This is another major step forward in their plan to escape the slums. She resolves that once they get more honey, they will come back to sell again. Their shopping for the day is a success. From a slum stall, they purchase 3 pairs of used shoes for 120 riras. They also buy 3 portions of dried meat and 3 loaves of black bread for 126 riras, leaving them with a balance of 118 riras. Now dressed in new, clean clothes, the 3 children assess their situation. Oni-ai remarks that the shoes were quite expensive, but Neen counters that it was a necessary expense for their plan. Achabai listens quietly, a small, content smile on her face. She turns to her friends, seeking confirmation. With their new appearance, she states that they have now met the bare minimum requirements for grooming and begins to consider their next move. They both agree. Achabai summarizes their progress, noting that not only are they cleaner, but they have also managed to earn a little bit of money. Her eyes sparkle with a hopeful idea. She wonders aloud if they could use their newfound funds to finally stay at an inn in the town. The suggestion is immediately dismissed. Oni-ai states plainly that it's not possible, his serious expression stopping her excitement cold. Achabai is visibly shocked by the firm rejection. Neen gently explains the harsh reality. They're not allowed to stay in an inn because they lack any form of identification. She clarifies that without a citizenship card or a guild membership card, they will be ignored. When Achabai asks about a guild card, Neen adds that one needs citizenship to even acquire a citizen card, trapping them in a difficult cycle. Achabai's shoulders slump in disappointment. Oni-ai adds another barrier to their progress, mentioning that joining the merchant guild requires a recommendation from a high-ranking person, an impossible requirement for them. Just then, Neen remembers something. She tells the others she has heard that the Hunters Guild can be joined without any restrictions. Achabai's face lights up instantly, her hope renewed as she asks if it's really true. The excitement quickly gives way to a grim realization for Achabai. She laments that it always comes down to money, understanding that nothing can be started without it. Oni-ai confirms her suspicion, recalling that there is indeed a registration fee. Oni-ai, however, sees a path forward. He proposes a plan. They will go to the Hunters Guild the next day to sell their honey and inquire about joining. Neen agrees that they should at least try asking, and the group find a new resolve. As the older children discuss their plans, Oni-ai brought up the final details concerning the honey they would sell the next day. The following morning, the 3 of them arrived, standing before the entrance to Joshua's general store. Standing before the main entrance, a wave of apprehension washed over them. Neen confessed that she was nervous about going in through the front, as they always use the back door. Oni-ai admitted she was right, his own anxiety palpable. Taking the lead despite her fear, she cautiously pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. She called out a tentative hello, announcing their wish to sell something. From within the shop, a familiar, friendly voice responded. Jane, the shopkeeper's wife, greeted them with a warm welcome. Her welcoming tone eased their tension slightly. The children stepped fully inside, bowing politely as Oni-ai greeted Jane and explained that they had brought more honey. Jane smiled, asking if this was the honey they had collected since their last visit. From behind her siblings, the small girl shyly confirmed that it was. Just then, a man emerged from the back of the store. With a kind smile, he greeted them and asked if they were the children from the slums who had been supplying them with honey. He introduced himself as Joshua, the owner. He looked them over, remarking that they didn't look like they were from the slum, noting how clean they appeared. The children exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to respond. Putting them at ease, he formally introduced himself again as Joshua, the owner of the store, and gestured to his wife, Jane. He welcomed them properly, expressing his pleasure in finally meeting them all. He explains with a kind smile that his curiosity was piqued because the honey they brought was so good, adding that he always welcomes customers who bring benefits to his store. She observes him, thinking to herself that despite knowing they were from the slums, he treats them with respect. She concludes that he seems to be a genuinely nice person. Her resolve hardened, she gives a confident wink as she reaches into her small bag, while Oni-ai watches with a look of slight confusion. From the bag, she produces a pristine, sparkling jar, clearly labeled with the image of a bee. His eyes widen in utter shock as he holds the object, exclaiming in disbelief as he recognizes the material. It's glass. She confirms his unspoken question, explaining that they intend to sell the entire container, along with the honey they've been bringing for sale. Her companions, however, do not share her calm. Neen gasps, noting that the container must be extremely rare, while Oni-ai nervously questions if it's truly okay to do this, worrying about the potential danger. He presses the point, his mind racing with a critical question. Aren't people going to ask where a rare item like this came from? Neen voices the fear gripping them both, exclaiming that if anyone else discovers that the tiny, cute Achabai can create such amazing things, she will definitely be kidnapped. Oni-ai agrees from the side. She meets their worried gazes with a bright, confident smile, telling them to rest assured. She declares that she has a special secret up her sleeve. She confidently confirms her friend's disbelief with a cheerful yes, her plans seemingly in motion. Her certainty sways her friends. Nin agrees to trust her judgment, and Oniai concurs, acknowledging that Achabai tends to think things through carefully. With their support secured, her attention snaps back to the shopkeepers. Joshua, his eyes wide with astonishment, asks if she intends to sell him the entire jar. Achabai immediately presses her advantage, asking how much he is willing to pay for it. His initial excitement hardens into a serious inquiry. He leans forward, demanding to know where on earth they could have possibly found such an item, his sudden intensity startling the three children. He waits for an answer, the air thick with tension. Oniai and Nin exchange worried looks, realizing the moment of truth has arrived and wondering how Achabai will respond to the direct accusation. She responds not with words, but with a dramatic pose, puffing out her chest and adopting a comically stern expression. She declares that she cannot possibly reveal the secrets of her business. This absurd declaration leaves Oniai and Nin utterly horrified, their faces frozen in shock. Their minds race in panic. Nin realizes with dread that this must have been the secret plan Achabai mentioned, one that only makes them look more suspicious. Oniai laments that despite her cleverness, he forgot she is still just a toddler. Springing into action to cover for her, they frantically try to reassure the shopkeeper. They stammer that while they cannot explain the details, the jar is definitely not stolen. Oniai swears it on the name of the angel, and Nin quickly adds her own oath. The children's panicked and earnest denials completely break the tension. Both Joshua and Jane erupt into warm, hearty laughter. His amusement leaves Oniai and Nin completely puzzled, their faces frozen in expressions of wide-eyed confusion. He reassures them with a kind smile, apologizing for laughing. He explains that he doesn't believe they are lying, reasoning that if the item were stolen, they wouldn't be trying to sell it so openly. He continues, explaining that his many years in business have given him a good eye for people. Furthermore, he notes that he has never seen such transparent glass in the area, highlighting the jar's exceptional quality. His sharp deduction stuns the older children. Oniai, flustered, exclaims that his reasoning is true in a way, and hastily concludes that the jar must have something to do with Achabai's magic. At the mention of her abilities, Achabai's expression hardens. As her friends call her name in alarm, she puffs out her chest and declares with great seriousness that she cannot reveal the secrets of her business. Her professional posturing clearly amuses him. He smiles and agrees to her terms, stating that he will refrain from asking for more information and will simply evaluate the item. He then turns to Jane, asking for her assistance. He informs the children that because it is a valuable item, the appraisal may take some time and asks them to wait, which they gratefully accept. As the shopkeepers step away, Achabai celebrates her cleverness, boasting that her plan to say something smug worked. Oniai and Nin, however, simply let out a sigh of relief, with Oniai admitting how scared he was. Nin looks at Achabai with astonishment, admitting she never thought the little girl could think so far ahead. Oniai, unconvinced, mutters that it was probably just a coincidence. A short while later, Joshua returns, apologizing for the wait. He announces that he will purchase the honey inside at the same rate as before, 2 reals per 16 units. He then turned his attention to the container. While the children celebrated the generous offer for the honey, with Nin declaring that 2,002 rairas for 1,001 grams sounded great, Joshua had a separate proposal for the jar. With a warm smile and a single finger raised, he made his offer, 10,000 rairas for the jar alone. The number struck them like a physical blow. Oniai, Nin, and Achabai stared, wide-eyed and sweating, unable to process the sum. 10,000 rairas. The amount echoed in their minds, a figure beyond comprehension. Her mind, still reeling, began a frantic calculation based on memories from her past life. She reasoned that if 1 riru was roughly equivalent to $1 from her original world, then 10,000 rairas was $10,000. The final conversion solidified the staggering reality. It was an amount somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million yen. The sheer scale of the wealth was almost impossible to grasp. Her companions were equally overwhelmed. Oniai and Nin stammered, questioning if Joshua was truly sure he could spend such a huge amount of money. Achabai, frozen, could only think of the immense value being placed on what seemed to be just a glass container. But it was no ordinary container. The glass was perfectly transparent and smooth, a quality of craftsmanship none of them had ever witnessed. It even possessed a metal lid that sealed it perfectly. Joshua explained his valuation, noting that for an item of such quality, it wouldn't be surprising if it were worth a great deal more. He presented his offer as the best his particular store could manage and asked for their decision. The transaction was finalized. The total purchase came to 12,002 rairas, 10,000 for the glass container, and 2,002 for the 1,001 grams of honey. With the deal concluded, the 3 children stood outside the shop, completely stunned into silence by the sudden, life-altering fortune they now possessed. She watches as Oniai trembles, clutching the money and admitting he's terrified to be holding such a large sum. Nin, standing beside him, agrees that the whole situation is indeed surprising. He explains his fear stems from the fact that they are just children, and the money is directly related to Achabai's skill. The little girl shudders, internally calculating the amount to be over 1 million yen in her previous world's currency, a staggering sum to be carrying. He then proposes a solution, They should simply treat her ability as a form of magic, just as Joshua had suggested. Both Nin and Achabai look at him, puzzled by what he means. He clarifies his plan, suggesting they create a story that their power is a magical connection between the three of them, an ability they can only use when they are all together. Nin's face lights up in understanding. She exclaims that it's a brilliant idea, as it would prevent Achabai from being singled out and targeted for her unique skill. Achabai beams with excitement, praising Oniai for being so smart. He smiles, pleased with himself, but adds a note of caution. This is a story to be used only when they have no other choice. With a plan in place and the money secured, Oniai considers their next move. He declares their destination, the Hunter Guild. Nin and Achabai cheer in enthusiastic agreement, ready for the next step. As they prepare to leave, she quietly wonders about the cost of the Hunter Guild's registration fee, hoping that their newfound wealth will be sufficient. With a look of firm resolve, she sets her sights on their goal, the Hunters Guild. Her mind, however, was fixated on a very specific aspect of their destination. As she considered the guild, she pictured the beautiful lady who must surely work at the reception desk, her eyes sparkling with anticipation as she silently pleaded for the woman to wait for her. Meanwhile, at that very reception desk, a young woman with a pleasant smile had a far more mundane thought cross her mind. She simply wanted to drink some alcohol. The destination is a large, well-maintained building with timber framing, the Hunters Guild. Inside, several individuals are gathered, looking over a large notice board. Inside, the three children stand together, looking uncertain. Oniai admits that they entered, but seems hesitant to continue. Nin quietly wonders where they should go now. The thought spurs Achabai into a state of high alert. She recalls hearing that guilds are places where one can easily get involved in trouble, picturing a menacing, scarred figure. A fierce determination fills her. She must protect Nin and Oniai. Her sudden intensity catches Oniai's attention. He misinterprets her focused expression, asking if this is some new game she's devised. Achabai, however, remains silent and resolute. Her gaze then falls upon a young woman at the counter. A realization dawns on Achabai, drawn from the memories of her past life. This is a classic archetype, the beautiful lady of the guild, a staple in reincarnation stories. The woman approaches them with a warm, welcoming smile. She asks if this is their first time visiting the Hunters Guild. Oniai, slightly flustered, stammers out a confirmation. She correctly deduces their purpose, asking if they wish to register as new members. Oniai affirms this, but confesses that they are unsure of the procedure. The receptionist kindly offers to guide them, explaining that she is just returning from break. Her eyes land on the smallest of the group as she remarks what a cute little girl Achabai is. The young girl snaps to attention, replying with a formal, "Yes, ma'am." The simple compliment strikes Achabai with unexpected force, leaving her wide-eyed and utterly starstruck. Her stunned silence prompts Oniai to ask what is wrong. Lost in her own world, Achabai is overwhelmed by a single, powerful thought. A beautiful lady just called her cute. The guild receptionist offers a warm, professional smile, placing a hand to her chest. She introduces herself as Irene and formally welcomes the three children. In response to her greeting, the older children state that they will be in her care. As Irene prepares to begin her explanation, it becomes apparent that the smallest child is standing on a stool just to see over the tall counter. Irene gives a small, amused smile, apologizing for only just noticing the girl's effort. As Nin smiles warmly, Achabai seems to vibrate with excitement, almost levitating off the stool. The little girl's mind is utterly captivated. To her, this woman is not only beautiful, but also incredibly kind. Having collected themselves, the children offer a polite and heartfelt thank you. Irene simply smiles back, acknowledging their gratitude before proceeding. She then explains the rules of the Hunters Guild. Anyone over the age of 12 is eligible to register. New members begin at level 1 and can advance up to the highest rank, level 5, as their contributions to the guild increase. Her words about the age requirement land with a heavy thud. The realization that one must be over 12 years old sends a shockwave through Achabai, whose eyes widen in disbelief and horror. Noticing her reaction, Irene asks if the little one plans to register too. The question triggers a full-blown panic in Achabai's mind. She's the only one without an ID, the only one who can escape the slums. She is suddenly in a desperate pinch. Seeing the child's distress, Irene calmly raises a finger to reassure her. She explains that those under 12 can still register, though it will be a provisional registration. Hope flickers in Achabai's eyes as she quietly questions the term. Irene clarifies that provisional members are treated like apprentices. There are restrictions. They cannot take on requests by themselves and will remain in the first class until they reach the age of 12. The three children listen intently to the conditions. She breathes a sigh of relief, thankful that she can still register despite her age. Beside her, Nin turns to the receptionist and asks about the cost. The receptionist, Irene, explains the fees. With a citizenship card, it is 100 ryris, but without one, the cost jumps to 500 ryris. The three children react with shock at the high price, which Nin speculates is meant to deter people from easily acquiring identification. Achabai quickly calculates the total in her head. Since none of them possess citizenship cards, the fee for all three will be 1,500 ryris. She mentally converts this to a currency from her past life, grimacing as she realizes just how expensive that is. Despite the daunting cost, her expression suddenly shifts to one of bright, determined confidence. She puffs out her cheeks and declares that it's perfectly all right. She then proudly announces the total sum of their savings, 12,002 rairas, plus some honey. A smug, knowing look crosses her face as she reflects on a fundamental truth she's come to understand. One can't start anything without money. With their financial security confirmed, Oni speaks up, and the three children exchange determined nods, their decision made. In unison, they turn back to the receptionist and formally request to register all three of them. The receptionist agrees, sliding a registration form across the counter and instructing them to fill in the necessary information. She then offers the services of a substitute writer, but Neen quickly interjects, politely declining the assistance and confirming they can handle it themselves. She confidently declared that she would handle the writing for all of them, her expression bright with determination. This was a relief for Achabai, who internally admitted a significant problem. Despite retaining memories from a previous life and understanding some Japanese and English, she was completely illiterate in the language of this new world. Her companions, however, were in different situations. Neen appeared to have received a proper education, as her literacy skills were flawless. Oni, on the other hand, could only manage to write his own name, a limitation that steeled his resolve to learn more. This brought up a crucial detail for the registration. Both Neen and Oni possessed proper names. Neen's true name was revealed to be Seal, and she was 13 years old. Oni was actually named Marco, and at 15, he was the eldest of the group. This revelation highlighted Achabai's own uncertain origins. She recalled that she had been abandoned in the slums approximately 2 years prior, and, unlike the others, did not even know if she possessed a real name. Putting the matter of names aside, Seal turned her attention to another section of the form. She proposed that they should list their most proficient magic as a special skill to make a good impression. As Seal prepared to write, Achabai hesitantly asked if she could make a request. Marco readily agreed with the plan. Seal then took charge, stating she would list fire magic for Marco and water magic for herself, confidently noting their respective strengths. She then leaned in and whispered to Achabai, promising not to write down her particular skill, acknowledging that it should remain a secret. With a grateful smile, Achabai thanked her. With the details decided, the process of filling out their names and special skills on the registration form proceeded without any further issues, and the three children looked on with satisfaction. She contemplates the concept of having a name, a small, hopeful smile gracing her features. The hopeful thought instantly curdles into panic as a stark realization hits her. She doesn't have a name. What is she supposed to do? She turns to Seal, trembling with anxiety. She explains that everyone calls her Achabai precisely because she lacks a proper name, and frets that the guild won't accept such a nickname for official registration. The older girl, however, offers a bright, confident smile, reassuring the younger one that she would never do such a thing and to rest assured. Her words wash away the little girl's fear, replaced by a wave of relief. She begins to happily wonder what kind of cute name she might receive. As she daydreams, Seal cheerfully announces her decision, declaring that she has written down Amy as the little one's name. The declaration shatters her happy thoughts. Her face contorts in utter shock as she stares at Seal, momentarily speechless. Her silent gasp of disbelief seems to echo through the room, as both the guild receptionist and Marco stare with equally stunned expressions. Regaining her composure, the newly named Amy questions Seal, pointing out that she should have been asked for her opinion first. Seal simply smiles and explains that the name she chose also means friends. At this explanation, the little girl's protest melts away. Seeing Seal's happy expression, she decides that if it makes her happy, then the name is fine. Seal beams, pleased with the outcome. The guild receptionist smiles warmly, confirming their registration is complete. She thanks them for the fee and presents them with their official registration certificates. The three children accept their certificates, their eyes wide with awe and excitement as they hold the proof of their new status as hunters. Clutching the certificate tightly, determined to keep it safe, Amy turns back to the receptionist, announcing that she has a question. She explains that they would like to book a room and asks if the guild has any recommendations. The receptionist considers this, then suggests a dormitory and plaza for first-class hunters located just behind the guild building. Her suggestion of a dormitory and an open yard immediately captures the children's attention. Amy quickly asks about the cost. The receptionist explains that the large dormitory is rented out at a low price, intended as a relief measure for new hunters who don't earn much money. She clarifies the pricing. A large room costs 2 riru per person a day, but using the open yard is only 1 riru, provided they bring their own tent. Delighted, Amy thanks her and tells her they will go check it out. Following her directions, they arrive at the property. It is indeed a large building with a very spacious open yard. Marco peers over a line of bushes, surveying the expansive grounds before them. He joins the others, and they all stand together in the yard, finding it completely deserted. Seal points out that no one is there, prompting Marco to wonder if perhaps everyone is just staying inside the dorm. He observes the ground, noting that the open yard is bumpy and would be uncomfortable to sleep on, even if they pitched a tent. Despite his concern, Amy brightly declares that she thinks the open yard would be great. Marco, still weighing their options, asks which they should choose, while Seal expresses her surprise at Amy's preference. He elaborates on his reasoning, explaining that the dormitory is just one large room. If they were to stay there, the large container of rice in the bathtub Amy had created would surely attract unwanted attention. He adds that he also wants to keep the other two children hidden. Understanding his logic, Amy has a sudden realization. She declares that the best course of action is to find a secluded, inconspicuous spot within the open yard where they won't be noticed. With a plan in mind, she darts away from them and into a patch of tall grass, her older siblings calling out her nickname in surprise. She peeks back out, proposing that the area behind the tall grass would be a perfect hiding spot. Marco confirms her intention to use the foliage for cover, and Seal enthusiastically agrees with a clever idea. Now that they have a location, a new problem presents itself. Amy considers that in addition to their daily necessities, they also need to transport the heavy container of rice and the large bathtub. A solution for transportation suddenly dawns on her. In a flash of light, her imagination creation skill manifests a new object, an aluminum folding rear car, complete with puncture-free tires. Her siblings stare in awe at the new creation. Seal asks what the silver-colored object is, while Marco marvels that it has wheels. As Amy begins to assemble it, she explains its function. With a final click, the pieces lock together, revealing a fully formed, sturdy cart. She watched as Marco stared at the newly created cart, his face flushing with awe. He stammered that it was both amazing and incredibly cool. Seeing his intense reaction, Amy asked what was wrong. A knowing look crossed her face as she realized the source of his fascination. She mused to herself that boys must have a particular fondness for things with plating, tires, and the ability to transform. Seal, however, was focused on practicality, cheerfully noting that they could fit all of their luggage in the cart. Amy was momentarily stunned by her sister's lack of a more dramatic reaction. In that moment, a new awareness dawned on her. A status update confirmed that her skill, imagination creation, had reached level 2, now allowing for 2 uses per day. The realization sent a jolt of pure joy through her, and she let out a triumphant cheer. Her sudden outburst startled Marco and Seal, who both turned to her in concern, asking what had happened. Beaming with excitement, she announced that her skill had reached level 2. She explained to her stunned siblings that this meant she could now use it twice a day. Her mind was already racing with the possibilities. She declared that since she could create one more thing today, she would make something livable for them. Her bold declaration was met with immediate praise. Seal exclaimed that Achabai-chan was amazing, and Marco enthusiastically agreed. Flustered by the compliments, Amy turned away with a shy but happy expression. Seal asked if there were any other changes, but Marco, energized by the news, announced a change of plans. He declared they should move in immediately and volunteered to pull the cool cart himself. Seal readily agreed to the new plan. And so, the young girl who had just changed their fortunes had a name, Amy. She stood still for a moment, a profound realization washing over her as Marco asked what was wrong. Internally, she affirmed it. Her name had changed. It was now Amy. That had been decided. With their new identities taking root, they proceeded to the guild. Irene, the receptionist, cheerfully informed them that the open yard fee would be 3 ryras for the 3 of them. To avoid drawing attention, they moved their belongings on the cart, hiding everything under a large, ragged cloth. After paying the fee, they arrived at their new plot of land. Before them stretched a wild, untamed space, completely overgrown with a dense wall of tall weeds. Seal, ever practical, suggested a plan. They should leave the tall weeds at the front to act as a screen, then create a path and clear an open space behind them. Both Amy and Marco jumped in enthusiastic agreement. A short while later, Marco wiped sweat from his brow, having cleared a sizable area. He asked if the space was large enough. Seal then turned to Amy, inquiring what they were going to do from this point on. She didn't answer. Seal called out her name, but Amy remained still, facing the cleared ground. Marco looked over, his expression shifting to one of concern. Amy stood alone, muttering in frustration. She couldn't make this one. It was no use. The creation she had envisioned was failing to materialize. Her friends quickly moved to her side, their faces etched with worry. Marco asked what was wrong, and Seal gently questioned if she was all right. She turned to face them, her eyes wide and utterly blank. A single confused sound escaped her lips. Yeah. Marco and Seal could only stare back, their own expressions mirroring her complete and sudden bewilderment. After clearing a significant amount of tall grass, Amy takes a moment to catch her breath. With the area prepared, she decides it is finally time to use her special skill to create a new home. She considers her options carefully. Since this will be a temporary residence, she concludes that it should be something mobile, a structure that can be moved around and still function as a home. An idea suddenly strikes her. She pictures a large, four-made camper van, a perfect self-contained home on wheels. With a determined expression, she holds her hands out and invokes the power of imagination creation. Her attempt fails completely. Shocked, she wonders why it didn't work. Deciding the first idea was too ambitious, she resolved to try creating something smaller, like a camper based on a light truck, questioning if her posture had been wrong. She tries again, this time attempting to create a simple light wagon. But once more, her imagination creation yields no result. The skill remains inert. A heavy silence hangs in the air as nothing materializes before her. Panic begins to set in. Her mind races with the terrifying thought that if she can't make this work, they will have to return to the slum. In her desperation, she lowers her expectations drastically, thinking that even a cheap, used light van would be perfectly fine. That desperate, specific thought is enough. A vehicle shimmers into existence. A used Sano van 664WD with 155,000 kilometers on it, valued at 148,000 yen. Overwhelmed with relief, she collapses to the ground. She joyfully exclaims that she finally created it, admitting to herself that she had panicked but is immensely glad it worked out in the end. She continued to puzzle over the limits of her imagination creation skill. What was the key difference between the things she could make and the things she couldn't? Was it the size, or perhaps the weight? Then a thought struck her. The light van she had just created was nearly identical in size and weight to a light wagon. The crucial differences must lie elsewhere. She theorized that perhaps she couldn't create anything too expensive, concluding that it must be a money-related problem. This was a variable she would need to test in the future. As she pondered this, Seal and Marco approached the vehicle, their eyes wide with wonder. Seal asked what this beautiful, silver-colored iron object with shiny glass windows could possibly be. Amy offered a sheepish apology for surprising them. She explained that it was a vehicle with a rare engine, sometimes referred to by a peculiar name, and that it would serve as their new home. Her friend stared, taken aback by the declaration. With a flourish, she proudly announced its name, a light pack. The term only deepened Marco and Seal's confusion. She clarified that it was best to think of it as a portable shelter, something to protect them from the wind and rain. The concept of portable seemed to puzzle Marco. To illustrate, she explained that if any danger arose, they could simply move it away. The idea of such an easy escape struck Marco as incredibly cool. He was completely captivated, a blush rising on his cheeks. The notion of a mobile home, something with wheels that you could live inside, was simply amazing to him. Seal, observing his reaction, asked what was wrong. Amy watched him, surmising that after his experience with the cart, the vehicle was stimulating his boyish instincts. She concluded that as long as he was happy with it, everything was fine. While Marco celebrated their new home, Seal voiced a practical concern, wondering if the guild staff would become suspicious if they weren't seen living in the open yard they were paying for. Amy, too, seemed to pause and consider the problem. She quickly devised a solution, brightly suggesting they create some camouflage for their new residence. Her plan was to assemble the rags and wooden boards they had brought from the slums into a makeshift tent, which would serve as a disguised entrance in a grassy area. Seal, delighted by the clever idea, hugged Amy tightly. Marco understood immediately. This would allow them to hide the light pack and live inconspicuously, using the tent as a decoy. With everyone in agreement, Marco rallied them to start building the camouflage tent and organize their belongings. Amy beamed with pure joy, celebrating that, even if it was only a temporary home, they had finally escaped the slums. After finishing their setup, she declared the move complete. Since it was still early, she proposed they go get dinner. He readily agreed, admitting that the day's events had made him hungrier than usual. Seal, standing beside him, felt the same way, and Amy chimed in with her own agreement. Seizing the moment, Amy suggested they splurge a little to celebrate their escape from the slums, an idea that Marco and Seal enthusiastically endorsed. Her eyes lit up with a specific desire. She wanted to try eating at the Hunters Guild cafeteria, expressing a keen interest in the food of this world. Marco, though seeing Seal's hesitation, reassured her that it would be fine. Marco beams with pride, holding up his new registration card. He declares that they're now officially members of the guild and confidently assures the others that everything will be fine. He then takes stock of their finances, announcing they have a total of 10,167 rairas, which he deems more than enough. Seal peeks over his shoulder, asking if they have money to spare, while Amy looks on with some hesitation. With their success fresh in their minds, Seal suggests they go to the cafeteria to celebrate. Marco enthusiastically agrees, and Amy throws her arms into the air with a joyful cheer. Following their decision, the door to the Hunters Guild cafeteria swings open, revealing a simple, empty room filled with wooden tables and stools. The three children step inside, with Marco noting the lack of people. Seal suggests it might be because it's not yet evening. As they stand in the quiet hall, a gruff voice suddenly calls out to them. The voice belongs to a large, intimidating man with a scarred face and a thick mustache, who glares down at them from behind a counter. He addresses them as brats and demands to know who they are, stating he's never seen them before and asking if they're newbies. His menacing presence instantly terrifies the children. They freeze, their faces contorted with fear and sweat beading on their brows. Despite his nervousness, Marco steps forward. He stammers that they are indeed new, having just registered that day, and presents his registration card as proof to the stern-faced man. The cook's expression softens slightly as he processes this information. He acknowledges their newbie status, remarking that they welcome newcomers here and wishing them good luck. His demeanor shifts entirely to that of a professional host. He thanks them for their patronage and politely asks if they would like to order something. Relieved, Marco confirms that they would. He explains to the cook that they wanted to eat something to commemorate their guild registration. Understanding, the man nods and presents them with the menu. As Seal studies the menu, Marco asks her what it says. A moment of silence passes before it becomes clear. None of them can read the letters. She admits that while there's a lot written on it, she can't understand it very well. Unable to proceed, Marco turns back to the cook and hesitantly asks if he may call him Master Sen. The man simply agrees. He confirms that it's what everyone calls him. This is Mason, the master of the Hunter Guild cafeteria. With the issue of addressing him settled, Amy asks Mason if he has any recommendations. He strokes his chin thoughtfully before suggesting the day's special. He announces that today's special is a boar steak set, and the price is only 5 ryris. The children's eyes widen in unison, shocked and thrilled at the mention of meat. A quick, unspoken agreement passes between them. Seal asks the others if it's fine to order the special, and Marco declares it's the only choice. Amy enthusiastically agrees. Beaming with excitement, Amy turns back to the cook and orders 3 daily specials. Mason looks down at the small girl, remarking on her large appetite. He then advises her that 2 servings would likely be enough for the 3 of them, noting that it's better than having leftovers. With their order placed, Seal expresses her relief, admitting the ordeal was scary but successful. Marco suggests they find a table, and Amy, letting out a breath, confirms the order of 2 portions for 10 ryris. Hearing this, the cafeteria master freezes, his expression hardening as he shouts for them to wait. Amy is struck with terror at his sudden, intense reaction. She immediately fears the worst, wondering if this is the kind of trouble one typically finds in a guild. With tears welling in her eyes, she steels herself, determined to protect Marco and Seal. But his outburst was not one of anger. The cook simply points out that a normal chair would be difficult for her to use and offers a smaller one instead. The 3 children are now seated, with Amy comfortably settled on her special, lower stool. She is utterly stunned by the gesture. The realization hits her with full force. He is far kinder and gentler than his intimidating appearance suggests. Marco, too, reflects on the situation. He considers that they were told to order only 2 servings for the 3 of them, an unprofitable request. He realizes the cook's actions are born from pure kindness, a thought that makes even his gruff face seem cute. Their conversation turns to the master's surprising nature. Marco exclaims how kind he is, and Amy agrees, feeling apologetic for her initial fear. Seal smiles, adding that anyone who treats Amy well is surely a good person. As they wait, Amy beams with excitement, looking forward to their first ever meal out. Marco marvels at the moment, admitting he never thought a day like this would come. Seal quietly affirms his sentiment. Her friends watch her, their expressions softening. Seal and Marco both gently say her name, their voices filled with affection. She looks from one to the other, her small face earnest, and offers them both a sincere, heartfelt thank you. She looks up at her friends, her expression a mixture of concern and confusion, and asks what is wrong. In response, Seal explains that it was Amy who truly thought about their situation and took action, which helped them escape the slums. Marco agrees, adding that without her, they would still be simply trying to survive day by day. Seal's gratitude is tinged with the memory of a harsh past, recalling a time when a filthy child was cruelly told to go away. With tears in her eyes, she repeats that their escape is all thanks to Amy. The painful recollections continue, flashing to a memory of watching over someone weak and frail, promising to wait for them no matter how hard or painful it became. Once again, she attributes their current fortune entirely to Amy. Returning to the present, both Seal and Marco look upon Amy with tears of gratitude shining in their eyes. Seal speaks for them both, saying simply, "That's why, thank you." Their minds drift back to a dark alleyway where they first met. A younger Seal excitedly pointed out a small, cute girl to Marco, noting that the child's eyes were the same color as an angel's. As she gazed at the silent child, Seal wondered aloud if God himself had sent her to them. Marco, however, reacted with a bitter scoff, muttering that he hates God. His expression then softened with concern as he wondered how long the little girl had been there all alone. Seal voiced a sudden fear, worrying that if they left the child, she could be kidnapped. She then considered another possibility, that she might be taken to the church, a thought that visibly startled Marco. He immediately agreed, his voice filled with alarm. He warned that if someone took her to the church, there was no telling what they might do to her, revealing a deep-seated distrust. Seal listened, contemplating their next move. Continuing the memory, Seal brightly suggests to a startled Marco that they should take the little girl home with them. He hesitates, thinking to himself that he isn't a monster like an orc or goblin. He couldn't just leave her there. Reluctantly, he agrees, reasoning that if Seal insists, taking the girl with them is a much better fate than leaving her to the church. She beams with a bright smile, thanking him enthusiastically as he looks on, still flustered by the sudden decision. Seal then turns to the small girl, asking if she wants to come along. She playfully adds that the scary ogre-like kid, referring to Marco, would be with them too. The 2 older children look at each other, Seal referring to him as Oni-ai, and him to her as Neen. Seal giggles, teasingly asking if he's thinking about how scary he is. Marco immediately shouts back, insisting that he is not an ogre. The memory brings tears to Amy's eyes in the present, as she recalls the nickname they gave her, Achabai-chan. Back in the cafeteria, as the cook serves their meal, Amy explains to the others that she doesn't remember who she is or where she came from, only that she was sitting alone in a corner of the slums. She finishes her story with gratitude, recalling how Neen called out to her and Oniai said she could join them. As she speaks, Marco marvels at the food, noting that it looks delicious and is an amazing portion even for two people. She recalled how, after that moment of acceptance, she began to believe that she could truly live in this new world. Her new friends had smiled warmly, with Marco cheerfully suggesting that they all eat together. Overwhelmed with happiness, she had agreed through a fresh wave of tears. The three of them then shared their first meal, their faces alight with joyous smiles, even as tears of relief continued to stream down their cheeks. It was a full, warm meal set before them, a symbol of the new life and family she had just found. As the memory faded, the scene returned to the present, where the cafeteria cook stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Nearby, the guild receptionist, Irene, watched on with a pensive look, her hand resting thoughtfully on her chin. She stood in contemplation, her mind racing. The children had invoked the name of the angel, a name that was feared, a name that was almost always avoided. A deep sense of unease settled over her as she wondered, just what on earth were those kids? The next morning, Marco addresses Seal and Amy. He explains that while they have managed to escape the slum for the time being, they must find a way to stabilize their lives to leave that life behind for good. His words galvanize the group. Seal declares they will do their best, and Marco agrees, stating that their first step is to build a record of accomplishments at the Hunters Guild. All three clench their fists in a shared moment of determination. With their resolve set, they shout their destination in unison, the Hunters Guild. Their arrival, however, is met with an overwhelming sight. The guild hall is packed shoulder to shoulder with other hunters. The sheer size of the crowd renders the three children speechless, their earlier excitement instantly replaced with shock and dismay. Marco breaks the silence, telling Seal it would be impossible for her to navigate the crowd of adults. He suggests waiting, but Seal grows anxious. She reminds him that she's the only one who can read the requests, so she has to be the one to try and get through, expressing fear that waiting is also dangerous. Despite the difficulty, she manages to get a glimpse of the request board. She reports that most of the available jobs are for collection, catching monsters and animals, or gathering valuable plants. Seeing her troubled expression, Marco asks her what is wrong. She explains her reservations. Monsters are too scary and would be impossible for her, and she would rather avoid dangerous animals as well. Amy silently considers that with Marco's fire magic or Seal's water magic, she might stand a chance, but she lacks any training, making it far too dangerous for a child. Their thoughts turn to the other option. Seal voices their shared concern that collecting rare plants would likely require them to venture into dangerous places. Amy grimaces, acknowledging that this too is too great a challenge for children. She then proposes what she believes they can do, gather medicinal herbs. She likens it to their usual task of foraging for edible wild plants. The idea catches the others off guard. Marco admits he doesn't know which herbs are medicinal, and Amy confesses she doesn't know either. As she pondered their predicament, Marco turned to Amy with a hopeful question. He reasoned that since Amy knew about edible plants, she might also recognize medicinal herbs. Amy, however, had to admit that she didn't, realizing with a sinking feeling that the knowledge from her previous life was of no use in this world. Her admission cast a pall over the group. All three slumped in defeat, feeling as though they had failed before they had even begun. Marco voiced their shared despair, wondering what they should do now. Breaking the heavy silence, Seal changed the subject, wondering aloud who actually posted the quests. As Amy pondered the question, Seal reasoned that they likely came from local shops, clinics, pharmacies, and other townspeople. She continued, adding that public officials, nobles, and even the church might post requests. Marco, however, quickly dismissed the idea, certain that such powerful entities would have no interest in hiring novice hunters like them. He was right. Amy concluded that for the time being, their only realistic options were quests from the local shops. She racked her brain, trying to think of a task that only they would be able to accomplish. As she mulled over the phrase, something that only we could do, a brilliant idea struck her. She turned to Marco and Seal, her eyes wide with sudden inspiration. With a newfound confidence, she announced that she had come up with a secret trick. "Let's go to Joshua's general store," she declared. Her declaration of a secret trick left Marco and Seal utterly stunned and speechless. The mischievous glint in Amy's eyes did little to reassure them. As they arrived at the storefront, their apprehension grew. Seal nervously asked if her secret trick was truly all right, while Marco insisted she should at least explain the plan to them first. Before she could answer, the shop owners, Jane and Joshua, greeted them warmly. Jane immediately asked if they had brought any honey with them, and Joshua added with a smile that they would always be willing to buy it. She listens intently as the children stand before her. They explain that they have come today because they have a request regarding the honey. Before they can elaborate, however, they excitedly announce their recent accomplishment. They were able to join the Hunters Guild. This news brings smiles to the faces of both Jane and Joshua. Jane expresses her delight, and Joshua thoughtfully notes that they are now officially registered members of the guild. Amy beams, adding that the people at the guild were very kind. Joshua remarks that he is glad they seem to be managing, as so many people are unable to escape the slums. Seal, however, earnestly states that it was only thanks to Jane's help that they were able to join the Hunters Guild at all. She modestly dismisses the praise, insisting it was all due to their own effort. In response, the three children bow deeply in unison, thanking her once more for accepting them and treating them without discrimination, despite their origins. After the heartfelt exchange, Joshua steers the conversation back to their original purpose, asking if their request is related to the Hunters Guild. With a determined glint in her eye, Amy confirms that it is. She then makes her bold proposal, asking if he could please submit a quest to the Hunters Guild specifically for honey. His eyes widen slightly before he closes them in thought, a smile forming. He immediately grasps the plan. The children themselves would be the ones to accept that quest. He listens as Amy explains the logic. Honey is a luxury item, she reasons. If they, as slum children, were to continue selling it directly, they couldn't publicly reveal the source of such a valuable product. He listened as Amy continued her explanation, pointing out the core problem. As former slum residents, their credibility was low. If it became known that the product came from them, it was possible no one would buy it. However, she presented the solution. If they traded through the Hunters Guild, their credibility would be high. He could then advertise that he had acquired the items from the guild, neatly sidestepping their origins. She added that, as a bonus, they would also get credit for completing a Hunters Guild quest. With her case made, she looked up at him with a hint of nervousness and asked for his thoughts. He stroked his chin, processing her words. He correctly summarized her intent, to involve the Hunters Guild as a way to make the source of the goods less clear. After a moment, a warm smile spread across his face as he concluded that it was not a bad deal. Hearing this, Marco praised Achabai for her amazing, solid plan, while Seal added that she knew Achabai-chan was smart, not just cute. His agreement, however, came with a practical concern. He pointed out that since the Hunters Guild would be involved, they would charge a handling fee, which might result in a loss for the children. He asked if they were all right with that. She responded with fierce determination. While money was important, she insisted that what they truly needed right now was to establish a track record. Her conviction was immediately echoed by the others. Seal declared that they wanted visible proof that they were living independently, and Marco added that they wanted to live an honest life and be proud of the mark they made in the Hunters Guild. Their earnest passion moved him. He turned and exchanged a warm, knowing smile with Jane, who returned a look of approval. Turning back to them, he gave his final answer. He understood what they were saying, he confirmed, and he had no problem with it. That was right. Amy's expression softened with relief. In response to his agreement, the children beamed with gratitude. Seal declared that if she ever wanted honey, she would be sure to put in a request at the Hunters Guild. Joshua reassured them, but immediately considered a potential problem. How should the request be worded? He worried that if they simply wrote honey, they might end up receiving a different product entirely. Amy, however, had a solution. She proposed giving their honey a unique name, like Japanese honey blended. She reasoned that since no one else would know what that meant, no other hunter would be able to accept the quest. He conceded that her logic was sound. With such a specific name, they could easily refuse any delivery by stating it was the wrong item, ensuring only the children could fulfill the request. As the plan solidified, Marco remarked to Seal that it seemed everything would proceed without issue this time, praising Achabai for being amazing. Hearing their praise, Amy confidently addressed the shopkeepers again. She asked if they had any other requests besides honey, explaining that since the children didn't know what products were in demand, they would be happy to try creating something new. Her sudden pivot to new product development rendered both Joshua and Jane speechless. Amy looked back at them, puzzled by their stunned silence. She tilted her head, innocently asking if she had done something wrong. A flustered Joshua quickly stammered that she hadn't at all. He paused, a realization dawning on him. He noted that Achabai knew many difficult words for a child, such as demand and request. Reflecting on their interactions, he understood their conversations had been complex negotiations about gains and losses. Amy, meanwhile, had her own sudden, panicked realization. It finally struck her that it was strange for a 5-year-old to suddenly start asking such difficult questions, and that her advanced knowledge was becoming noticeable. She quickly deflects, claiming she was only repeating what Marco and Seal told her to say, praising them as amazing. Her explanation sends Marco and Seal into a state of shock, both crying out her name in panicked disbelief. The commotion draws Joshua's attention, who misinterprets their flustered state as a sign of diligent study and expresses his impressed approval. Just then, Jane's voice calls out from the shop, asking what is happening. As she approaches, Jane remarks that ever since the children started cleaning themselves, they've carried a pleasant, refreshing, and sweet floral scent. Seal proudly explains that the scent comes from their soaps, which are made from plants. Jane expresses surprise, noting that she always thought soaps smelled of animal grease. Intrigued by this, Jane eagerly asks if they could show her the soap. Joshua agrees, suggesting they should consider selling it as a new product. On their way back, Marco and Seal are ecstatic. They celebrate the fact that the shopkeepers are willing to submit a guild request for their products, seeing it as a great opportunity to sell soap in addition to honey. Listening to them, Amy realizes she hasn't used her imagination creation skill for the day. She decides she can make one honey and one soap for now. She then considers the inefficiency of creating just one item at a time. A new idea sparks in her mind. Perhaps she could create an entire box full of them at once. With her power, she visualizes the final product. A herbal soap year-end gift set, complete with 6 bars each of roses, lavenders, and chamomiles, presented as a professionally packaged item. She proudly presents a box filled to the brim, explaining to a surprised Marco and Seal that she used her imagination creation skill to create many soaps all at once. Seal marvels that the box is completely full, while Marco is stunned by the sheer quantity. She explains that she attempted to create a set product because she thought she could make a large amount in one go, and it was a success. Hearing that there are 3 different types, Marco and Seal readily agree to take one of each. Returning to the shop, Seal announces their arrival. She and Marco present the soaps, explaining that they have 3 varieties, each with a unique scent: rose, lavender, and chamomile. Joshua asks if it would be all right for them to test all 3 different kinds. Amy enthusiastically encourages them to go ahead. As they test the product, Jane is astonished by the rich foam, exclaiming that it makes her feel like an aristocrat. Joshua is equally impressed, noting that the smell is amazing and that it's the first soap he's ever encountered that doesn't smell like animal fur. Her eyes wide with conviction, Jane turns to her husband and declares that the soap will absolutely sell. He agrees with equal fervor, certain of its success. He immediately decides to purchase them, even though they're just trial products. Amy seems surprised by his decisiveness as he begins to contemplate a price. Seal cheerfully proposes a price: 100 riru for each bar, or a set of 3 for 300. Marco enthusiastically agrees that the price is great, and Amy beams with delight. The price leaves Amy stunned. She internally calculates the conversion, realizing with a shock that 100 riru is equivalent to over 10,000 Japanese yen. The soap sold for a truly high price. She understands now that her creation is considered a luxurious product, a stark contrast to the common, animal-scented soaps available on the market. She immediately asks Joshua if she can also make a formal request for her soaps through the Hunters Guild, specifically listing the rose, lavender, and chamomile varieties. Joshua readily agrees, and Jane confirms her understanding. The little girl beams with excitement, realizing that this method would allow them to earn both money and achievements for completing official quests. The transaction is completed, with coins and bars of soap exchanged. The day's purchase amounts to 300 rairas for the 3 bars of soap, bringing their total funds to 10,907 rairas. With their business concluded and pockets heavier, the children depart. By evening, the day's excitement has taken its toll. Amy, completely out of energy, falls asleep as the children make their way to the Hunters Guild. Inside, they approach the reception desk where Irene greets them warmly. Seal announces that they have come to pay the usage fee for the open field. The receptionist confirms the fee is 3 rairas for the 3 of them, just as she had stated the day before. She then suggests that if they plan to continue renting the field, it would be less inconvenient to pay in a lump sum. Seal is delighted by the thoughtful suggestion, praising Irene's kindness. The receptionist then asks if the 3 of them intend to continue living together, to which Marco confirms they do. Hearing this, Irene's expression brightens with a new idea. She points out that in that case, it would be more convenient and profitable for them to officially form a team. She explained the primary benefit of forming a team. Accepting a quest together yields more achievement points per person than completing it individually. Since the points are distributed equally, everyone on the team can be promoted together, making it a very good deal. The process, she continued, was simple and free of charge. All they had to do was fill out an application form. Marco, processing the information, asked what they should do. Irene then remembered a detail, apologizing that the little one, Amy, couldn't be promoted until she turned 12, but she quickly added with a smile that it was fine. Understanding their agreement, Irene cheerfully requested that they form a team. Marco and Seal looked at each other, both thinking it was a good idea and agreeing to proceed. With the decision made, the children moved to handle the paperwork. Now sitting together, Seal read from the application, stating that they first needed to fill in the team name and the names of all members. Marco suggested that, for the time being, their main duty should simply be gathering. At the mention of a team name, Seal immediately asked what it should be. Marco began to ponder the question thoughtfully, while Amy was struck with a sudden realization. Amy recalled with sudden clarity how Seal, or Neen, as she called her, had made a quick and arbitrary decision when it came to giving her the name Amy. Yet now, for the team name, Seal wanted to listen to everyone's opinions. The hypocrisy of it all left Amy momentarily stunned. Her shock quickly hardened into resolve. With a fiery determination burning in her eyes, she declared that as revenge for how her own name was chosen, she would be the one to come up with a good name for their team. She puffed out her cheeks in concentration, pondering what would be a good name, one that would help them build a solid track record. As Marco and Seal watched with concern, an idea suddenly sparked in her mind. Her face lit up. She turned to the others and confidently proposed her idea for the team name. How about promotion? Marco could only stare back, repeating the word in utter confusion. She enthusiastically explains that promotion means to achieve a high position and gain recognition from the world. Seal, however, listens with a puzzled expression, thinking to herself that Amy's pronunciation sounded a bit strange. Despite her initial thought, Seal decides the name promotion actually sounds quite nice. Amy agrees wholeheartedly, and Marco adds that it perfectly represents their immediate goal. As her friends accept the name, Amy reflects on her choice. She knows she used a foreign word, not the local one for promotion, precisely because it sounds cool. She briefly wonders if the local accent is just more forward, which might explain Seal's initial reaction. With the decision made, Marco turns to the guild counter and officially declares their team name, Promotion. It is settled. Amy throws a triumphant fist into the air, flanked by her smiling friends, and proclaims that from this day forward, Team Promotion will give it their all. The next morning, at the Hunters Guild, Amy scans the quest board. Her eyes light up as she points to a specific notice, announcing that she's found a request from Joshua's general store. Her companions, Marco and Seal, lean in closer. Marco asks what the notice says, while Amy studies the text, murmuring thoughtfully to herself. She begins to read the details aloud. It is a permanent request from Joshua's general store, seeking specific items. Nahansi eye honey blended at 2 ryers per gram, and 3 types of Nahansi eye soap, rose, lavender, and chamomile, for 100 ryers each. All items are to be delivered directly to the store at any time. Upon hearing the full request, the 3 children celebrate. Marco pumps his fist, exclaiming that they did it. Amy expresses her relief and excitement that Joshua requested soap in addition to the honey. Amidst their joy, Amy suggests that if there's anything they don't understand, they can simply ask someone. This prompts a question from her friends. What exactly is a permanent quest? With this new question in mind, they move from the quest board over to the guild's main reception counter. At the counter, the receptionist, Irene, responds to their inquiry with a bright wink and a confident smile, assuring them she can explain everything about permanent requests. The children gratefully thank her in unison. Beaming, Irene prepares to begin her explanation of the different types of quests available at the guild. She starts by outlining the basic structure, holding up 3 fingers. All quests, she explains, are broadly divided into 3 categories: normal quests, designated quests, and permanent quests. She elaborates on the first 2 types. For regular and designated quests, an adventurer must peel the physical request form from the bulletin board and bring it to the counter to begin the application process. She clarifies that designated quests are special tasks assigned to a particular individual or team by name, a concept that leaves Amy impressed. She begins her explanation, clarifying that a permanent request, as its name suggests, is a quest that is continually available. She continues, pointing out the key difference. They can start working on it at any time without having to process the quest to the counter first. Amy expresses her surprise, asking if they can really start without going through the usual procedure. Seal beams, remarking how simple and nice that sounds. She understands that completing the quest is as easy as submitting a completion report or delivering the goods directly to the counter. The receptionist confirms this, but adds a word of caution. They must bring a report that includes a magic verification. Amy quietly wonders what that is. The receptionist clarifies that magic verification is a security measure to prevent counterfeiting. Once magic is imbued into the report, no one can modify it except for the person who cast the spell. Amy is struck by this, realizing with a shock that this system is more robust than anything she knew in her previous life. With the explanation complete, the 3 children smile brightly, thanking her for all the information. The receptionist smiles back, confirming that's all there is to it. Sometime later, as they walk past a field, Marco reflects on what they learned about permanent requests, calling it a learning experience. Seal and Amy both agree. Seal begins to ponder the implications. She notes that with normal requests, everyone knows who accepted it because the form is physically removed from a board. For a permanent request, however, one only has to report the completion at the counter. She concludes that this system might be a blessing for people like them who wish to work unobtrusively. Marco agrees, seeing her point. She speculates that perhaps Joshua was being considerate by choosing to make it a permanent request. Amy's face lights up with realization as she exclaims that must be the case. Having arrived at Joshua's general store, Amy eagerly suggests they deliver the goods and thank him right away. Marco and Seal voice their cheerful agreement, ready to go inside. As she and the others looked on with dawning realization, Joshua tilted his head in confusion. "HM," he uttered, asking what they meant. He explained that he had simply made it a permanent request because it was a hassle to make repeated requests. The 3 children listened, their initial assumption now seeming incorrect. Hearing his simple reason, Seal's face flushed with embarrassment. She apologized profusely for jumping to conclusions. Amy admitted they had thought he was being considerate to help them avoid the public quest acceptance process, and both she and Marco affirmed that Seal had done nothing wrong, as they had all thought the same. He waved a hand dismissively, offering his own apology. He admitted his ignorance of the Hunters Guild's detailed procedures, stating it wasn't his intention. Nevertheless, he added with a smile, he was glad it benefited them and offered his thanks. With the misunderstanding cleared up, Joshua's expression turned back to business. He asked if they could show him the items. Eagerly, Marco and Seal agreed. They presented the fruits of their labor, a jar of honey from the second imagination creation session, and the remaining soap from the first. The soap's original packaging had writing on it, so they had removed it and divided the bars into smaller portions. Joshua announced he would assess them immediately. A short while later, Jane emerged, confirming that the assessment was complete. Joshua, looking pleased, reported the results. 5 bars each of Nahansi Eye Rose Soap, Nahansi Eye Lavender Soap, and Nahansi Eye Chamomile Soap, along with 1,200 grams of Nahansi Eye Honey blended. He then turned his attention to the payment, explaining that he hadn't written the price on the request form because the glass container for the honey was expensive. He asked Amy if he could purchase it all for the same 10,000 pyrus as before, and she eagerly agreed, expressing her gratitude. The transaction was completed, and the payment was laid out on the counter, a collection of coins and bills next to the delivered soaps. The final tally confirmed the total transaction: 1,200 grams of honey, including the glass container, plus 3 types of soap, amounted to a grand total of 13,900 pyrus. She stares in stunned silence, her mind racing to comprehend the sum. The amount is incredible, equivalent to more than 1.6 million in the currency of her past life. Joshua simply smiles, confirming her calculations. He then shifts to business, asking her how much of the product can be delivered and on what kind of schedule. Amy looks up, considering the logistics of their new enterprise. He explains that they are already pitching the soaps to major clients, which could lead to sudden increases in demand. Amy, along with Seal, confirms that they can deliver the same amount every day, a prospect that delights Joshua. His thoughts then turn to distribution, musing that the best sales channel might be the churches. This suggestion startles Marco, who immediately asks with concern if Joshua intends to sell to the church. He recoils at the idea, vehemently refusing. Joshua declares that no matter how much money is offered, he will never sell his merchandise to the church, stating his dislike for those who seem to worship money instead of a higher power. Jane's voice cuts in, filled with righteous anger. She agrees wholeheartedly, launching into a tirade against the church. She accuses them of doing whatever they want under the pretext of offerings, even resorting to blackmail, and laments that the world is doomed with such greedy people becoming priests. His relief is palpable. Marco is glad to hear the products won't be sold to the church, admitting he wouldn't want his creations ending up there either. Hearing this exchange, Amy realizes with a sweat drop that the church must have a truly terrible reputation. He smiles, setting the topic of the church aside. Joshua tells Amy he would be grateful if they could deliver as much as they can. She understands and agrees. He then presents them with a delivery report. Joshua explains that they can submit this document to the Hunter Guild receptionist to receive their payment, assuring them it comes with magic verification. The 3 children thank him profusely. Her happiness is infectious. Seal hums a cheerful tune. Marco observes how happy she is that they can visit the store every day, knowing how much she loves Jane and the others. Amy beams, promising they will be back the next day. She tried to process the numbers. Over 1.6 million yen earned in a single day, with the potential to repeat that success daily. The thought was overwhelming, and she decided to push it aside for the moment. Her train of thought was broken as they arrived at the Hunters Guild. With Marco and Seal beside her, she bounded towards the counter, cheerfully calling out for the receptionist, Irene. With a brilliant smile and a raised hand, she proudly announced that their quest was complete. The receptionist, Irene, stared back in disbelief, questioning if it was already finished. She thought it was far too fast. She recovered slightly as Marco stepped forward, presenting the delivery report. Taking the document, Irene noted with surprise that it even included a magic verification. Her eyes darted between the 3 of them, a single thought echoing in her mind. Who on earth were these children? Her intense scrutiny made the children nervous. Marco hesitantly asked if they had done something wrong, but Irene quickly shook her head, assuring them there was no problem at all. Shaking off her suspicion, Irene adopted a bright, professional smile. She congratulated them on completing their first quest and announced it was time to move on to the payment process. The children thanked her enthusiastically. She then guided their attention to the matter of payment, beginning with an explanation of deductions. The concept of a tax fee left the children looking utterly bewildered. She held up 2 fingers to clarify the breakdown. First, a 10% tax will be taken. On top of that, the Hunter Guild would take a 10% commission, resulting in a total deduction of 20% from their reward. She then asks if they want to receive the rest of their reward in cash. As Amy processes this, she recalls Joshua mentioning this fee, understanding that while 20% is a lot, it's a necessary expense to build their reputation. Her alternative is an offer to deposit the funds for them, a suggestion that leaves Marco, Amy, and Seal looking utterly perplexed. She clarifies that the Hunters Guild can hold their money, functioning much like a bank, which is a safe option for those worried about carrying large sums of cash. The idea sparks a thought in Amy's mind. Looking ahead to the future, she asks if it's possible to split the deposit into 4 parts, 1 for each of them, plus a 4th for the team. Irene confirms that this is entirely possible. She formally requests the 4-part deposit for the team, Marco, Seal, and herself. Seal immediately questions the reason, while Marco seeks confirmation, asking if she truly wants to deposit the money. Amy gives a firm yeah. She turns to face them, a thoughtful look on her face as she gathers her thoughts to explain her plan. It is Seal who speaks first, proposing that the team's funds could be used for their group activities. Marco continues the thought, adding that from now on, they'll all have personal things they want, making individual savings a smart move. Amy looks between them, awaiting their final verdict. She worries they might be hesitant, perhaps reluctant to entrust their money to a stranger after growing up in the slums. Marco quickly dismisses her concern, assuring her that isn't the issue, much to her relief. He then explains his true feelings, reminding them that just a short while ago, their only focus was surviving day-to-day in the slums. Because of that, he continues, the very ability to think about the future makes him feel, once again, that they have truly escaped that life. Seal, her expression soft with gratitude, tells Amy that she feels the same way and thanks her for thinking about their future. Amy looks up at her older friends, addressing them by the affectionate names she uses, Nin, Oniak. Turning her attention back to the receptionist, she formally requests that Irene-san deposit the rewards into 4 portions. Marco and Seal quickly voice their agreement, echoing Amy's sentiment about planning for the future. The receptionist is visibly moved by their maturity. Tears well up in Irene's eyes as she agrees, touched by how good the children are. With the transaction complete, the quest reward of 11,120 Ryris is officially deposited. The total is divided, with a portion going to the team's promotion fund and the remaining amount split evenly, resulting in 2,780 Ryris for each of the 3 children. Having finished their business at the guild, the children find themselves outside, standing by a field of tall crops under the morning sky. They stand together, contemplating their next move. While the others wonder what to do with the rest of their day, Amy realizes that their schedule will now be like this every day. A new thought takes root. She needs to come up with a plan for their time. Her mind immediately jumps to a specific desire, something she has longed for ever since her past life's memories returned. It's the one thing she would practice if only she could use it. The thought is quickly followed by a wave of disappointment as the stark reality hits her. She possesses no magic whatsoever. Seal, noticing her friend's sudden change in mood, correctly guesses the source of her frustration. Despite her own inability, a new idea sparks in her mind. She turns to her friends with a determined look, asking Seal and Marco if they can show her their magic. Both readily agree, Marco with a cheerful all right, and Seal with a simple sure. She resolved to learn everything she could about their fire and water magic by observing them closely. This knowledge, she believed, was key to increasing what they could accomplish in the future. At her request, a perfect, shimmering sphere of water materialized in the air, popping into existence with a soft sound. Her eyes widened, sparkling with fascination at the sight. Seal held the orb of water gently in her hands. Amy, completely captivated, exclaimed that magic was truly mysterious and amazing. Marco, however, remarked that for him, Amy's own skill was far more mysterious. Seal then shared that she'd been feeling good lately. Previously, just pouring a little water would tire her out, but now she didn't feel so tired even when filling the entire tub. Hearing this, Amy's mind raced. She wondered if Seal's increased stamina was simply because she had been eating properly lately, then recalled the amazing way Seal had disposed of the bathwater. As Seal called out for her, Amy, who had darted away, was struck by a sudden idea. She pondered if there was something specific they could do with this water magic. She quickly produced a large metal pot. She set it firmly on the ground before them. Turning to Seal, she made a request. Nin, can you put some water in this pot? Both Seal and Marco looked on, puzzled, but Seal hesitantly agreed. Seal obliged, asking if this was what she wanted as a stream of water magically filled the pot to the brim. Amy watched, her face alight with amazement, whispering how incredible it was. She begins her instruction, asking Seal if there's a way to use her magic to lift the burnt grime from the pot. To clarify, Amy explains the goal is to separate the dirt from the inside surface of the pot. Though she seems a bit unsure, Seal agrees to give it a try. As Seal concentrates, a bead of sweat forming on her brow, Amy visualizes the process, using a thin layer of water to get between the dirt and the pot, effectively peeling the grime away. The magic works perfectly. A swirl of water scours the pot clean. Amy claps her hands in delight, praising Seal for her amazing success. Seal, relieved, is simply glad she could do it. Seal looks on, puzzled by the excitement, wondering about the purpose of this exercise. With a triumphant grin, Amy announces her grand idea. With Seal's water magic, they can do the laundry. The suggestion sparks a realization in Seal's eyes. Amy encourages her further, explaining that if she thinks about it and practices, she might be able to do a lot of different things with her magic. Her expression now bright with possibility. Seal thanks Amy profusely, declaring that she will try experimenting with her abilities. Nearby, Marco watches the two of them with his hands on his hips. Later, standing in an open field before a large building, Amy turns her attention to Marco. She asks him if it would be all right for the grass in this area to catch fire. Her eyes light up as she excitedly brings up his fire magic. He confirms that he can use it, but then adds that she is misunderstanding something important. With a serious expression, Marco reveals to a stunned Amy that fire is not his only ability. He declares that he can also use another type of magic. A gentle breeze wafts past Amy, who closes her eyes in delight, finding the sensation incredibly cool and refreshing. Marco explains to her that what she's feeling is just a little wind magic he produced. Amy, still enjoying the breeze, seems to understand. He elaborates that since it's only a gentle breeze, it's invisible and he hasn't had many opportunities to use it, unlike fire magic. Deciding to demonstrate, he announces that fire magic is next, summoning a small orb of light on his fingertip. With a soft grunt of effort, he transforms the light into a small, flickering black flame dancing on his index finger. Amy watches with wide-eyed wonder. He remarks that he might be feeling better lately, not feeling exhausted at all. Amy, thinking of all the food she's been able to eat, agrees that she's also doing great. Her curiosity piqued. She asks if the user of fire magic feels the heat from their own flame. Marco clarifies that since he created this particular fire himself, it isn't hot to him, which is why he can touch it without issue. At her request to make the fire longer and thinner, he concentrates, reshaping the flame into a long, thin blade of dark fire. Amy gasps, exclaiming that it looks good. Her eyes sparkle with excitement as she asks an unexpected question. Could she hold the fire magic? Marco looks at her, surprised by the request. She insists, her face alight with eagerness, urging him to let her try. Taken aback by her intensity, Marco stammers that he understands. He then reshapes the base of the fiery blade into a hilt and holds it with both hands, presenting it. He asks if his form is good enough, while Amy stares, completely captivated and whispering how cool it is. He listened as Amy, with a spark in her eyes, suggested that if he could improve his fire magic, it could become a sword made of fire. The idea of a flame sword hung in the air between them. The concept struck him with incredible force. A sword of flame? He exclaimed, his eyes wide with astonishment and excitement. Moments later, he stood proudly, wielding a crackling, dark blade of pure fire. Amy cheered, declaring it amazing and cool, adding that magic swords are a staple in stories about other worlds. He asked if the blade was to her liking. Thrilled, Amy immediately had another request. Could he make the fire float and grow bigger, like the flame he had made before? Her mind raced with possibilities. She then posed a new challenge, asking if he could make that fire fly away using his wind magic. With a knowing look, she finished her thought, explaining that such a feat would look just like a special move. The suggestion left Marco momentarily stunned. He agreed, marveling at her idea. That's amazing. So cool, he thought, holding the floating ball of fire in his hand, ready to attempt the combination. Taking a firm stance, he thrust his hand forward and roared. Go forward. Fireball. The resulting fireball drifted forward with a gentle puff, moving at a snail's pace. Behind him, Amy mimicked his stance, pushing with all her might as if to help it along. He immediately dropped to his knees, apologizing profusely to Achabai. He explained his failure was due to only being able to use a little wind magic. Amy, however, was not disappointed. She reassured him, saying that imagination is important for magic and that with practice, he would surely be able to do it one day. She mused that Marco's wind magic was currently just a gentle breeze. Hearing this, he clenched his fist, embarrassed but resolute, declaring that he would try various things to improve. Her mind immediately went to practical applications. Seal typically handled the laundry with water magic, but if Marco could combine his fire and wind magic, he could create a warm wind to dry clothes, like a hot air dryer. Sometime later, at the Hunters Guild cafeteria, the three children finished a satisfying meal. Marco and Seal both exclaimed how delicious it was, feeling full and content. After their meal, while the other two went to practice magic, Amy took a nap. She reflected on her small body's limitations, but resolved that she had to find something she could do to contribute. Her thoughts turned to her unique skill, imagination creation, which could only be used twice a day and couldn't be practiced like magic. She realized that to use it effectively, she needed to learn more about this world. Seal and Marco noticed her deep in thought. Having formulated a plan, she addressed the others. She pointed out that from now on, after their morning deliveries, they would have free time. She proposed that they should decide on something productive to do during that time, just as they had practiced magic that day. Marco enthusiastically agreed, calling a great idea. Seal was just as excited, declaring her intent to practice her magic as well. She then turned to Amy, asking what she planned to do. In response, Amy announced her own goal. She wanted to learn how to read and write. Seal's eyes widened in surprise and delight, and she immediately offered to teach her. Marco raised a practical point, asking if Seal should be focusing on her own magic practice. Seal waved off his concern, insisting that teaching Amy was her priority and that Amy should focus on having fun with her own magic. Their discussion was suddenly interrupted by a deep voice. The master of the Hunters Guild cafeteria, a man named Mason, informed them that there were various courses available at the guild. Amy looked up, startled to be addressed by the cook. He confirms that the guild offers courses on everything, gesturing as he lists them off, from reading and writing to swords, bows, and even magic. The children's interest is immediately piqued, with Amy and Seal thinking of literacy, while Marco focuses on magic. Noticing their rapt attention, he reveals that he had been listening to their earlier conversation and asks if they are interested. In perfect unison, The three children shout an enthusiastic yes. Their exchange is suddenly interrupted by a new voice. It is Irene, the guild receptionist, holding a large wooden mug. She offers to explain the details herself, startling Amy. As she joins the children at their table, Mason observes with mild exasperation that she has already started drinking. Irene cheerfully confirms that her work for the day is finished. She raises her mug, declaring that this is an afternoon toast to celebrate the team's first completed quest since their promotion. Her celebratory mood makes Marco worry that they are being inconsiderate, but Irene waves off his concern, insisting it is her treat. She turns to Mason and orders 3 glasses of milk for them, prompting grateful thanks from the children. From behind the counter, Mason grumbles that she shouldn't drink while working. Taking another swig, Irene proudly retorts that as a capable woman, she can certainly work while drinking. She then begins her explanation, stating that there are 3 main types of courses available at the Hunters Guild. The first category covers the basics for daily life: reading, writing, and arithmetic, law and system knowledge, and even hospitality and etiquette. She continues, detailing the next category, which enhances a person's basic skills like magic, martial arts, swordsmanship, and archery. The final category is meant to improve a hunter's specific abilities, offering courses on herb knowledge, traps, dismantling, and searching. Finishing her drink, she concludes that there are various options available. The children look on, amazed by the possibilities, just as Mason arrives at their table with the milk he brought for them. Amy inquired if anyone could take the guild's courses. The receptionist, Irene, clarified that they couldn't accept just anyone without conditions, explaining that the tuition fee is 100 riru per day for each person. She quickly calculated the cost, realizing it would be 700 riru to complete a single course. Taking a sip from her mug, Irene confirmed that all courses are designed to be completed in 7 days, with 1 hour of lessons per day. The receptionist elaborated that the tuition is quite expensive, which is why most hunters cannot afford to study, and there are few takers for the courses. Amy listened intently, understanding the situation. The information settled over the 3 children. While the cost was certainly high, Amy's expression hardened with resolve. With the money they now possessed, she believed it was a worthy investment and an opportunity they could not afford to miss. Her decision made, she firmly announced the 3 courses she intended to take: basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, law and system training, and hospitality and etiquette training. Inspired by her decisiveness, Marco declared that he would try the basic magic, basic swordsmanship, and beginner hunter courses. Seal, equally eager, raised her hand and added that she also wanted to take the basic magic course. She then wondered aloud what other course she should choose. Amy turned to her with a smile, suggesting that since Seal was a beautiful woman, the hospitality and etiquette course would be very useful for her future. Her face lit up with understanding. Seal agreed with Amy's advice and decided to also take the beginner hunter course, thinking it would be beneficial for their future activities together. With their choices made, Amy turned back to the receptionist and asked if there was a set timetable for the classes. Irene shook her head, explaining that the schedule would be adjusted according to the students' desired time. She finished with a cheerful grin and a peace sign, telling them to simply request a schedule whenever they were ready. With that settled, she declared they could start as early as tomorrow. Amy presents the finalized schedule to her friends, asking for their thoughts. Seal immediately agrees that it's great, and Marco enthusiastically concurs. The guild receptionist, Irene, leans in with a specific suggestion for Amy. She advises the 5-year-old to take a nap between noon and 1 o'clock, warning that she might fall asleep during the afternoon class otherwise. Marco and Seal agree, acknowledging that full-time activity is impossible for a malnourished child and that she needs proper rest. With the schedule settled, Irene calculates the total tuition fee for 3 people taking 3 courses each, arriving at a sum of 6,300 riru. Amy confirms she understands, mentally noting that while expensive, their finances are in good shape thanks to the money from selling her first glass container and their existing guild deposits. She silently thanks the containers for their contribution. When Irene asks if they plan to pay in installments or all at once, Amy beams and gives a thumbs up, declaring they will pay the full amount in cash, upfront, and with a smile. Her confident, if slightly unusual, declaration catches Irene by surprise. Amused and blushing slightly, she confirms their intention to pay in full, cheerfully questioning the addition of with a smile. This confidence was well-founded, stemming from their efforts the night before. Using her imagination creation skill, Amy had produced a high-value herbal soap gift set and a large jar of honey-blended honey. The next day, the 3 children delivered the goods, 18 bars of soap across 3 varieties, plus the honey, to Joshua's general store, where they were received with thanks. After completing the delivery, they proceeded to the Hunters Guild to submit their report. Irene greeted them warmly, congratulating Team Permission on a job well done. Their success was rewarded handsomely. The quest completion reward was 11,360 riru, and after taxes and fees were deducted, the remaining amount was deposited and split evenly, giving each member of the team 2,840 riru. With their tuition paid and funds secured, they went straight to their respective classes. Marco began his swordsmanship training, Seal focused on her magic, and Amy sat down at a desk to begin her own studies. She lets out a weary sigh as night falls over the guild. Her training has been exhausting. Despite her fatigue, She joins Marco and Seal in the Hunters Guild cafeteria. Marco comments on how much there is to do, but Seal adds that every day is fulfilling and fun, a sentiment with which Amy wholeheartedly agrees. Her newfound enthusiasm stems from more than just her crafting lessons. She proudly explains that she's gradually learning to read and write, which is helping her understand more about the world. She's learned that the town they live in is called Aurelia, and that it is ruled by Viscount Aurelia. The simple act of learning these facts brings her immense joy. As she beams with happiness, Seal brings up a different topic, recalling something she was told during her basic magic course. She explains with a hint of concern that their instructor found the way they use magic to be abnormal. The revelation catches Amy completely by surprise. Marco chimes in, confirming Seal's account. He elaborates that because they had been using magic their own way without any formal instruction, they weren't using the proper spells to activate it. Amy relays what she heard from them, explaining that according to their instructor, both Marco and Seal cause a stir when they easily change the shape and size of their spells. Seal continues the story, detailing the instructor's assessment. She explains that one cannot normally interfere with magic after it has been activated without a significant amount of magical strength and control. Hearing this, Amy can only think to herself how amazing her two friends truly are. She realizes the source of their incredible power, because they had to continuously use magic while living in the extreme poverty of the slums, lacking proper nutrition and physical strength. Their magical foundations were forged under immense strain. It was an experience akin to high-altitude training for a marathon runner. Now that their circumstances have changed, the results are astonishing. Having moved from that harsh environment to a well-nourished state, their latent power has been fully unleashed. It is as if heavy weights they have been carrying their whole lives have finally been removed, allowing them to perform amazing feats. Seal's face softens with a gentle smile as she recalls a recent event. She explains how happy she was that a proper expert had watched her use her magic and praised her for it. The younger girl looks up at her, understanding completely. She explains that since the townspeople have always treated them coldly because they're from the slums, being praised like this makes them truly happy. Their brother, Marco, interjects with boisterous energy, declaring that he's training in swordsmanship. He demonstrates by swinging a flaming stick he created with magic, much to Seal's shock, who points out that he's in a swordsmanship course, not a magic one. He pays her no mind, his eyes sparkling with determination. He proudly calls his creation a cool flame sword and vows that one day, he'll definitely show them its true power. Watching him, Amy drifts into a daydream. She imagines herself in a fine dress, effortlessly wielding multiple forms of magic, thinking how nice it must be and how she might have been able to perform some incredible feat if only she could use magic. But the fantasy quickly evaporates, leaving her with a heavy feeling. She realizes with a pang of despair that she has no magic, feeling as though she's the only weak one among her friends. In the background, the guild receptionist, Irene, walks by. The receptionist, however, seems to be in high spirits. Holding a mug, Irene smiles to herself, glad that everyone at promotion seems to be doing well, and raises a quiet toast to their future. She turns and walks away, leaving Amy watching her depart. The little girl realizes that Irene came to drink today and must enjoy alcohol. A new idea forms in her mind. Perhaps someday she should use her imagination creation ability to make some good alcohol and give it to her as a gift. After completing a 7-day guild course, Amy finishes her latest project using imagination creation, a full set of honey-infused soaps and a jar of pure honey. With her products neatly arranged, she stands proudly, declaring that everything is now ready for the next day's delivery. As she does, a familiar assessment of her status flashes through her mind, confirming her age as 5 and her condition as undernutrition, while highlighting her sole skill, imagination creation. She beams with excitement, realizing her skill has reached level 3, which now allows her to use it 3 times a day. Her joy is tempered by a new observation. Her condition has changed from malnourished to undernutrition, and she wonders if this subtle shift signifies a step toward becoming healthier. She considers her remaining power for the day. Having already used her ability twice, she has 1 use left and begins to ponder what else she could create. Her contemplation is interrupted as she runs over to Marco and Seal, calling out to get their attention. She excitedly announces that her skill has leveled up, granting her the ability to create 1 more item. Seal responds with delight, telling Amy how amazing she is. Eager to share her good fortune, she asks if there is anything they would like her to create for them. Marco and Seal pause, thoughtfully considering her generous offer. She peeks out from behind Seal, who hesitates when Marco gently prompts her to speak her mind. Instead of stating her own desire, Seal turns the question to Amy, asking what she wants. Amy insists that Seal should be the one to make a wish, an idea that both she and Marco enthusiastically support. With their encouragement, Seal finally reveals her wish. It is not for herself, but to express her gratitude and return the favor to Jane and her husband, who have helped them in so many ways. Marco immediately understands, connecting her words to a conversation they had before visiting the clothing store. Seal confirms that this is exactly what she meant. She begins to recount the memory, explaining that it happened on their way home after delivering the soap for the first time when they decided to stop by a clothing store. The memory is unpleasant, A clerk at the shop had confronted them with a barrage of suspicious questions. Were they alone? Where were their parents? Were they orphans? And where was their identification? Recalling the incident, all three children grimace. They remember all too well how they were treated with extreme rudeness. The story continues. Even after they showed their Hunters Guild ID, the clerk remained dismissive, condescendingly asking if they even had money or knew the prices of the clothes. Her attitude only began to change the moment they produced a single, gleaming gold coin. The sight of the gold coin rendered the clerk speechless. In that moment, Amy had been silently fuming, wondering if the woman was only now willing to sell them clothes. Her shock instantly transformed into a fawning, overly sweet demeanor. Clasping her hands together, she declared that of course she would help them, as they were customers after all. As the children walk, Marco explains that the shoe store they visited had the same dismissive attitude. He remarks that most shops in town treat children they can't identify with similar disdain, causing Amy to shudder at the memory. Walking between her older siblings on the town street, Amy looks up and calls out to them. She voices a sudden realization, stating that she now properly understands. After their experiences shopping, it has become clear just how much kinder Jane and Joshua are compared to all the other storekeepers. Seal agrees, noting that Jane and her husband are truly kind, treating even children with sincerity. Marco adds that the couple has taken care of them many times before. He expresses his hope that they can repay that kindness one day. With renewed determination, Seal declares that she will definitely do it, reminding him of the vow she just made. She then turns to Amy with a giggle, remarking that Achabai-chan did something amazing on their way home regarding that mean store clerk. A confused Amy simply asks what she means. The memory reveals Amy's chillingly intense expression as she addressed the clerk. She had thanked the woman for the wonderful clothes, adding that it would be their first and last purchase, and that the clerk should remember this well. Recalling this, Seal and Marco laugh heartily. Marco comments on how satisfying the moment was, certain that the store clerk must have been completely confused by the 5-year-old's parting words. Amy, however, does not share their amusement. Her face contorts in fury as she declares that she can't forgive those store clerks for being rude to Seal and Marco. Seal praises her, saying she did well to hold back. Internally, Amy admits she restrained herself, though she desperately wanted to tell the clerk they would never return because of her attitude. She resolves that she will never forgive anyone who hurts her siblings. She giggles softly before her expression turns serious, thanking her older sister for getting angry on their behalf during the incident at the clothing store. Her siblings voice their agreement. Seal exclaims that she's glad, and Marco chimes in with his own affirmation. Amy then adds that, in any case, she agrees with giving a gift to Jane and her husband. The children begin to brainstorm. Amy wonders aloud what kind of gift would be suitable. Marco suggests that something edible might be a better choice, but Seal quietly considers that a gift meant just for the two of them might be more meaningful. Continuing her thought, Seal proposes that it would be nice if they could give the couple a matching item, something they could share. A spark of understanding lights up Amy's face. Seal, seeing this, elaborates with excitement that it would be wonderful if Jane and Joshua could wear the same thing together. The following day, at Joshua's general store, the proprietor himself announces that the delivery report for the day is ready. Having arrived at the store, the children bow and thank Joshua for his hard work. He smiles warmly, thanking them in return. Seal, however, seems hesitant and struggles to find her words. Taking a deep breath, she gathers her courage and declares loudly that she has something she wants both him and Jane to receive. Her sudden announcement piques the curiosity of Joshua and Jane. Jane asks what it is, while Joshua guesses it might be a suggestion for a new product. From the side, Seal quickly clarifies that it isn't. Now flustered under their expectant gazes, Seal stammers, trying to explain that they want to thank them for all their help. Behind her, Marco and Amy watch intently, with Marco silently urging his sister to do her best. She clenches her fists, gathering her courage before speaking. With a blush dusting her cheeks, she explains that this is a token of their gratitude. With determination, she thrusts the gift forward, urging them, please take these. Her words hang in the air as Joshua and Jane look down, puzzled by the small pouch she has presented to them. Their confusion instantly vanishes, replaced by wide-eyed astonishment as they see the contents. Inside the pouch are two gleaming, perfectly crafted wristwatches with metallic bands. Jane stares, her voice trembling as she stammers, questioning if they could possibly be watches. He is just as stunned, sweating as he mutters in disbelief that such small timepieces could even exist. From nearby, Amy proudly announces that this was her third imagination creation. A pair of mechanical, self-winding wristwatches, valued at 49,280 yen. She happily notes their amazed reaction was even greater than for the glass bottle, and continues to explain the watch's features. They are automatic, requiring no batteries, made entirely of tough, scratch-resistant stainless steel, and are water-resistant up to 10 atmospheres, making them safe to use around water. As Amy clarifies that this device, a wristwatch, is worn on the wrist to check the time, the concept strikes Jane and Joshua with overwhelming force. They cry out in unison, flabbergasted by the very idea. Joshua, utterly speechless, can only manage a faint sound of comprehension. He laughs with pure delight, wiping a tear from his eye as he exclaims that he's never heard of anything so amazing. Beside him, Jane remains flustered, insisting they cannot possibly accept such an incredible gift. In response to their hesitation, Seal earnestly insists they receive the gift, explaining it's a token of their long-held gratitude. Marco chimes in, pleading for them to take it, while Amy watches with wide-eyed anticipation. Jane's gaze softens as she looks at Seal, the children's earnestness stirring a memory. She hesitates, her mind drifting back to a specific moment from the past. The memory sharpens, focusing on the very day she first met Jane. In that memory, a much younger Seal stood alone in a desolate alley, her small form shrouded in shadow, hands clasped together in desperation. She had approached another child, her voice weak as she explained her dire situation. Her mother was ill and desperately needed food, but her plea was met with scorn. The other children recoiled in disgust, shouting at her to go away, branding her a dirty slum kid. Rejected, she slammed her fist against a nearby wall, the sharp sound a testament to her despair. Defeated, she could only whisper apologies to the empty air, her head bowed low. Finally, she turned to one last door, finding Jane inside. With all the courage she could muster, the young Seal repeated her plea, begging for some food for her sick mother. She had collapsed onto the floor, her small body giving out from hunger and desperation. But in that moment, Jane had simply smiled, holding out a loaf of black bread. The unexpected kindness brought tears to the young girl's eyes, a wave of relief washing over her. Finishing her recollection, Jane recalls Seal's thoughts from that day, that Jane was the only person who had ever treated her properly and given her food. Her husband, Joshua, reflects on the memory, acknowledging that dealing with children from the slums could have damaged the store's reputation. As he speaks, Seal continues, telling Jane that she was incredibly happy back then just to have been given that bread. Her voice trembles with emotion as she explains that the gratitude she felt at that time is something she will never forget. Tears stream down her face as she makes the heartfelt declaration. Her raw emotion hangs in the air. Joshua looks on with a knowing smile, while Jane is visibly taken aback, a bead of sweat on her temple. She turns away, flustered and blushing, clearly moved by the depth of Seal's gratitude. Having moved past the emotional exchange, Amy cheerfully begins to explain the gift, pointing out how to adjust the time on the clock. She instructs Jane and Joshua to synchronize it with the chime. Joshua understands immediately and thanks her, while Jane, smiling, remarks that it feels good to show appreciation properly. Her task complete, Amy peeks out from behind the counter with a broad, satisfied grin, watching as Marco and Seal share in a happy moment. The scene triggers a memory for Seal, transporting her back to her childhood. She recalls excitedly telling her mother that a kind person had given her some black bread, and that it was very delicious. In the memory, she leans over her bedridden mother, gently urging her to listen to what she has to say. She explained with innocent conviction that because they received this food, it was proof that God was always watching over them. Her mother had taught her to always be grateful to God and to the person who had given them the bread. Tears begin to form in the young Seal's eyes as she recalls her mother saying that a ring, once said to belong to an angel, was all she had left for her. Her mother's final instruction was to keep that ring hidden where no one would ever know of it. Through her sobs, Seal promised she would. The lesson concluded with a solemn warning that echoed in her mind. God is always watching, so she must never do anything embarrassing in his sight. She sniffled, tears streaming down her face as her mother's final words echoed in her memory. A plea to be kind, to always be cheerful, and to live life to its fullest. Through her sobs, the young girl managed a single, whispered word of agreement. Okay. Her mother's voice, though weak, was filled with conviction, promising that even through pain and hardship, God would definitely reach out to her someday. She just had to wait until that time came. Returning to the present, that memory solidified her resolve. She understood now that she just had to be patient until the foretold angel appeared. Her gaze settled on the small child before her. The legendary angel, she mused, with silver hair and silver eyes. Until that day arrived, she would endure. She turned to the little girl, explaining that while she had borrowed Achabai-chan's power for the time being, it was only a temporary measure. Her true goal was to become more independent, hoping that one day she could be recognized by the people of the town on her own merits. And through her own effort, she was already making progress, building a warm and friendly rapport with the kind shopkeepers, Jane and Joshua. At the general store, Jane joyfully expresses her gratitude for the new wristwatch she wears, while Joshua, also wearing one, smiles and promises they will both treasure them. Observing the happy shopkeepers are Amy, Seal, and Marco, their own faces lit with warm, contented smiles. Seal turns to Amy, noting how good it is that she finally showed her gratitude. Emboldened, Amy calls out to Joshua from the doorway, asking if she might request a favor. He kindly inquires what she needs. She hesitantly asks if it would be possible for them to take a break from their delivery duties the following day. Joshua's expression remains warm as he assures her it's perfectly fine, explaining that they still have plenty of stock. His thoughts then turn to their arrangement, and he asks if she's truly okay with making deliveries every other day, adding that he wouldn't mind if it's too much of a burden for them. His consideration sparks a new worry in Amy. She wonders if the product isn't selling well and voices her fear that he might cancel the deliveries entirely. Joshua quickly waves his hands to dismiss the idea, insisting that is not the case at all. He decides to give them a small business lesson, explaining that they are positioning the item as a luxury product. This involves carefully selecting who they sell to, which makes the product feel more special and, in turn, increases its value through strategic marketing. The three children stare, wide-eyed, as they process this information. Marco murmurs that business is a deep and complex subject, a thought that seems to be shared by the others. Joshua offers a reassuring smile, telling them not to worry. Jane adds enthusiastically that this is precisely what makes their work so rewarding. It's a place where they can truly show off their skills. Joshua agrees, saying he looks forward to their continued partnership, and the children happily concur. Later, standing outside, Seal notes that since they already finished all their guild courses the previous day, they don't have anything else left to do. With his hands on his hips, Marco confirms she's right. She begins to explain her reasoning to a curious Marco, who asks why she requested a day off from deliveries for the next day and changed their schedule to every other day. Her answer is simple: leisure. She reminds him that they've been working very hard to escape the slums and believes it would be a great idea for them to have more free time. She elaborates, pointing out that after their guild training, they were busy with deliveries for about a week straight. Since they haven't had a break, she feels it's time to take one. Marco and Seal listen, and he enthusiastically agrees with her. With a sly smile, she admits that while her points about needing a break are true, there is another, main reason for her decision. Her true motivation is for the sake of her beloved Nin and Oni-ai. She reveals that she was inspired to return the favor to Jane and her husband. By taking a break from the next day's delivery, she can use her imagination creation ability 3 times without restriction. Having laid out her plan, she turns to Marco and Seal. She reminds them that she already asked them yesterday, but she wants to confirm what it is they want. She clarifies that since tomorrow is a day off, they can use today's imagination creation freely. With a bright, expectant smile, she asks if there is anything they want, prompting them to look at each other in thought. His response is immediate and passionate. Marco declares that he wants delicious food, shouting that meat is the best. Amy internally notes that his wish is just as she expected. With one wish decided, she turns her smiling face to Seal. She asks her what she wants, and Seal looks back, surprised to be put on the spot. She remains silent for a moment, her finger pressed to her lips in thought. Amy, meanwhile, grins with cheerful anticipation, thinking of the sweet honey they sell. After some consideration, Seal voices her simple desire. She wants to taste that honey again. The request leaves Amy utterly stunned, her eyes wide with surprise. She misinterprets Amy's shock and quickly retracts her wish, waving her hands dismissively. She thanks Amy for the kind thought, but insists she is fine, explaining that the honey is far too expensive. A horrible realization dawns on Amy. She wonders if Seal had been suppressing her desire for something sweet this whole time simply because it was too costly, all while Amy herself was only thinking about making money. Overcome with guilt, she turns to Seal and apologizes, calling her by her nickname, Nin. The apology catches Seal completely off guard. With tears forming in her eyes, Amy confesses that she was so focused on money that she didn't think enough about Seal's feelings. Flustered, Seal quickly insists that it's totally fine. She leans closer, earnestly reassuring Amy. Seal reminds her that because of all her hard work, they were able to get out of the slums, register with the guild, and even repay the kindness of Jean and her husband. Her own voice thick with emotion and tears welling in her eyes, she declares that all of these wonderful things were only possible because of Amy. Marco chimes in, adding his support. He tells Amy that she thought of everything and did it all for them, which is why they are so grateful. He concludes firmly that she has nothing to apologize for. Moved by their reassurance, Amy looks up at her friends, her voice thick with emotion as she calls out their names. He and Seal understand, simply thanking her. With a bright smile, Amy announces that to make up for all their patience, she will now serve them lots of delicious food and encourages them to enjoy it. She closes her eyes, concentrating. She decides to create food that both of them would like, and in a huge serving. In a flash of light, her imagination creation ability manifests a large box. It contains a 120-piece set of 30-gram authentic aged beef jerky, valued at 99,800 yen. Immediately after, a second, even larger box appears. This one is a commercial set of jam sachets for school lunches, containing 1,200 individual 15-gram packets, valued at 32,400 yen. The sudden materialization of 2 large brown boxes startles Marco and Seal, who cry out in surprise. Amy stands before them, beaming with pride. He peers into the first box, his shock turning to amazement. He exclaims that it's full of dried meat. Amy explains that it's called beef jerky and that this particular kind is flavored with a whole pepper, Japanese-style sauce with garlic. She continues, explaining that it's a great snack for kids, with a soy sauce and strong garlic base, but also a touch of pepper for slightly more mature, spicy flavor, before turning her attention to the other box. Pointing to the second box, she tells an equally amazed Seal that it contains various flavors of single-serving packets, including honey, maple jelly, and raisin cream. She cheerfully announces that there are a total of 1,200 packets inside, a number so staggering that it leaves both Marco and Seal utterly speechless and wide-eyed with shock. She excitedly explains that for people who rarely eat sweets, the jam can be eaten with bread or simply licked as Seal wished. She jokes that the experience is sure to leave them in a cat-like state, then wonders aloud what is wrong with her for suggesting such a thing. With her arms spread wide in a gesture of pure generosity, she beams and tells Seal and Marco that there's a lot of it, urging them to please eat as much as they want. Touched by her kindness, both Marco and Seal smile warmly in return, thanking her sincerely for the gift. Their gratitude, however, seems to spark a new thought in Seal. While Amy continues to smile happily, Seal's expression shifts to one of concern as she suddenly asks, "But what about Achabai-chan?" The question interrupts the celebratory mood. As Marco looks on, Seal presses the point, asking what it is that Amy truly wants for herself. The little girl looks up at them, her cheerful expression replaced by one of quiet surprise. She stands silently for a moment, the question echoing in her mind as she begins to contemplate what she truly desires. Seal clarifies that the dried meat and honey were things she and Marco wanted. Marco chimes in, agreeing that since Amy is the one working to provide everything, she should be the one to get things she wants as well. Amy is stunned by their selflessness, wondering why they are still thinking about her needs even now. Her thoughts drift back to the past. She remembers that they never abandoned her, even when she was just a hindrance to them in the harsh poverty of the slums. They had always been by her side. A sudden, sharp realization strikes her. In her intense focus on making money to thank them and apologize, she hadn't even considered their feelings. She looks between them, understanding now that even in this moment of abundance, Seal and Marco were still thinking of her first, rather than themselves. A quiet, heartfelt thank you escapes her lips. She struggles to articulate the overwhelming feeling, her thoughts catching her throat as she tries to form the words, "I am." The unspoken sentiment gives way to a physical release as large, crystalline tears well up in her eyes and begin to stream down her flushed cheeks. Her sudden outburst catches Marco and Seal completely by surprise, their own eyes widening in shared concern. They rush to her side, their voices a flurry of worried questions. Seal asks what's wrong, while Marco, confused, asks why she's crying and apologizing. Amidst her hiccuping sobs, Amy finally manages to voice the beginning of her deepest desire, to be with her Nin and Oniai forever. The words hang in the air, a simple, heartfelt plea. Hearing her wish, their worried expressions melt away, replaced by soft, understanding smiles. They both reach out, gently placing their hands on her head in a comforting gesture. Seal promises her that it's okay, and Marco affirms that they will always continue to be with her. With bright, reassuring smiles, they declare in unison that they'll all be together forever. As Amy looks up at them, their promise sparks a profound realization within her about what it is she truly wants. Her mind flashes to an image of herself presenting the Imagination Creation board game set. In this scenario, when Seal asks if this is what she truly wants, Amy's own thoughts provide the answer. No, that isn't it. The vision shifts. Now, she declares her desire to play the game with them. Marco and Seal respond with interest, asking to be taught how to play. A serene smile graces her face as she understands. Her true wish isn't the object, but the shared experience. She pictured the three of them, Marco, Seal, and herself, sitting together, smiling brightly as they played a game. This was the happiness she truly wanted. Later that evening, as they ate, Marco and Seal were overjoyed by the food's flavor. Marco exclaimed how strong and delicious it was, while Seal found the sweet, fruity scent to be a dream come true. Amy agreed it was delicious, but realized it was too much for her to eat alone. It was a delicious waste, she thought, and an idea began to form. Her new idea solidified. She decided that they should share a little bit with the people who had taken care of them. And so, they made their way to the Hunters Guild. Inside, the receptionist, Irene, greeted them warmly. Recognizing them as team promotion, she welcomed them and asked what their plans were for the day. He explained that they had come to share something with her. Irene looked back, puzzled by his statement. Seal added that they had acquired some delicious things and hoped she would like them. Amy chimed in enthusiastically, thanking Irene for all her help. They presented their gifts, 10 portions of meat and 20 packets of honey. Irene was taken aback by the sheer amount. She picked up the dried meat, noting how delicious it looked and thinking it would pair well with alcohol. Then she examined one of the small packets, wondering what it contained. Seal explained that the little bags contained honey with different flavors. Irene was stunned, exclaiming that it was honey and that there was so much of it. She blushes, her expression softening with emotion. The gift is so sweet and delicious. She thinks it tastes like pure happiness. She wonders aloud if it's truly all right for her to accept something so precious. Deciding this is a rare opportunity she can't pass up, she gladly accepts the items, declaring that her snack for the evening has been decided. Amy insists, telling her to please take them. The children thank Irene for her help and turn to leave, announcing their next destination is the cafeteria cook's place. Watching them depart, Irene smiles to herself, thinking what a good group of kids they are. Her attention returns to the gift in her hands. She marvels at the transparent bag, wondering what kind of advanced technology could create something that contains the honey perfectly without leaking any scent. Her contemplation is broken by a voice calling her name. An elderly man with a white beard, leaning on a cane, approaches her desk and asks if he might take a look as well. Irene looks up, startled by his sudden appearance. A heavy silence hangs in the air. Across a table, the guild master, the cafeteria cook, and the general store owner stand with grim expressions, confronting the three children. Marco, Amy, and Seal sit before them, their eyes wide with shock and apprehension. Her mind raced, struggling to comprehend the gravity of the meeting. What was this situation? How had it come to this? The memory was a blur of exhaustion. It had all started a short while ago, back at the Hunters Guild. There, Seal had explained their plan. Since they had the next day off from deliveries, they would take on some quests from the bulletin board. They had accepted a simple request to mow some grass. Their teamwork was efficient. Marco used his fire magic to burn away the weeds, while Seal controlled the flames with her water magic to prevent them from spreading. Amy watched, feeling as though she hadn't contributed anything useful. Returning to the guild, they approached the reception desk. Marco called out a cheerful hello, announcing they were from promotion. The receptionist, Irene, greeted them back with a bright smile. Her smile widened as she thanked them profusely for the treat they had given her the day before, exclaiming that it was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. Amy, pleased, assumed she was talking about the sweet honey. Irene looked surprised, clarifying that while the honey was indeed delicious, that wasn't what she meant. Her expression shifted to one of intense passion as she declared she was talking about the dried meat. She raved about its perfect saltiness, the exquisite spiciness, and how wonderfully it paired with ale, which she was now drinking with gusto. As Irene continued to drink and celebrate, Amy watched with a deadpan expression, finally understanding. Irene San loved drinking. Seal, equally bewildered, could only ask what exactly that meat was. She looks on in utter confusion, demanding to know what everyone is talking about. Her question is directed at Mason, the cafeteria cook, who passionately explains that adding their honey-dried meat to ordinary brown bread transforms it into a heavenly dessert. He marvels at how the honey is separated into smaller portions, each with its own delightful sweetness. Beside him, Irene enjoys a piece herself, remarking that one shouldn't judge a person by their appearance. She seems amused to discover that the tough-looking cook has such a prominent sweet tooth. Putting that aside, she turns to the children with a serious expression, asking if they have time to discuss a promotion. The proposal leaves Amy, Marco, and Seal completely baffled. Her question leads directly to the present situation, a formal, intimidating meeting. The three children sit opposite a formidable lineup of adults, the store owners Jane and Joshua, the cook Mason, the receptionist Irene, and the guild master, all staring intently. Seated at the far end of a long table, the children are dwarfed by the gravity of the room. Amy's mind screams with a single thought. What is this situation? Her face is pale with sweat and fear as she frantically wonders if they have done something terribly wrong. She glances over and sees that Seal is also trembling uncontrollably, her eyes welling with tears from the sheer intimidation of the adults facing them. The tense silence is finally broken by the elderly man at the center of the table. He apologizes for the sudden summons and suggests they begin with introductions. With a kind expression, he formally introduces himself as Logan, the branch chief of this Hunters Guild. He gestures to the others in the room, beginning the introductions. A cheerful woman named Hannah presents herself as the manager of the purchasing department, followed by a man in glasses, Ethan, who introduces himself as the vice branch manager. Following their lead, Irene speaks up, revealing with a smile that she is the head receptionist. The children realize with a jolt that the friendly woman they've been dealing with holds a significant position. Then, the imposing cafeteria cook, Mason, announces that he is not only the cafeteria master, but also the head of the supplies department, adding to the children's shock. The weight of these introductions settles upon them. Amy, Marco, and Seal sit side by side, their expressions of awe mixed with intimidation as they process that they're surrounded by the guild's top brass. Their internal panic escalates. They now understand this is a formal summons from the guild's most powerful figures, and a single, terrifying thought consumes them. What have they done to deserve this? Seeing their terrified faces, Mason covers his own in exasperation. He urges them not to be so wary, assuring them that they haven't brought bad news, though his words do little to calm the trembling children. At this, the guild master finally cuts to the chase. He explains that, to put it simply, the meeting is about the items they handed out to Irene and Mason. He smiles warmly, holding up his fingers as if presenting the very items in question, the dried meat and honey bags. He then makes his formal proposal, stating he'd like them to sell their products to the Hunters Guild. The offer stuns the three children into silence. They can only stare back, collective, disbelieving gasp escaping them. Before they can fully process the proposal, Irene leans forward, holding up a piece of the meat. She passionately insists that more people simply must know about this delicious dried meat. The enthusiasm for the children's products was palpable among the guild's department heads. Mason, the cafeteria cook, declared his intent to serve the honey with bread, while Hannah from the purchasing department, having tasted it herself, praised its quality and expressed her desire to have it stocked for sale. The guild master attempted to summarize the proposal for the children, but they could only stare back with blank, uncomprehending expressions, utterly stunned by the sudden turn of events. She finally processed his words, her large eyes wide with disbelief. Amy sought clarification, asking if they truly meant to sell the dried meat and honey packets at the Hunters Guild. Hannah's cheerful confirmation of "that's right" sent a jolt of understanding through the young girl, whose face lit up with dawning realization. Her siblings shared in her delight. Marco and Seal beamed, expressing their happiness that the guild members had enjoyed the food they shared so much. Their celebration was cut short as Ethan, the branch vice chief, spoke up, indicating there was more to discuss. He noted that, in addition to the food items, there was another matter of interest. He continued, bringing up the mysterious transparent bag used for packaging, which possessed the unusual quality of preventing moisture or smells from escaping. The children's smiles vanished, replaced by looks of utter confusion. As Hannah held up one of the bags for inspection, asking about the transparent container, a cold sweat broke out on Amy's face. Her eyes widened in panic. She frantically recalled her mistake. The dried meat had been in transparent packaging, and in her emotional state after crying earlier, she had completely forgotten to remove it. They had remembered to remove the packaging with foreign characters from the soap, but had overlooked it on the meat. Her internal panic was cut short as Irene spoke, offering an apology. She revealed that the Hunters Guild was already aware that the group calling themselves Promotion handles special delivery requests, a fact that seemed to stun the children into silence. She stammers nervously, sweating as she explains that of course the guild would know about their activities, since they are the ones processing the quests. The guild master beside her remains placid. He continues his line of inquiry, stating that he has never seen a transparent bag like this in this world before, implying it is something completely foreign. The weight of his words strikes the children. Seal, her eyes wide with shock, blurts out that it must be an item created by a special summoned ability. The implication hangs heavy in the tense silence that follows. His gaze sharpens as he delivers his conclusion, declaring his belief that the ability belongs to the little girl, Amy. The three children stare back, stunned by the direct accusation. Marco and Seal immediately leap to her defense. He shouts that it isn't true, insisting it's a complex magic that requires all three of them working together. Seal quickly agrees, determined to follow through on their decision to protect Amy. The guild master calmly dismantles their lie, reminding them that based on the lessons they've received, he knows their magical attributes are fire, wind, and water, none of which could create such an object. His logic leaves Marco speechless and flustered. The guild master presses his point, concluding that by process of elimination, the ability must be Amy's. As he speaks, Amy realizes this might be the moment she has to act. She internally fumes at his smug expression, annoyed by his pretense of knowing everything. With quiet resolve, she decides it is time to use her secret tactic. As she steels herself, the guild master's mind is already elsewhere, thoughtfully considering other details about her, her hair, her eyes, and even her name. The sudden shift in the atmosphere leaves Marco, Amy, and Seal wide-eyed and speechless. Amy looks up with a questioning gaze, while her older companions are visibly shocked. His mind races in panic. He recognizes the packaging as a trait of a divine messenger and realizes with horror that Amy's identity has been exposed far too easily. He desperately wonders what he should do. Seal is gripped by the same terror, tears welling in her eyes. She recalls registering the little girl at the Hunters Guild under the name Ami, a decision that now feels catastrophic. The three of them sit in a heavy, unnerving silence across the table from the guild master and his staff. In the oppressive quiet, Marco and Seal exchange a frantic, worried glance. He breaks the silence, his voice strained as he looks down at the table. He confirms to the guild master that the items were indeed created by Amy. Seal looks at him in alarm, questioning his confession. She immediately tries to mitigate the damage, her voice trembling. She explains that if people find out about Amy's ability, the little girl will be in serious trouble. Marco looks back at her, startled by her outburst. The weight of their situation hangs heavy in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the danger. In a desperate, unified plea, Marco and Seal bow their heads low. He begs the guild master to keep it a secret, while she implores him to protect Amy if at all possible. Hearing their desperate cries, Amy looks up, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She whispers their names before adding her own small, earnest voice to their plea. The three of them stand nervously as Hannah chides the cafeteria cook, Mason, for putting too much pressure on them. He wipes sweat from his brow, explaining that this was their intention from the beginning and that the children shouldn't worry, which catches them by surprise. He elaborates, stating they wanted to clarify the situation directly. He reasons that if they had simply left things to the guild, the children would have continued to sneak around. He then apologizes for having scared them. At this point, the guild master interjects, asking what the children's intentions are. With a calm expression, he formally asks if they would like to leave the matter in the hands of the Hunters Guild. Faced with this direct offer, the three children fall into a tense silence, their faces reflecting their deep uncertainty. While they consider the proposition, Hannah speculates to Mason that the gifts the children gave her and Irene were actually a calculated move to get the guild interested in their product. Seal listens quietly nearby. Amy, surprised by this assumption, clarifies that it wasn't the case at all. She explains they simply wanted to share something with them, as thanks for their recent kindness. Her innocent explanation makes Hannah pause mid-chew. She realizes there's no way such good kids would be so manipulative. She then wonders why she's eating the dried meat, remembering it pairs well with alcohol, which she doesn't have at the moment. The guild master, also enjoying a piece of the meat, is called out by Hannah. She reminds him they already ate, but he simply smiles and says he doesn't feel like he's eaten yet. Growing exasperated by the digression, Mason brings the conversation back to the main issue. He declares that Amy's ability isn't the only thing they need to address, surprising Marco and Seal. He then directs his focus to the two older children, revealing that their own magical abilities have become a topic of much discussion within the guild. The revelation leaves them both stunned. He and Seal were still processing the guild's interest in their magic, but Amy broke the silence with a cheerful exclamation. She declared that it all made sense, as they had both been amazing during the magic class. Her comment was followed by a formal address from Ethan. Adjusting his glasses, he stated that the Hunters Guild wished to negotiate with them regarding a team promotion. As Amy listened intently, the guild master clarified the proposal. He confirmed that if they delivered the dried meat and honey to the Hunters Guild, the guild would, in return, provide official protection for all three of them. For children who had just escaped the slums, this was incredible news. They thanked him profusely. The guild master smiled warmly, explaining that it was only natural for a guild to want to surround itself with talented hunters. With the general agreement settled, Ethan moved on to the specific conditions of their arrangement. He asked Amy to first state the quantity of goods she could deliver and on what basis. She paused to think, considering her deliveries to Joshua's store and that her imagination creation could be used 3 times a day. She concluded that she could likely provide about 100 of each type of dried meat and honey packet. She then specified the delivery frequency, once every 1 to 3 days. The sheer volume shocked Ethan, whose glasses seemed to crack under the strain as he sputtered. 100 pieces? His astonishment was palpable. Hannah sought clarification, asking if Amy meant all the different types of honey packets. Amy confirmed with a simple yes, adding that she thought there were about 10 different kinds. The realization struck Hannah with physical force. She quickly calculated the total, about 1,000 pieces of honey alone, and reeled back, exclaiming the number in disbelief. Their shock quickly morphed into concern for the child. Hannah asked if it was truly all right for her to make so many, worried it would be a burden on her body, while Ethan echoed the sentiment, stunned she could produce it all in just a few days. She beams, cheerfully reassuring the stunned guild staff that creating the items won't be a burden in the slightest and that they shouldn't worry. Her casual confidence does little to soothe the nerves of the guild master and Hannah, who remains speechless and sweating with disbelief. Ethan, visibly flustered, adjusts his glasses and stammers that he understands. He suggests that while they would like her to produce as much as possible, it would be wise to leave some margin for safety, just in case. He then formally proposes a delivery of 100 units of each type of dried meat and small packets of honey to be delivered every 5 days. Without a moment's hesitation, Amy brightly agrees, declaring it's no problem at all. With the supply details settled, Ethan thanks her profusely and announces that it's time to discuss the specifics of their rewards. The guild master then takes over the conversation. He begins by stating that, first and foremost, the Hunters Guild will offer them its full protection. He then asks Amy what, exactly, they want from the guild in return. Turning to her companions, she asks Seal and Marco what they should do. Marco immediately insists that Amy should be the one to decide. A sentiment Seal quickly echoes, agreeing that he's right. Seal clarifies her position, stating that her wish is for Amy to do whatever she wants. Marco emphatically agrees. Amy, touched, asks if they are certain, even if it's her own personal wish. Taking in their unwavering support, she closes her eyes for a moment, contemplating her decision. Her eyes snap open, a new determination shining within them. With Marco and Seal watching intently, she begins to state her request, if that's the case. Inside the Hunters Guild, the children and several guild members are seated around a long table for a formal discussion. The conversation turns to what the children hope to gain from their new association with the guild. Amy speaks for the group, her expression earnest. She states their primary request. If they ever find themselves caught up in any trouble, they want the guild to mediate things smoothly, no matter the circumstances. Her bold request hangs in the air. Marco and Seal watch with nervous apprehension, while the guild master, Logan, listens with a focused, unreadable expression. The other guild staff, Seal, the cook Mason, Ethan, and Hannah, all show signs of surprise and concern at the gravity of the child's demand. Logan leans forward, questioning the simplicity of her request. He asks if mere mediation is enough, clarifying that the guild won't simply take their side without question. Amy concedes the point, acknowledging that laws must be considered and that there will be times when they themselves are in the wrong. She then smiles sweetly, elaborating on her nuanced position. She explains that they understand the guild's hands might be tied when dealing with nobles or other influential people. In such cases, they just hope the guild will manage to smooth things over for them. Her surprisingly mature and pragmatic reasoning renders the guild master momentarily speechless, his expression frozen as he processes her words. After a beat of silence, he erupts into a hearty laugh. He remarks with amusement that despite being just a child, she thinks about all sorts of complex matters. With a smile, he confirms that he understands her position. He then makes a solemn promise. The Hunters Guild will mediate any disputes that arise and will stand by their side. In a small inset, the children express their profound thanks for his declaration of support. With the agreement settled, Ethan redirects the meeting. He announces that they will now move on to the topic of rewards for their deliveries. Amy looks up, startled, questioning if the guild's protection wasn't the reward itself. As she listened, Ethan clarified the terms. The guild's protection was a separate matter. The compensation for the deliveries would be handled independently. At this, Hannah cheerfully interjected, assuring the young girl that the guild had no intention of taking things without proper compensation, while Mason simply addressed her as Achabai. She became flustered, quickly denying that she thought such a thing as Mason stared, asking if she truly believed the Hunters Guild would scam people. Bringing the conversation back on topic, Ethan adjusted his glasses and formally asked what she wished to receive as a reward for the deliveries. Her companions turned to her, putting the decision in her hands. Seal gently asked if there was anything else she wanted, while Marco simply questioned what she would do. An idea suddenly struck her. She knew they could earn money by making regular deliveries to Joshua's general store, but she considered that perhaps, instead of money, they should ask for something they currently had a hard time acquiring. She turned to her friends, asking if it was all right for her to decide again. Both Marco and Seal gave their immediate and enthusiastic consent. With their blessing, she faced Ethan once more. She asked if the compensation could be something other than money. He confirmed it was fine, as long as it was something the Hunters Guild could provide. Her eyes brightened as she made her request, asking if it would be possible for them to have the tall grass area in the open yard of the guild, the very place they were currently living. Upon hearing her idea, both Seal and Marco reacted with wide-eyed surprise, quickly realizing that her suggestion might actually be a brilliant one. Inside the Hunters Guild, the guild master, Logan, considers the unusual request. He asks his staff if anyone knows about the grassy area on the north side of the open yard. Hannah confirms its location, recalling the specific spot. Ethan, another staff member, steps forward with an assessment. He explains that the place has been left as is, without any maintenance, and holds virtually no value as an asset. Hearing this, the guild master turns back to the children with a gentle smile. He asks if they are truly certain they want such a seemingly useless piece of land. In perfect unison, Amy, Seal, and Marco give a resounding, enthusiastic yes. With a decisive rap of his hand on the desk, the matter is settled. The guild master's voice rings out, declaring that the land, along with the goods, will serve as their payment. From outside the office, the children's grateful shouts can be heard. Back on their newly acquired land, the tension of the meeting finally dissipates. Marco stretches, admitting he's tired and was incredibly nervous. Seal agrees, confessing that the whole ordeal was quite scary. Amikiatli concurs. Their relief quickly blossoms into joy. Marco exclaims how glad he is that everything worked out, and Seal excitedly adds that they finally have their own land. Amy beams, agreeing with them. As the initial excitement fades, a moment of quiet contemplation passes between Seal and Marco. Their shared glance solidifies a mutual realization. Marco speaks first, observing that it seems Amy is the only one who had a difficult time. Seal looks down, her expression pained as she agrees, admitting that they're always relying on the little girl. Overhearing them, she quickly refutes their conclusion. She insists it isn't true, pointing out that the day's weeding was completed thanks to Seal's and Marco's magic. She laments that, in the end, she feels she didn't do anything to help. The day's efforts suddenly overwhelm her, and she slumps forward, fast asleep. The older children watch over her, realizing she has finally reached her limit. They note with concern that she was worn out from the meeting and hadn't even taken a nap. After she collapsed, Mason, the cafeteria cook, offered to carry her, and his help was accepted as she was entrusted to his care. 2 days later, he returned to the children's plot of land, announcing his arrival with a friendly wave and hoping he wasn't intruding. He was met with a joyous and unified welcome from a fully recovered Amy, alongside Marco and Seal. Looking past them, Mason surveyed the area. He remarked on how spacious their land was and noted with surprise that the interior of their new dwelling was set up quite nicely, a stark contrast to its external appearance. Amy proudly explained how they had managed the cleanup. The previous day, Marco had used his fire magic to burn away the overgrown weeds, while Seal carefully controlled the flames with her water magic to prevent them from spreading. Hearing this, Mason crossed his arms, impressed by their practical use of magic for such a task. Amy, beaming with pride, agreed enthusiastically, declaring that her friends were indeed amazing. He looked at the 2 older children and commented that their abilities sounded promising. Seal cheerfully replied that she enjoys using magic, and Marco confidently added that he is particularly good with fire magic. His attention then shifted to a large object nearby, and he asked about the strange, big iron box on wheels. Marco proudly announced that it was their new home, as Amy peeked out, pleased that he had noticed. He gestured toward the vehicle, excitedly identifying it as a minivan. The term was completely foreign to Mason, who repeated it in confusion. Seal elaborated on its qualities, describing it as tidy, comfortable, and perfectly sized for their needs. Mason considered the novel idea of a house on wheels, though he privately thought it looked a little cramped. He examined the strange vehicle, noting its blue-silver metal base and glass windows. The presence of glass seemed particularly sketchy to him, making him wonder about the minivan's original purpose. He conceded that for these children, something of this size was probably sufficient for a home. In fact, he had to admit, it was actually pretty cool. Shaking off his surprise, he refocused on his task. Muttering about a close call, he turned his attention to the children and asked where the items were that he had come to collect. In response, a cheerful voice announced their arrival, revealing 2 large cardboard boxes. He stared at them, perplexed. "Brown boxes?" he questioned, as Amy looked on with a hint of exasperation. She explained that they had set aside leftovers for their meals and snacks, storing them inside the cardboard boxes. She detailed the contents: 100 packs of dried meat and 10 different kinds of honey with 100 units of each, for a grand total of 1,000. Marco, standing nearby, looked utterly baffled by the term cardboard. The boy remarked that the containers didn't look like anything he recognized and asked if it was all right for Mason to take the entire box. Amy assured him it was nothing special, just the container itself. The cook accepted the explanation and announced he would carry the goods to the guild. As he reached down to lift one of the boxes, however, he paused, sensing something was off. As he lifted it, he was shocked by how light it was. Amy cheerfully explained that cardboard is made from paper but is surprisingly durable. Marco reacted with disbelief, exclaiming that if it was made of paper, it must be an incredibly luxurious box. The older boy reasoned that since paper is quite valuable, it would be a waste to make a box from it, questioning if it was really okay for them to give it away. Amy simply affirmed that it was. Mason's eyes remained fixed on the box, his thoughts turning over the possibilities. It could be used for transporting other light things, he mused. He then remembered something, tapping the box and noting aloud that it was made of paper after all. He commented to Amy that while useful, it wasn't very durable and was vulnerable to water. In response, Amy presented him with a document. Marco explained that it was the completion report for the delivery, which also served as the transfer certificate for the land. Mason's eyes widened slightly as Marco pointed out that since it wasn't a formal quest, they wouldn't be taking any taxes or fees. He chuckled to himself, reasoning that since the land was practically free, there was nothing to deduct a 20% fee from in the first place. His amusement turned to a hearty laugh, finding the whole situation hilarious. As he laughed, Amy presented a second page, explaining it was the personal request form. Marco then directed his attention to the form, stating their request for continuous deliveries from now on. He pointed out the listed purchase prices: 30 rylas for flavored dried meat in a premium transparent bag, and 158 rylas for various honeys in similar bags, asking Mason to review them. Mason's expression sobered. He apologized to his surprised seal, explaining that the guild had already set its own price, which he assured them was a fair amount. He clarified that this was a purchase, so of course they would receive payment, reminding them that the guild doesn't exploit people. Amy, confused, asked if the land wasn't their reward. Mason confirmed it was, but only for the first delivery they had just made. He continued, explaining that while the land was called a reward, it held no real value and was practically being given away. To take their valuable dried meat and honey in exchange for that would severely damage the guild's reputation. Seal absorbed this information, adding that since it was a designated request, they would need to complete the official process for it to be recorded as an achievement with the guild. Marco then asked Mason if that arrangement was all right. She listens, stunned, as Mason clarifies the payment details, apologizing for not explaining them properly during their earlier meeting. He specifies the guild will pay 3,000 ruru for 100 pieces of beef jerky and 15,000 ruru for 1,000 small bags of jam, for a total of 18,000 ruru. The sheer scale of the sum overwhelms her. She mentally calculates that this payment, received every 5 days, is equivalent to roughly 2 million yen, compared to the 13,900 ruru they receive from Joshua's general store every 2 days. This new income is so vast that her entire sense of money begins to warp. Her companions, however, are simply overjoyed. One of the other boys cheerfully tells the group that from now on, their venture, which he calls promotion, is sure to be rich, urging them to keep spending their money at the guild cafeteria. Amy, Marco, and Seal shout their agreement. As the children celebrate, Mason, holding a large box, states his need to transport it to the guild. The inventive boy immediately suggests using their folding cart, a turn that leaves Marco utterly perplexed. He leads them over to a strange device, beginning to explain its operation with a series of gestures. Marco stares at the object, only able to discern that it has wheels. With a few quick movements, the device's purpose becomes clear as it expands into a fully functional cart. The boy proudly announces the transformation, leaving Marco stunned and speechless. His shock gives way to admiration. Marco declares the invention cool, and the boy lights up, happy that its brilliance is appreciated. Amy watches their sudden, shared excitement, puzzled by their behavior. Their enthusiasm catches Mason's attention. The boy explains that they used the cart when they first moved in. After a moment of consideration, Mason agrees, deciding he might as well make use of it. He then turns to the children with a grin, offering them a ride in the cart. The boy's eyes sparkle with excitement as he asks Marco if they can really accept the offer. With their enthusiastic acceptance, Mason begins to pull the cart along the path. Amy, Seal, and the inventive boy ride inside, cheering with delight as Mason calls back, reminding them to hold on tight so they don't fall out. He thanks the children for the use of their cart, remarking on its handiness after they completed the delivery to the Hunters Guild and returned home. The children cheerfully reply that he is welcome. With that task complete, he pauses, trying to recall if there was anything else on his mind. He then remembers something he'd been wondering about and turns to Amy, pointing towards a large object in the distance and asking for an explanation. In response, she reveals a massive trampoline, explaining that it's a plaything for bouncing up and down. The sheer size of the object leaves him momentarily stunned. She proudly elaborates that she used her imagination creation ability to build the large outdoor trampoline the day before, wanting to make their new garden a fun place. The item itself is valued at 225,000 yen. Seal and Marco eagerly add to her explanation, both exclaiming how much fun it is and how high one can bounce inside it. Their enthusiasm is met with a skepticism. He questions if an activity that consists of just bouncing can truly be enjoyable. Sensing his doubt, Amy encourages him to try it. He hesitates, reasoning that as an adult he shouldn't get carried away, but ultimately decides he ought to inspect the thing the child created. The moment he steps on, however, his reservations vanish. He is thrown into the air, arms and legs splayed in pure, unadulterated joy, letting out a gleeful shout. His face is a mask of pure exhilaration as he continues to bounce, his gruff exterior completely replaced by childlike delight. He continued to bounce with abandon, and Amy watched, glad that even Master San was having fun. She mentally reviewed her powers usage for the day. She gets 3 uses of imagination creation daily. Setting one aside for Joshua's delivery, tomorrow left her with 1 more use. As part of her fun garden project, she decided her next item would be another classic piece of park equipment. Her attempt, however, seemed to fail. Realizing that her initial idea wouldn't work, she concluded she would have to pick something cheaper. Mason paused his bouncing, looking over with a quizzical expression as her power fizzled. With a new focus, she activated her imagination creation again. A large playground slide, valued at 298,000 yen, materialized in a brilliant flash of light. She threw her arms out, cheering that she had made it, while Mason stared with a wide, stunned eye at the sudden appearance of the massive structure. The successful creation prompted a moment of reflection. She considered that there must be some kind of link between her current level and the expense, size, or weight of the thing she could create. So far, she had managed to make all sorts of things, but the cost seemed to be a significant factor. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Seal and Marco. Seeing the new slide, Seal asked in amazement if Achabai-chan had made something again. Mason, still taking it all in, simply stated that it was amazing. She proudly pointed a finger at her creation, presenting it to the others. "You see," she announced, "this is a slide." She then explained the process. One climbs the ladder and then slides down with a weave. Turning to the large man, she invited him to give it a try. Mason looked at the slide, then down at his own body, remarking that it didn't seem to fit his size. His initial reluctance had clearly vanished. Some time later, a flushed and exhilarated Mason exclaimed that it was a blast. He declared he was glad he came and that he had learned a lot. The children happily invited him to come back and play again anytime. He waved goodbye as he departed, his visit having been a resounding success. Back at the orphanage, the children discussed their recent visitor. Marco notes that Mason had been with them since the morning, questioning if it was truly all right for a guild big shot to be away from his work for so long. Amy, however, confidently wagers that he was probably just killing time. Their conversation continues lightheartedly. Marco decides it's no big deal if Mason wasn't busy, and Seal agrees, remarking how nice it must be to have so much free time. Amy adds that she doubts anyone would reprimand him, regardless of his status at the guild. Meanwhile, Mason, now back at the guild headquarters, reflects on his day with the children. A bead of sweat forms on his temple as he thinks to himself that the experience was far more than he had anticipated. He stands before the guild master, Logan, as well as Ethan and Hannah, to deliver his formal report. He begins by addressing the first matter, the living situation of the group, known as permission. The guild leaders listen with focused attention. Ethan elaborates on their findings, explaining that while the area initially appeared to be just an overgrown patch of weeds, the inside had been cleared and arranged into a proper garden. He details how the boy used fire magic to burn the weeds while the girl simultaneously used water magic to control the flames and prevent them from spreading. The report elicits impressed reactions. Hannah remarks on what an interesting application of magic it is. Irene, the receptionist, notes that while rumors about them had been circulating, seeing such skill from a new hunter is still remarkable. Mason nods in agreement, affirming that the children are indeed incredible. His expression turns serious as he shifts to the next part of his report. He focuses on the little girl's ability, explaining that it wasn't limited to small items. She was capable of manifesting significantly larger creations, prompting Ethan to ask if he was referring to large-scale creations. He confirms this by listing what he witnessed her create, a flashy metal cart that was surprisingly easy to pull, a mobile hut of iron and glass complete with wheels, a massive trampoline-like structure 5 meters in diameter, and even a large playground slide, all manifested right before his eyes. He concludes his summary to Ethan, stating that while it's hard to imagine without seeing them, the items the little girl created were all incredibly well made. Upon hearing this, Irene's eyes widen in sudden realization. She slams her hand on the table and exclaims that it must be true, recalling with fervor that the dried meat she had was absolutely delicious. Her outburst leaves Mason momentarily speechless. Inside the guild, Mason continues his report with a grave expression. He recounts pulling the cart Amy had made, explaining that even with 3 children riding in it and him running at full speed, the cart showed no signs of breaking. He concludes that this is no simple matter. They're dealing with something on a completely different level. Irene reacts with astonishment, exclaiming that a normal cart should have been destroyed by his strength. Mason adds that the frame was made of a strange metal he'd never seen before, was incredibly tough, and could even be folded up for compact storage. Listening nearby, Ethan remarks that it is indeed an impressive cart, musing that he would love to have one delivered to the Hunters Guild. Hannah then asks if Amy can simply create anything she wants without limit. Mason clarifies that there do seem to be some restrictions, recalling how flustered the little girl was, as if she hadn't intended to pick such an expensive option for her work. He continues his report to the guild master, Logan, explaining that even after creating a large piece of playground equipment, Amy was still energetic enough to jump around. It appears she possesses a power to generate items with no apparent burden to herself. Logan considers this, recalling the other creations: a red-haired puppy with extraordinary magical abilities, a light blue rabbit, and a tiny gray chinchilla. He recognizes her creative abilities as seemingly boundless. Seeing his expression, Irene gently chides him, saying he shouldn't speak of them like that. She reminds him that they are well-behaved children. The guild master smiles warmly, conceding her point. He clarifies that he looks at them as if they were his own grandkids, admitting that he finds them very cute. However, Mason's expression remains serious. He reminds the group that even if the orphans possess great power, they're still just children. His words resonate with the guild master, whose gaze becomes firm. He declares that as adults, it is their duty to watch over them and serve as a reliable pillar for their group. Permission. Elsewhere, Amy enjoys a simple pleasure, sliding down a warm surface with a contented expression. Yet, even in this moment of peace, fragments of another life's knowledge surface in her mind. A stern warning echoes within her. She must be especially cautious of those from the church. A second, more ominous thought follows, urging that things must not end as they did for the previous divine messenger. At Madame Mary's medicine shop, the owner, Mary, greets the 3 children from the guild. With a warm smile, she informs them that she is entrusting them with the task of potion making. The trio, Seal, Amy, and Marco, stand side by side, their faces bright with anticipation. Together, they declare that they look forward to working with her. Amy, in particular, is overjoyed. She can hardly believe they've received a direct commission, and for something as important as helping with potion crafting. Her excitement stems from a recent realization. It turns out the lawn they had mowed the other day was Mary's garden. During that job, Marco used his fire magic to burn the weeds, while Seal used her water magic to keep the flames from spreading. Watching them work sparked a connection in Amy's mind. In this world, it seems that fire and water magic are useful for potion making, and seeing her friends use their abilities had captured her interest. Back in the present, Mary explains that the request is centered on Marco and Seal due to their magic. Amy, however, resolves to do her best to support them. Mary then adds that she has brought her grandchild to help, asking everyone to work well together. At that moment, a shy young girl with a bonnet steps forward, bowing her head slightly. She introduces herself as Alice, the medicine shop's granddaughter, and says it's nice to meet them. She is met with a chorus of enthusiastic greetings from the 3 orphans. As they welcome her, Alice quietly observes that she seems to be about the same age as Seal, or perhaps a little younger. As the introductions conclude, Mary smiles and suggests they begin. Seal looks over at Alice with a hopeful expression, thinking that since they are similar in age, she hopes they can become friends. She lays out the plan. First, she will demonstrate the entire procedure, and their job is to remember the steps. Amy immediately realizes they will need something to take notes with. Mary tells Alice to just wait for a moment, and the girl agrees, as the 3 orphans confirm they understand the instruction. She and Marco crept forward, with Amy resolving to carry out their task with utmost secrecy. In her mind, she pictured the ideal tools for the job, a complete imagination creation stationery set, fit for a studious child. Holding the notebook she'd been given, however, she conceded that it didn't feel quite right for a professional job. She decided she would simply hide the parts that seemed too childish. With her mental preparations settled, she joined Seal and Marco as Mary officially began their first lesson, holding up a container and explaining they would start with the powder inside. Mary's first instruction was to pinch out the proper amount. The vague directive immediately threw Amy into a state of confusion, her eyes widening as she repeated the words to herself. Unable to proceed, she interrupted Mary to ask if there was no proper measurement. The phrase proper amount, she recalled from her past life, was the kind of imprecise instruction that always ruined recipes in cooking classes. She clarified her question, explaining that she was curious why Mary hadn't used any tools to measure the powder. The older woman listened with a calm, knowing expression. In response, Mary smiled warmly and stated that her method was based on years of intuition. The answer struck Amy with the force of a lightning bolt, leaving her utterly speechless. She elaborated further, explaining that potion making is all about instinct. It is in that moment, she said, that a potion maker reveals their true ability. The concept seemed entirely alien to Amy. This revelation unsettled not only Amy, but Seal and Marco as well. Their faces filled with unease, and Marco voiced their shared doubt, wondering aloud how total beginners could possibly manage such a feat. As the children absorbed the difficult lesson, Mary smiled kindly, adding that it's impossible to precisely measure a pinched amount of powder anyway. This sparked a thought in Amy. She conceded that Mary was right. With this world's current level of technology, measuring such a tiny quantity would indeed be a challenge. Realizing this, she decided to act. If that was the case, she would simply have to use her own methods again, slipping behind Marco to retrieve something unseen. Through her unique skill, imagination creation, she manifested a complete chemistry measuring set from her old world. Beakers, a test tube, and most importantly, a digital scale priced at 13,800 yen in her memory. With the new device in hand, she nervously approached the instructor to get her attention. She presented the small digital scale to a surprised Mary, explaining that she had brought something capable of measuring even small amounts. Amy then asked for permission to measure the exact quantity of powder Mary had just pinched. Her friends watched in stunned silence. Marco's eyes widened in panic, realizing she was secretly using her skill and fearing she would be found out. Seal and Alice were equally aghast. Mary, however, simply looked at the device with curiosity. She remarked with surprise that something like that had been invented, a fact Amy shyly confirmed. She readily gave her approval, stating that if Amy had another way to measure the ingredients, she didn't mind at all. Relieved, Amy thanked her profusely, and the other children cheered, ready to continue the task. The lesson resumed with new instructions for Mary. Add a rough amount of water, then use fire magic to heat the container. Amy, fully in her element, used her device as a timer and asked if she could also measure the precise amount of water, eager to apply her knowledge. Elsewhere in the shop, Alice listens with a worried expression on her face. Mary finishes her instructions with a warm smile, explaining that this covers the basic procedure. She then asks the children if they have any questions. In response, Seal murmurs nervously that it will probably be all right, while Marco, though denying he has questions, steels himself and declares that he will do his best. Amy observes her older friends, noting their worried expressions. She clutches the digital scale she created, confident that as long as they have it, they will be fine. Mary acknowledges the others' responses and prepares to move on, stating it is time to proceed to the next part with Alice. Just then, a small voice politely interrupts. The voice, however, belongs to Amy, who looks up at the shopkeeper with determination. Mary's gentle smile remains as she gives the small girl her full attention. She asks what Amy needs, wondering if she plans to measure something again. Amy shakes her head, clarifying that measuring just once at the beginning is enough. With Seal and Marco looking on in shock, she then makes a bold request, asking Mary if they can try making the potion entirely by themselves. Her friends react with utter disbelief. Seal, Marco, and Alice all stare, calling out Amy's name in astonishment at her sudden proposal. Mary, however, seems merely intrigued. She agrees to the request, but questions if the explanation she gave earlier was sufficient. Amy confidently assures her that it should be okay. She stands confidently between her two friends, who are visibly nervous. Seal wonders aloud if they can truly make a potion by themselves, while Marco admits he isn't confident about it. She, however, radiates certainty. With a cheerful wink and a thumbs up, she holds up her notes, assuring them that she has every step and measurement written down. Since they're both skilled with magic, she is sure it will all go well. Her friends exchange a silent, uncertain glance, not yet fully convinced by her enthusiasm. Nearby, Alice watches them with a worried expression. Seal and Marco then turn their gaze back towards Amy, awaiting her next move. Seeing her unwavering resolve, they finally relent. Marco agrees with a determined, all right, while Seal concedes, placing her trust in Amy's plan. Their agreement brings a pleased smile to Amy's face. Their sudden change of heart leaves Alice momentarily stunned and confused. Mary, however, watches with an encouraging smile. She praises their initiative, stating that trying things for oneself is a good idea. She then informs the children that she will be taking a break, giving them the space to work. Amy eagerly acknowledges her instructions. With their task set, she consults her notes and quickly forms a plan. Realizing that her friends can't read the numerals for the measurements, she understands it's up to her to direct them precisely. She decides to handle the measuring of the powdered ingredients herself first. Turning to her first assistant, she instructs Seal to use her water magic, carefully directing her to pour water into a beaker up to a designated line. Seal confirms the order, and a sphere of water forms above the container. She then turns to Marco, giving him a similar command, to heat the water with his fire magic, but with the crucial instruction to stop the moment she gives the word. He eagerly accepts his role, and a flame ignites beneath the beaker. The potion-making process, guided by Amy, concluded with remarkable speed and efficiency. Alice, who had been observing, watched with a worried expression, a bead of sweat trickling down her face. Their combined efforts resulted in a single, finished bowl of potion. Amy, Seal, and Marco cheered together, celebrating their success. Their initial joy, however, was tempered with doubt. Seal observed that the color looked different from the potions Mary usually made, questioning if they had done it correctly. Marco, meanwhile, simply seemed relieved they had managed to finish it at all, while Amy maintained a look of quiet confidence. Seal's uncertainty reached Alice, who immediately began to panic. Realizing the color was indeed different, she worried aloud, asking if they had messed up the recipe. Anxious for an expert opinion, she presented the finished potion to Mary. Alice explained that while they had managed to make it, the color seemed a bit strange. Mary accepted the bowl with a kind smile. The color? She repeated thoughtfully, bringing it closer for inspection. Let me see. As she examined the contents, her smile vanished, replaced by a look of intense concentration. The sudden shift caused Alice to tense up, her eyes wide with fear. Her gaze narrowed, scrutinizing the potion with a seriousness that made Alice's heart pound. The air grew thick with tension as Mary continued her silent assessment. Then, Mary's expression shifted again, this time to one of pure shock. Alice, who had been bracing for bad news, could only stare back, completely bewildered by the unexpected reaction. Her eyes widened as she held the bowl. Amazing, she declared, her voice filled with disbelief. She proclaimed it a good potion, noting its deep color and that it was brimming with mana. She continued her analysis, musing that the magic water used must have been packed with mana. Furthermore, she noted the fire magic processing was handled so expertly that almost no mana was lost. Her technical explanation left Seal and Marco momentarily stunned, unable to fully grasp the details as she glanced their way. A wide, encouraging smile spread across her face as she declared that both of them had a bright future ahead. The praise struck Seal with dazzling force, the very idea of a bright future lighting up her eyes. She elaborated, stating with certainty that anyone capable of creating such an effective potion was sure to succeed as a mage. The word succeed echoed in Seal's mind, filling her with overwhelming hope. Overcome with emotion, Seal could only manage a flustered laugh while Marco stammered his thanks. In the background, Amy celebrated enthusiastically, overjoyed for her older siblings. The celebratory mood was cut short as both Seal and Marco turned, their expressions shifting to surprise as they looked at Alice, who now stood between them with a look of intense resolve. Her face flushed with earnestness. Alice made a heartfelt plea, asking if she could please join them in making potions from now on. Mary immediately agreed, calling a great idea. She decided then and there to entrust the potion making to all the youngsters, freeing herself up to handle other tasks in the shop. With the decision made, Seal warmly took Alice's hands, welcoming her to the team. Marco added his own enthusiastic encouragement, looking forward to working together, while Alice shyly accepted, placing herself in their care. A wave of weariness washed over Amy for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by a cheerful resolve. It was time for her to help again, and she was ready. She felt a wave of drowsiness wash over her. While she had been concentrating on taking notes, giving instructions, and overseeing the measurements, she had completely drained her 5-year-old body's energy reserves. A critical thought surfaced through the haze of fatigue. Only she could understand the Arabic numerals on the modern measuring tools. The exhaustion was overwhelming, causing her small frame to sway unsteadily. Pushing through her weariness, she presented a notebook to Marco and Seal. She explained that the book contained a chart she had made, converting the 4 numbers on the tools into a system they could understand. She continued, her voice heavy with sleep, telling them that by using the chart and the instructions, they should be able to measure the quantities themselves. Seal, holding the notebook, beamed with gratitude and thanked her enthusiastically. Pleased that she could be of help, a small, happy sound escaped her lips before she finally succumbed to exhaustion and collapsed, much to Marco's shock. Marco cried out her name in alarm and quickly scooped her up. As Alice worriedly asked if she was all right, Seal calmly reassured her that it was simply time for Amy's midday nap. Marco declared he was taking her somewhere to rest immediately. Carried away, she let out a soft, sleeping sound, completely unconscious. Sometime later, she awoke to find Mary sitting nearby, looking over a document. Mary noticed her stirring and apologized if she had woken her, adding kindly that for a little one, sleeping was an important job. Seeing the woman's troubled expression, Amy asked if something was the matter. Mary's gaze drifted towards the other 3 children, and she wondered aloud if they were still managing to make potions. Mary explained that she had been reviewing the month's herbal supply report, but the small print was becoming hard for her to read at her age. As she listened, a realization dawned on Amy. Mary might be farsighted. She recalls how Mary praised Onii and Neen earlier and comes up with an idea. Perhaps she could give her a pair of reading glasses as a gift. Her thought process hits a snag, however, as she realizes that eyesight differs from person to person. A generic pair of glasses might not match Mary's focus properly. A new idea forms. Using her imagination creation ability, she pictures a desktop magnifying glass specifically for reading. The creation process sends a jolt through her, but she successfully materializes the object, confident that it will make text easier to read. As a result of using her power, her personal status becomes clear: Ami, a 5-year-old human female. She celebrates internally, realizing her imagination creation skill has reached level 4, allowing her to use it 4 times a day. Having already used it 3 times, she notes she can create one more thing. Her attention then shifts to another improvement. Her physical condition has changed from malnourished to underdeveloped and underweight. She sees this as a positive step toward becoming healthy again. Putting her status aside, she approaches Mary, urging her to try the new device. Mary looks at the object, puzzled, admitting she's never seen anything like it and questioning its origin. She explains that the device is called a magnifying glass. She instructs Mary to position it over the report, promising that when she looks through it, the letters will appear larger. Following the instructions, Mary peers through the lens at her report. Her eyes widen in astonishment as she exclaims how amazing it is and how much bigger the text has become. She expressed her concern, asking if such a tool wasn't quite expensive. But Amy, with a radiant smile, simply urged her to accept the gift. She explained her reasoning. Since Mary had told her such wonderful things about Onii and Neen, she wanted to give her something in return. Mary, though appreciative, felt a bit awkward accepting it, but eventually relented. She then wondered aloud if such a gift was truly enough for Amy. Seizing the opportunity, Amy made a request of her own, for Mary to hire Onii and Neen for potion making again. To her delight, Mary readily agreed, explaining that she already intended to make more requests for them in the future, as there were many things she wanted them to learn. She even invited Amy to come along as well, prompting a cheer of pure joy from the little girl. She felt a wave of relief, glad that Mary no longer seemed to be struggling with her work. Her eyes fell upon the delivery report, and she observed that, as expected, it was filled with numbers. She surmised that the bottom section must be the total. With a determined hum, she decided to begin checking the calculations, starting from the very top. Mary glanced over, a little perplexed by the child's sudden focus. Her cheerful demeanor vanished in an instant, replaced by a look of utter shock. A dreadful realization struck her. The calculation was wrong. A sudden, jarring realization strikes Amy. While reviewing a document, her eyes widen in shock as she discovers a critical error. The calculations on the delivery report are incorrect. She stands before Mary, clipboard in hand, but hesitates to speak. A wave of anxiety washes over her as she considers her options. She worries that if she, a mere 5-year-old, points out the mistake, she might not be taken seriously. Her mind races, searching for a solution. Even creating a modern calculator wouldn't suffice, as Mary wouldn't be able to follow the calculation process itself. Then, a new idea sparks, a way to visually demonstrate the procedure. Using her unique ability, imagination creation, an ancient calculating tool materializes in a flash of light, an abacus, costing 3080 yen of her magical energy. Holding the newly formed device, she feels a surge of hope. She reasons that since the abacus clearly shows the procedure of the calculation, she can use it to explain the mistake and finally be believed. Her confidence restored, she approaches Mary with determination. A memory from her past life surfaces. She used to subconsciously perform mental math using an imaginary abacus and even held a level 4 certification. She proudly presents the object to Mary and Alice, announcing that it is a calculation device called an abacus and suggests they try using it. Mary looks on, puzzled by the unfamiliar tool. Mary, in turn, glances at the report filled with numbers, musing that a calculator would be helpful. She wonders aloud if such a thing even exists, her curiosity piqued by the device in Amy's hands. Amy watches her, hopeful that she'll listen. The demonstration begins. Amy patiently explains the principles of the abacus, showing Mary how the upper and lower beads are used to represent numbers and perform calculations. Mary listens intently, beginning to understand. Mary takes the abacus herself, examining its construction. She expresses her fascination, remarking on how well-made and interesting it is. As Mary inspects it, Amy adds that she noticed something important while trying it out just now. She points to the document, explaining that there appears to be a miscalculation. After a few quick movements of the beads on the abacus, Mary's eyes widen in shock. She confirms that Amy is absolutely right. The figures are definitely wrong. Her initial surprise melts into a warm, appreciative smile. She praises the little girl for spotting the mistake, affectionately calling her Achabai-chan. Amy lets out a happy, slightly bashful laugh in response. Beaming from the praise, she asks if Mary likes the abacus and enthusiastically offers it to her as a gift. Mary, examining the tool, marvels at how handy this calculator is. The shop owner looks up, surprised, asking if she is sure it's okay. Amy nods firmly, explaining that it's her way of saying thank you for the compliment. A profound sense of happiness washes over her. She realizes that, apart from Marco and Seal, this is the first time she's had such a long, one-on-one conversation with someone. The feeling is so wonderful it makes her want to give gifts. Her thoughts then shift to the other children working nearby. She turns and calls out cheerfully, asking everyone how the potion making is going. The young boy in suspenders replies enthusiastically that they've managed to make a lot. Alice adds that while measuring the powder was tricky, they managed to get it done. She then turns her attention specifically to the quiet girl. "How is it for you, Alice John?" she asks. For a moment, Alice is silent, her face cast in shadow as she looks down. Suddenly, Alice's head snaps up, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. She declares with a rush of emotion that she was able to do it all by herself, admitting she had always relied on her grandmother to measure ingredients before. Leaning in, Amy earnestly tells her that if she measures carefully and follows the steps, she can probably make the same thing consistently. Alice agrees, realizing that this newfound precision is exactly what's so incredible. She excitedly explains the amazing part. Even someone who isn't a seasoned apothecary, like Alice's grandmother, can now measure ingredients perfectly. With this, they can produce the exact same thing every single time. The implication of her words stuns Alice, who grabs the smaller girl and begins shaking her, shouting in disbelief. Amy, dizzy from the motion, can only wonder where this side of Alice's personality came from. As the shaking stops, a profound realization dawns on Alice. Her eyes go wide and vacant as a single thought crystallizes in her mind. She can make potions on her own. The words echo, filling her entire being. Her own creations. This thought triggers a flood of memories. Alice recalls her family's legacy, a long line of well-known apothecaries, including her own parents. She remembers her father, who was skilled with fire magic, always patting her head gently. She remembers her mother, who was good with water magic, and her kind, constant smile. The memory darkens with the painful truth that she will never see her beloved mother and father again. Their lives were cut short 4 years ago. While traveling to the royal capital to make a delivery, the carriage they were riding in fell from a cliff. This tragedy fuels her current ambition. She is learning everything she can from her grandmother to one day take over the medicine shop, a place filled with memories of her parents. Back in the present, Mary watches as Alice explains her dream. She is working hard to become a fine apothecary, so that even in heaven, her mother and father will know the name Apothecary Alice. But she trails off. There had always been an obstacle. She recalled her persistent frustration, admitting to herself that even when she followed her grandmother's instructions precisely, she still couldn't make potions properly. Her grandmother would always sigh and say that a certain part of the process simply came down to talent, implying there was nothing more to be done. This cycle of failure repeated itself every single day, a constant and demoralizing routine. Looking back, those 4 years felt lonely and dim, filled with a sense of hopelessness. Then, everything changed with the arrival of a trio of young hunters, whom her grandmother had specifically requested. They announced cheerfully that they were looking forward to working with her. She observed them closely, a soft-mannered girl about her age who was skilled in water magic, and a cheerful-looking boy, older than her, who was good at fire magic. And with them was a tiny child who, unlike the others, seemed unable to use magic at all. They had arrived while her grandmother was demonstrating how to make potions. During the lesson, the little girl began doing something unexpected. She kept interrupting her grandmother's explanation to meticulously weigh each type of powdered herb and record the measurements. Alice was baffled. She couldn't tell when or where the girl had pulled out those strange tools, the likes of which she had never seen before. She realized the little girl was doing something completely different from her and her grandmother's usual methods. The child carefully noted everything, from mana water quantities to the duration of the fire magic. Alice recalled the girl's confident words after the demonstration. Just one attempt would be enough. She remembers the moment clearly. Amy, looking up with wide, determined eyes, made a simple request that left both Alice and the orphan boy stunned. Could they try making the potion by themselves? Recalling her own doubts, she admits she didn't think they would be able to succeed. Mary, listening to the story, expressed her own surprise at the time, calling out Amy's nickname, Achabai-chan. She explained to Mary that despite her own 4 years of failure under her guidance, she felt she had to agree. For some reason, both she and the boy had put their faith in the little girl's confidence. If Amy said they could do it, then they would try. The result of that decision was staggering. Mary's face was a mask of disbelief as she held the finished product. To her utter surprise, the 3 children had not only completed the potion, but had created a rich, high-grade one. Upon seeing what they had made, Mary praised the 2 older children for their magical abilities, telling them both that they had a bright future ahead of them. She specifically commended the boy for his ability to control a stable magical flame, and Alice for her abundant mana and her skill in creating magic-infused water that didn't damage the delicate materials. Alice remembers thinking that they were indeed incredible. But that wasn't the whole story. The most impressive one, she knew, was actually the little girl. It wasn't just Amy herself. Alice realized with a jolt that Amy's measuring tools and instruction manual were even more amazing than their own innate talents. The thought struck her with the force of a revelation. If she had those tools, then even without Mary's guidance, she could succeed. She continued her story, recalling how, with this new understanding, she had asked to join the others in making potions. Mary and the orphan boy had welcomed her warmly, looking forward to working together. And just like that, working alongside them, she was finally able to create a potion something she had never managed even with her own grandmother's help. The success was overwhelming. Tears of relief streamed down her face as the reality sank in. After 4 long years of constant failure, she had finally made one. It wasn't just a single success, either. No matter how many she attempted, she never failed again. Each bowl of potion looked identical to the last, a testament to the method's consistency. This stood in stark contrast to the traditional ways she knew. Her grandmother, for instance, decided the proportions of ingredients purely by intuition, starting with a single pinch and basing all subsequent measurements on that initial, imprecise amount. She explained that this was the traditional way apothecaries had been taught by their masters for generations. The entire process was based on intuition and ambiguity, what her grandmother simply referred to as a matter of talent. But Amy's approach was completely different. Instead of relying on instinct, the little girl measured and recorded each ingredient with exacting precision. It was through this method, so utterly unlike the traditional ways of apothecaries, that Amy had managed to create a perfect potion. Alice realized the profound implications. With Amy's method, it was possible to make the same potion over and over at any time. It could even eliminate the frustrating fluctuations in quality, where some batches turn out better or worse, depending on the day. The potential was staggering. However, as she considered this, a sudden, jarring thought struck her, her eyes widening in shock. She stared at the image of the measuring tool in her mind, a piece of equipment unlike any she had ever seen. It could measure even the tiniest amounts, down to a single pinch, with a precision she had never thought possible. She finally understood why the tools Achabai-chan had brought felt so amazing. The scale, the beaker, the timer. They functioned with such accuracy they seemed almost enchanted. A powerful desire seized her, her eyes wide with a sudden, desperate thought. She wanted them. She absolutely wanted them. But her hope was immediately crushed by a sobering reality. Those tools belonged to Achabai-chan and the others. Once they leave, she would return to the days where she couldn't make potions on her own. The praise she had received for her success now fell hollow. She clenched her hands in distress, lamenting that she didn't own any of those instruments. Her quiet turmoil caught Amy's attention, who turned and called out her name. The little girl looked up at her with a steady gaze, stating simply that her worry was not a problem at all. With a bright, cheerful expression, she announced that they would leave all the measuring tools they had used that day at the shop. The offer rendered Alice completely speechless, a small sound of disbelief escaping her lips. She then explained that since they came to help as part of a designated request, she believed the tools should only be used there. She beams, explaining that this is why she intends to give everything to Alice, presenting a notebook as part of the gift. She then glances at her 2 companions, asking if they are all right with her decision. The 2 children smile warmly in response, assuring her that of course they are. They clarify that the items belong to Amy, so whatever she decides is perfectly fine with them. Despite their easy agreement, Alice remains worried, stammering that the equipment looks incredibly expensive. She asks Amy again if she is truly certain about this. Amy closes her eyes thoughtfully, considering the point. Instead of dwelling on the cost, Amy looks up with a gentle smile and makes a different request, for Alice to come and play with them next time. The simple request catches Alice completely off guard. She stares, trying to understand the implication of the offer. Seeing her hesitation, Amy's face breaks into a brilliant, heartfelt smile as she declares that they want her to be their friend. Her declaration is immediately and enthusiastically seconded by the young boy, who exclaims that it's a great idea. The combined, earnest offers of friendship leave Alice utterly speechless, her eyes wide with shock. His excitement bubbles over as he joyfully shouts about gaining a female friend, urging Alice to get along with them. As he celebrates the new bond, Alice remains frozen, her wide eyes reflecting the overwhelming kindness she has just been shown. She clutched the notebook tightly, her gaze fixed on the small girl who had just offered her friendship. Amy held her hand, waiting for a response. Tears welled in her eyes, her expression transforming into one of pure, unadulterated joy. With a happy blush, she accepted their offer. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the notebook, a physical token of this new, unexpected bond. She then pulled it close, hugging it to her chest, as if it were the most precious treasure she had ever received. The display of emotion caught Mary's attention. Overcome with happiness, she clasped her hands together, remarking with a smile that Alice had finally made some friends. Alice, surprised by her sudden appearance, called out to the woman she called Grandma. Mary confessed that she had been worried. She explained that Alice was always so focused on her apothecary training that she had never seen her simply having fun with anyone else. The revelation left Alice momentarily stunned. Beaming with relief and joy, Mary declared how glad she was, calling it a day full of wonderful things. Alice, still processing everything, looked on with a flustered expression. To ensure the new friends could see each other again, Mary devised a plan. She told the children she would continue to send designated requests to the guild as a pretense for them to visit. Amy roared her enthusiastic approval. The little girl was ecstatic. In the midst of all her plans and efforts, she had somehow made her very first friend. The following day, outside the Hunters Guild, the children were still buzzing with excitement. Seal expressed her happiness at having made a new friend, while Marco suggested they should invite Alice to their house. Amy, thrilled by the idea, could hardly wait for the chance to play together. She arrived at the Hunters Guild with her two friends, the orphan boy and Alice, in tow. Dressed in her new clothes, she spotted the familiar receptionist at the counter and waved happily, beginning to call out a cheerful greeting. Irene-san, good morn. Her words were cut short. The receptionist, Irene, whipped around with a gasp, her eyes wide and pupils constricted in sheer shock. Seeing the woman's startling reaction, Amy's smile vanished instantly. A jolt of concern ran through her as she took in Irene's distressed state, and she called out her name again, her voice now laced with alarm. Irene-san. At the guild, Amy spots the receptionist, Irene, who looks utterly worn out, with dark circles under her eyes and a drained expression. Seeing her condition, Amy and the other children stare in concern, wondering aloud what could have possibly happened to her. From behind them, the cafeteria cook, Mason, announces that he is to blame for Irene's state, leaving Amy completely bewildered. He clarifies that, judging from the completion report, it seems Amy was the one who created all sorts of things at her job site the day before. He continues, explaining that since the Hunter Guild is officially backing her, it's their responsibility to check everything she creates, which can have a huge impact on her workload. The cook recounts how Irene went to the site to inspect the items and was met with such a vast quantity of creations that she couldn't even begin to comprehend them all. He lists off some of the baffling items: a stationary set, a chemistry measuring set, a desktop magnifier, and an abacus. With two whole sets of such unfamiliar things, the sheer quantity was overwhelming, resulting in a mountain of paperwork for the report. He concludes by suggesting Amy should offer a brief apology. The realization hits Amy hard. She understands she made the guild lady do overtime and feels terrible, wondering how she can make it up to Irene in a mature way. Her guilt quickly shifts to resolve, deciding that now is the moment to honor a promise she made. She thinks of alcohol as the perfect gift. In a flash of light, she uses her imagination creation ability to manifest a bottle of Zakiyama single malt whiskey, valued at 10,000 yen. She stands before Marco and Seal, presenting the box she created. Marco, with his hands on his hips, asks what she made this time, while Seal wonders what's inside. With a proud expression, Amy explains that it's a gift for Irene, an adult-level way to smooth things over. Hearing this, Seal's eyes widen with excitement. She misunderstands, exclaiming that it must be a golden treat. Her excitement quickly fades as Amy clarifies the situation. The young girl apologizes to Seal for getting her hopes up, explaining that although it's called a treat, it's alcoholic and therefore off-limits for them. Seal's expression droops in disappointment, but her disappointment is fleeting. Seal's bright demeanor returns in an instant, and she readily agrees to the plan. She suggests that after they give the gift to Irene, they should ask if there's a candy shop nearby. Following her suggestion, they make their way to the Hunters Guild. Inside, Irene looks up from her work, appearing startled and a little weary as she sees the children approaching her desk. In response to the receptionist's attention, Amy offers a deep, formal bow. She sincerely apologizes for all the trouble she caused the previous day. Irene's expression softens into a strained smile. She reassures the children that it's fine, as the Hunters Guild supports them. However, she requests that from now on, Amy report her various creations and provide explanations for them. Amy nods, promising to be more careful. With the apology accepted, Marco steps forward, presenting the box that was too heavy for Amy to carry. He explains that as a token of their apology for yesterday's events. Irene looks on, puzzled by the offering. She elaborates with a cheerful smile, calling it a golden-colored treat. Irene repeats the word treat with a look of confusion. Amy quickly clarifies that while it's not made of gold, it is alcohol. Her explanation concludes with a serious, knowing look. It is, she states, a treatment specifically for adults. The statement hangs in the air, leaving Irene utterly stunned and wide-eyed at the implication. She advises the flustered receptionist to wait until she's alone before opening the gift, cryptically adding that it's something others shouldn't see. Her words send Irene into a state of panic shock. The receptionist holds the bottle, her eyes wide with disbelief as a brilliant, star-filled light seems to radiate from the object in her hands. She struggles to comprehend the sight, her mind racing. Could it truly be alcohol? She had never seen such a thing before. Beside her, Amy simply confirms her unspoken question. Her thoughts crystallize into a stunning realization. This wasn't just any alcohol. It was the legendary divine sake, amber-colored soma. The fact that it came in a glass bottle from the child who seemed to be a divine messenger only solidified its otherworldly nature in her mind. Overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling in her starstruck eyes, Irene pulls Amy close. She declares that she has taken the child's feelings to heart and offers a profound thank you. Still clutching the precious gift, she fervently promises to do anything Amy might need, pledging her utmost effort in return for such a treasure. Seizing the moment, Seal steps forward and asks the now highly obliging receptionist if she happens to know of a good candy shop. Her composure regained, Irene recommends the renowned but pricey Theodore's Candy Shop. Marco expresses his relief at seeing her return to her usual self, while Seal and Amy cheer, eager to head there immediately. As they approach their destination, Marco suggests they check the bulletin board first, an activity he has come to enjoy since Amy and Seal taught him to read. Seal, meanwhile, remarks that the name Theodore feels familiar to her. He scans the board, searching for any exciting quests that might be posted. Behind him, Amy watches with a distinctly unenthusiastic expression. Amy, Seal, and the orphan boy appear utterly drained, their faces pale and drawn. Amy speaks for all of them, lamenting what a horrible store they just visited. The memory of the encounter is sharp and unpleasant. The shop's owner, a stern-faced man in a chef's uniform, had yelled at them, declaring that his establishment was no place for poor brats and that they were lowering its class. He had angrily shooed them out. Having fled the scene, the sting of his words remains. The orphan boy remarks that it was the harshest treatment they had received since escaping the slums. Seal agrees, adding that the shop brought back difficult memories, a sentiment Amy quietly affirms. Their thoughts then turn to the Hunters Guild quest board. They recall the details of the quest posted by that very same Theodore confectionery shop. An urgent request for Japanese-made honey. The payment offered is a mere 1 ruru per gram, with the container included, and the delivery is immediate. The sheer stinginess of the offer leaves them all aghast. Amy mentally breaks down the economics of the quest. She knows Joshua's general store pays 2 ruru per gram, and that Theodore buys the glass containers from Joshua for 10,000 rils. By demanding the container be included in the price, Theodore is essentially asking them to provide the honey for free. The realization that he is such a cheapskate fills her with disgust. Seeing the look on her friend's face, Seal grows concerned. She asks Amy if she is considering doing the same thing they did at the clothing shop, hinting at a past confrontation. Amy contemplates her next move regarding the sweets, deciding she will have to rely on her skills again for Neen's sake. As she mulls this over, a friendly voice from a nearby food stall calls out, offering a galette. The voice belongs to a cheerful young woman named Laura. She enthusiastically advertises her freshly cooked and delicious galettes, inviting people to try one from her new stall, Laura's Galette Shop. As Laura continues her pitch, Amy listens to the comments of passersby. They seem unfamiliar with the shop. One person remarks that they've never heard of it, while another recalls that the space was vacant just before. This information triggers a crucial memory for Amy. She realizes this new shop also has a quest for honey posted at the Hunters Guild. A fierce determination hardens her expression. She concludes that this store won't be getting any honey from Theodore. Vowing to never forgive anyone who hurts her friends, she breaks into a run. Behind her, the confectioner, Theodore, shouts in angry confusion, demanding to know how a 5-year-old runt could possibly know about the honey quest. Her friends, Marco and Seal, are overjoyed, thanking her profusely for lifting their spirits. Amy simply giggles, pleased with their reaction. Their path leads them to a small food stall, and Amy notes with satisfaction that this place treats them like proper customers. The cheerful vendor, Laura, greets them and asks if they would like to buy some of her wares. The older children are immediately enthusiastic. Seal clasps her hands, admitting she's been excited to try the treats, and Marco eagerly agrees. Amy then turns to them, formally asking if they should all give it a try. In unison, they all ask the vendor for 3 pieces. Laura smiles warmly, thanking them for their patronage. But as Amy takes her first bite, her expression freezes. Her immediate, unfiltered thought is one of pure disappointment. The pastry is not delicious in the slightest. Seal, tasting her own, quietly agrees with the assessment. Marco, however, tries to be diplomatic, suggesting that he finds the taste quite good. The vendor, Laura, is visibly struck by the unspoken criticism, her face contorting in distress. Suddenly, Seal's expression shifts. With a quick tear, she opens a small packet she had hidden and sprinkles its contents on her pastry, her focus entirely on adding sweetness. Her face lights up with delight after another bite, and she exclaims how sweet it is now. Laura, completely bewildered, asks what she just added, wondering aloud if Seal was secretly carrying jam packets. Observing this, Amy turns to the vendor with a thoughtful look. She notes that this is Laura's galley shop, and then asks if it would be all right to call her Laura Wunchin. Laura beams, happily agreeing to the familiar address. Seizing the opening, Amy bluntly asks why the galette tastes so bitter and crumbly. The question catches the new pastry chef completely off guard. In response to her blunt assessment, Laura explains the harsh reality of her business. With a dejected expression, she reveals that shops at the bottom of the hierarchy, like hers, are only ever supplied with scrap-grade flour, while the high-quality ingredients are reserved for high-ranking members. She laments this, adding that she wants her shop to be a good place that welcomes customers like them, a place they can keep visiting. Amy listens intently, beginning to understand the root of the problem. As Marco murmurs that the situation is quite rough, Amy's expression shifts as an idea suddenly strikes her. The solution she envisions is a pre-made fluffy pancake mix, a product from her past life's memories. She recalls the classic hotcake mix, a beloved treat for children, affectionately shortened to Hokomai-san. Turning back to the vendor, she addresses Laura directly, offering a deal. If Laura agrees to her request, she will reveal the secret ingredient Seal added to the pastry earlier. Marco looks on, surprised by the proposition. She then presents her request, holding out an imagined box of pancake mix, and asking Laura to please make a galette using it. Seal and Marco stare, utterly bewildered by the strange demand. Moments later, the results are in. Seal takes a bite of the newly made galette, and her eyes sparkle with delight. She exclaims that it's incredibly sweet and delicious, with a wonderful texture, as a satisfied Amy looks on. Her delight is shared by the others. Marco declares it's completely different from before and incredibly tasty. Laura, tasting her own creation, is stunned. She recognizes the taste of high-quality flour and realizes with a shock that it contains sugar as well. At her food stall, Laura excitedly recounts her experience with the pancake mix, telling Amy that even the bag it came in was made of an amazing, unfamiliar material. She notes that it seems to be a new invention, recently seen at the guild, her ear twitching with enthusiasm. She then pivots, thanking Amy for the mix before striking a determined pose. With a wink, she promises to teach Amy all about sweet treats and invites her to the Hunters Guild, leaving the young girl momentarily confused by the sudden proposal. Their destination is the large, formidable building of the Hunters Guild. Inside, Amy enthusiastically lays out her plan. They will supply the guild with her pancake mix, which she calls hokomai-sen, along with small bags of honey. She then asks Laura to sell some of the product to her as well. The guild receptionist, Irene, is overjoyed by the proposal. She declares she'll do anything for Achabai-chan, thinking to herself how convenient a flour with sugar already mixed in is, especially after a past mistake involving salt. She addresses the group, Amy, Marco, Seal, and Laura, at her counter. Irene asks if they could also supply more of the small honey packets, explaining that the current demand for items like the popular dried meat isn't being met. Amy agrees to see what she can do, while Irene silently wonders about the identity of these children. The request prompts Amy to contemplate her imagination creation skill, a thought she's had before resurfaces. The value of the items she can create must be connected to her skills level. She decides it's the perfect time for an experiment she has been considering. Turning to Marco, she announces her intention to use her abacus-trained mental arithmetic. Concentrating, she begins her calculation. Assuming her skill is at level 4, she multiplies it by 100,000, hypothesizing that the upper limit of her creation ability is 400,000 yen. She first attempts to create 1,500 units of the mix, a value of 552,000 yen, far exceeding her presumed cap. As expected, the attempt fails. She immediately adjusts, trying to create 1,087 pieces, worth just over 400,000 yen. A profound silence hangs in the air as she focuses intently, hands outstretched, testing the very limits of her imagination creation. She reviewed her calculations one last time. An attempt to create 1,086 pieces for a total of 399,648 yen had failed. With renewed focus, she closed her eyes, hands outstretched, and silently invoked her skill, imagination creation. With a sudden pop, a massive, perfectly ordered tower of pancake mix packets materialized before her, shimmering with residual energy. Her eyes snapped open in triumph. She had done it. The experiment was a success, confirming her theory. The creation limit was indeed her level number multiplied by 100,000 yen. The result of her success left her companions utterly dumbfounded. Irene, Hannah, Laura, and Marco stared in disbelief at the mountain of packets, wondering what on earth had just happened. Meanwhile, at the guild's cafeteria, Hannah approached the cook, Mason. She informed him that the delivery volume for the pancake mix, which he handled, could be increased. Relieved, he wiped his brow and asked roughly how much more they could expect. Back with Amy, she tallied the previous sales figures in her head, recalling that the beef jerky had sold for 99,800 yen and the small jam packets for 32,400 yen. She then relayed the new production numbers to an astonished Hannah. In a single go, she could now deliver 1,086 packets of pancake mix, roughly 4 times the amount of dried meat and 12 times the amount of jam packets. Energized by this news, Hannah declared that they could now sell the items like crazy, without any limits. Mason expressed his delight, explaining that the product had been flying off the shelves so fast they'd been forced to limit sales to 1 bag per person. Laura, equally thrilled, clasped her hands together and thanked Amy profusely, excited at the prospect of making more delicious sweets. Amy smiled and asked if Laura could handle the guild paperwork for the transaction. As Amy basked in the satisfaction of pleasing her friends, Irene approached. She had one request regarding the goods Amy had just supplied. Amy's expression shifted to one of curiosity. She begins to explain, her voice heavy with disappointment, that they had stopped by Theodore's confectionery earlier. The experience, she admits, was terrible, which visibly startles Irene. Hearing this, Irene is mortified and apologizes, expressing her regret for recommending such a place. Marco and Seal quickly chime in, insisting that it wasn't Irene's fault at all. Amy continues, recalling the confectioner's harsh words, how he shooed them away, worried their presence would tarnish his shop's prestige. In other words, she explains, her primary concern is making sure that the items she creates don't inadvertently harm the reputation of the businesses that carry them. Irene's demeanor shifts, her eyes narrowing with understanding. She clarifies Amy's intention. She doesn't want to sell anything to Theodore's confectionery at all. With a firm look, Amy confirms that is exactly what she means. A bright, determined smile spreads across her face. She enthusiastically agrees, declaring that the supplier's intentions must be respected to the fullest. She then wags a finger playfully, reminding Amy not to forget her promised golden-colored treat the next time they meet. The following morning, the three children arrive at Joshua's general store, calling out a cheerful greeting as they approach the entrance. The door flies open with a bang, revealing a flustered Joshua. He expresses his relief, stating he's been waiting for them. Seeing his agitated state, Seal asks what's wrong. He looks down at them with a worried expression, explaining that he and Seal have both received a summons from the local lord. The news leaves all three children stunned and speechless. Inside the Hunters Guild, the branch manager, Logan, addresses a group assembled before him. With a thoughtful expression, he explains that he has summoned Joshua and the three children at the direct request of the Lord. They receive the news with solemn faces. Marco internally confirms that he felt he couldn't act on his own and had immediately contacted the guild. Beside the children, Joshua gives a nervous but polite affirmation to the summons. Inside the Hunters Guild, the staff discusses a recent development. Hannah, the head of the purchasing department, explains with a bead of sweat on her brow that she has been buying up large quantities of the highly praised golden honey. She elaborates that her intention is to offer it as a souvenir to the royal family and other lords. The news causes immediate distress among the other department heads. Irene, the reception chief, notes with anxiety that this matter has become the top priority for the afternoon. Ethan confirms her fears, stating that it is precisely for this reason that the Lord has summoned them. The cafeteria master, Mason, clutches his head in despair, dreading the impending audience. Ethan confirms the gravity of their summons. He calmly proposes a straightforward solution. If there is something the Lord desires, they should simply offer it to him as a gesture of goodwill. The guild master, Logan, finds this approach too simple, remarking that it would be improper to visit the Lord with a mere souvenir. Before the discussion can continue, Joshua interjects, a thoughtful expression on his face. He announces that he has a potential idea concerning the matter, immediately capturing Logan's intrigued attention. He presented his idea, revealing a metallic wristwatch. As the object glinted, he began, "About this wristwatch." The item drew immediate, stunned reactions. Ethan, adjusting his glasses in disbelief, exclaimed that it was astonishing. Beside him, Hannah gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as she marveled at how something so small could possibly be a clock. Joshua lowers his head, his expression filled with regret. He explains that he was supposed to remove the watch before going out, but in his haste, he forgot. The situation worsened. He continues, when an employee at the Lord's mansion saw the timepiece while he was making a delivery. He concludes with a simple, heavy apology. "I'm so sorry." His mistake was born from a heartfelt moment, a memory now surfacing of a young woman, her eyes welling with tears. She had told him she wanted to give him a present, something they could wear together. It was because of her words, her earnest plea, that he had kept it on. She tearfully insists the blame is hers, explaining that she was the one who forgot to have him remove the watch, and offers a heartfelt apology. As Joshua looks on with a pained expression, the young orphan boy speaks up, declaring that they all agree it isn't Joshua's fault. Beside him, Alice begins to cry. Amidst the emotional exchange, Hannah turns to Amy with a serious question. Can she handle this? Nearby, the guild master thoughtfully strokes his beard, murmuring his assessment of the situation. He realizes that if word of the wristwatch reaches the Lord, there's a distinct possibility the man will demand it. He watched as the young girl's expression hardened with resolve. Amy declared firmly that she could do it. She insisted that she had to be the one to do something for Seal's sake, refusing to stand by while her friend was sad. She then explained her only problem. She didn't know what kind of wristwatch to create. She proposed going to the Lord directly to hear his wishes. The guild master, listening to her plan, seemed to understand her line of thinking. The guild master concedes that while it may be impolite, it is far better to present something different from what the Lord desires than to offer nothing at all. With the decision made, Ethan turns to Amy, a bead of sweat on his temple, and asks a practical question. How many of these items can she actually create? She answers plainly, 83. The number stuns Ethan, who mutters that this is an incredible quantity, though he's slowly getting used to her astonishing feats. Amy explains her calculation. Her honey was valued at 480 yen, and with her current level's limit of 400,000 yen, she can produce that many. Hannah continues the planning, pointing out a potential danger. She explains that the honey containers are glass, and transporting them poorly could lead to breakage, which would be hazardous. Therefore, she concludes, it would be much safer for Amy to create the honey once they arrive at their destination. The young girl immediately understands and agrees with the plan. With the logistics settled, Mason, the cafeteria cook, announces that it's time to prepare for departure. The members of the group heading to see the Lord are confirmed. The guild master, Logan, will serve as Seal's guardian. Joshua will accompany them, and Mason himself will act as the carriage driver. The three children, Seal, Marco, and Amy, complete the party. He began with an apology, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. With a grimace, he explained that someone had already taken the guild's carriage, leaving them without their planned transportation. He stood with the rest of the group on the street, expressing his concern that the walk would be difficult for the young girl and the elderly guildmaster, and that they would be cutting it close on time. The guildmaster, however, remained resolute, stating that they had no other choice but to proceed on foot. As the group contemplated their long walk, Marco suddenly had an idea. He turned to Mason, the cafeteria cook, and pointed towards something out of view, urgently asking to borrow that thing. Amy looked on, confused by the vague request, while Mason stroked his chin, a look of dawning realization on his face as he considered the proposition. His eyes were fixed on a large, sturdy handcart. That flashy cart, Marco exclaimed with excitement. Amy, finally understanding, identified it as a rear car, a potential solution to their travel predicament. His request was successful. As Marco pulled the large handcart, Amy and Seal squealed with delight from inside. He warned them not to fall out. The cafeteria cook, Mason, watched them go, pointing a finger. He acknowledged that it was an emergency, but cautioned that they would stand out. He then offered to pull the cart himself when they returned. As they departed, a young woman watched from a distance, a thoughtful expression on her face. She recalled that previously there were only 3 children, but now 2 adults had joined them. Musing on this new combination of children and adults, she realized the situation had become more difficult. As an idea began to form, she wondered if there was any good way to proceed. With a flourish of unseen power, an object materializes from thin air. It is an adult tricycle, a 3-wheeled contraption with baskets on the front and back, a product of pure imagination creation. Its listed value, 43,900 yen. The sudden appearance of the vehicle leaves Marco reeling in shock, his face a mask of disbelief as he shouts, "What is this?" Seal, equally bewildered, questions the strange object's abrupt arrival. Unfazed, Amy simply points and explains, "This is a tricycle." Amy turns to the cafeteria cook, her plan fully formed. She enthusiastically explains her idea. They will attach a rear cart to the tricycle, creating a new vehicle to pull things. With boundless confidence, she offers to teach him how to ride it, asking if he thinks he can manage. The large man, addressed as Master San, stands with his back to her, hands on his hips, remaining silent for a moment. His silence breaks as his face is revealed. The gruff cook is completely captivated, his cheeks flushed and his eyes sparkling with admiration. He lets out a small, stunned sound, his mind racing with a single, powerful thought. How cool. Elsewhere, the guild master, Logan, looked on with a fond, impressed expression. He murmured in surprise, wondering aloud if 2 people were involved. Beside him, Marco's eyes sparkled with admiration, a blush creeping onto his cheeks as he whispered how cool it all was. Their discussion took place before the grand edifice of the Lord's Manor. Inside the Lord's Manor, 2 figures are seated upon ornate chairs. The Lord, Ricard, greets his guests with a smile, apologizing for the sudden summons. Beside him sits his wife, Victoria, her expression calm and composed. He leans forward slightly, a look of keen interest in his eyes. He explains that a rumor has been circulating within the manor, one that has piqued his curiosity, a rumor about someone with golden hair. He glanced sideways at the assembled group from the Adventurers Guild. The guild master, Ethan, the orphan boy, Amy, and Alice, all standing in a line. It was noted that Mason, the cook, was resting outside, completely exhausted from a journey. His gaze then settled directly on Alice as he continued, specifying that his interest also extended to the supplier. The sudden, direct attention caused Alice to startle, her eyes widening in shock. As the tension surrounding Alice thickened, a small, clear voice cut through the silence. It was Amy, her expression uncharacteristically serious as she looked toward the nobleman. She formally asked if she, too, might be permitted to speak. She addressed him respectfully as my lord, but before she could continue, he responded with a warm smile. He readily granted the little one permission to speak and encouraged everyone else to relax. After thanking him, Amy stated that she first wished to inquire about his lordship's desires. She looked directly at the nobleman and posed a peculiar question, asking whether he would prefer something flashy or something more plain. The directness and odd nature of her inquiry left the onlookers momentarily stunned. Before he could even process the question, she raised her hand and declared that she understood. Lord Ricard could only stare back, completely bewildered, muttering to himself that if he had to choose between flashy and plain, he supposed flashy would be better. Acting on her sudden understanding, Amy uses her imagination creation ability. A brilliant flash of light coalesces into a magnificent object, an automatic gold wristwatch, valued at 40,500 yen. He stares in utter disbelief at the device now fastened to his own wrist. He exclaims that it's incredible, a timepiece so small it can be worn. He marvels at its golden sheen, which glitters in an instant. Beside him, Amy looks on with a satisfied expression, stating that she is glad he finds it to his liking. He holds up a hand, still flustered by the sudden appearance of the watch, and stammers that this is quite enough. Undeterred, Amy looks up at him and asks if she should create the golden pot for him next. Before he can fully process her question, her imagination creation activates with a pop. Instantly, dozens of jars of blended honey materialize, each weighing 1,200 grams. She imagines a total of 83 jars, a value she calculates in her mind as 398,400 yen. She lets out a small, simple sound, having only intended to have a conversation. Lord Ricard, however, is utterly thunderstruck. He shouts in disbelief, marveling at how she could manifest such a vast quantity of items in a single, breathtaking instant. His shock quickly gives way to concern for the child. He asks if she is physically all right after creating so much. Amy cheerfully reassures him that she is fine. She then looks at him with wide, curious eyes, asking if he is the lord she was supposed to meet, while internally noting how handsome he is. While the lord remained speechless, his wife, Victoria, gazed upon the newly formed glass structure with pure enchantment. Her cheeks flushed with admiration. She was utterly captivated by its simple beauty. Her soft exclamation of "how beautiful" reached Amy. The young girl watched her, a thought crossing her mind. Did the lady like glass? Perhaps she should offer it as a gift. But then she hesitated, realizing it was, to her, just ordinary glass. In that moment, however, a new idea sparked in her mind. She focused her will, channeling her magic to execute her new idea. Imagination creation. A freestanding, full-length mirror materialized, an object she recalled from her past life as being worth nearly 50,000 yen. Presenting her creation, she watched as Victoria's eyes widened in astonishment. "Oh my," the lady exclaimed, "to think you could make a mirror this large out of glass." With a proud gesture, Amy offered it to her. "For you, my lady," she announced. She stares into the mirror, her eyes wide with disbelief. While she had caught faint glimpses of herself in the water before, this is the first time she has ever seen her own face with such clarity. A thought forms in her mind. So this is what she looked like. This was Achabai. As she processes this, a luminous panel materializes before her very eyes with a soft hum. It displays a list of her attributes. Her name is Amy, a 5-year-old human female. Her status is listed as having poor development and being too thin. It also notes she has no magic, but possesses a skill called imagination creation at level 5, usable 5 times per day. Her eyes widened in astonishment, the number 5 reflecting in her pupils. A wave of excitement washed over her as the information sank in. Her imagination creation skill had reached level 5, and she could now use it 5 times a day. She paused, her mind racing to process the implications. She had already used imagination creation 4 times today, which meant she had 1 use remaining. A thoughtful expression crossed her face as she pondered what to create with this last charge. Should she make another present? Then a new idea struck her. What about something for herself? A young girl with long, flowing hair and a large bow makes a grand entrance, announcing herself as Beatrice, the Lord's daughter. With a bright, confident smile, she calls out directly to Amy, addressing her as Achabai-chan and asking if she has some business with her. Below, Amy looks up, her expression one of pure, silent confusion. Her sudden appearance throws the room into disarray. Victoria, the Lord's wife, sternly tells Beatrice to come back later, as they are in the middle of an audience. Lord Ricard, completely taken aback, can only exclaim his daughter's name in shock. In the background, Beatrice herself simply smiles, seemingly pleased with the disruption she has caused. As Seal and Marco watch in stunned silence, Amy has a quiet realization. This girl is the Lord's daughter. Beatrice, ignoring everyone else, continues her impassioned speech, declaring that it's unfair for only her parents to have something. With a determined look, she insists that she wants something for herself as well. She then puffs out her cheeks in frustration. The sight jogs Seal and Marco's memories. Seal begins to ask about the girl, and Marco recalls exactly where they've seen her before. She was the one involved in the incident with the stew. As Seal recalled the event, she explained that Beatrice had been serving stew. She remembered that the stew even had meat in it, but noted that the real reason it was so popular was because a cute girl was the one handing it out. Beatrice lets out a small sound of recognition, the memory returning to her. She then looked at Beatrice with a blush, asking if she was, in fact, that very popular girl. The direct question catches Beatrice completely off guard, her expression shifting to one of pure shock. The memory suddenly sours, causing Marco and Seal to cry out in alarm. Their faces are pale and covered in sweat as they shout Amy's nickname in unison, their voices filled with raw panic. Their shouts snap Amy out of a reverie with a start. The outburst also registers with Beatrice, whose eyes widen in stunned realization, while Victoria and Lord Ricard look on with shared surprise. His wife, Victoria, broke out in a cold sweat, her mind racing with alarm. This was a disaster. To have done such a thing to the Lord's own daughter. Oblivious to the mounting tension, Amy beamed with a wide, innocent smile, cheerfully concluding that she must be a big hit. Behind her, however, Beatrice's face fell into shadow. "So that's it," she murmured, a wave of disappointment washing over her. Her mind raced, spiraling into a vortex of confusion. Was Amy angry? She had to come up with a solution, a secret plan too. The only way forward was to appease her with a present. But what kind of gift would a girl like? She glanced at Amy, trying to decipher the girl's expression. What kind of smile was that? Then, a brilliant idea materialized in her mind, a product of pure imagination creation. The Maikaniko-san hugging pillow, a magnificent stuffed toy priced at 4,740 yen. She is rendered speechless when Amy suddenly materializes a perfect, bow-tied stuffed cat out of thin air. With a nervous expression, Amy timidly offers the toy to her. Beatrice's eyes sparkle with astonishment as she gasps at the incredible sight. Overcome with joy, she immediately pulls the stuffed cat into a tight embrace. With a radiant smile, she declares how cute it is and promises to treasure it forever, thanking the little girl for the wonderful gift. She dashed away, clutching the new stuffed cat tightly. Her mother, Victoria, watched her go with a strained expression, bowing her head in apology to Amy for her daughter's behavior. Amy, however, was lost in her own thoughts, realizing with relief that her creation magic had leveled up, increasing the number of times she could use it. It was a fortunate development. Victoria's expression softened into a warm smile as she addressed the young girl. She thanked Amy for her time and extended an invitation for her to come and play again. Her husband, Lord Ricard, then decided to conclude matters for the day, mentioning that a nuisance had interrupted them. He assured Amy that he would investigate the matter of her payment and settle it at a later date. Sometime later, Amy stands with Seal and another orphan boy in a grand, arched hallway. The guild master, Logan, is with them, leaning on his cane. Joshua, the store owner, stands before them, beginning to speak. He smiles warmly, apologizing to the children for having kept a secret from them. He then thanks Amy directly, admitting he was quite surprised by the honey and the power she possessed. He smiles warmly at Amy, amending his previous statement. He explains that, on the contrary, a power as incredible as hers is something that absolutely must be kept secret. As he speaks, a familiar voice calls out to the little girl. The voice belongs to Seal, who approaches with one of the other orphans. With a relieved smile, she thanks Amy for helping Joshua. The boy beside her beams, adding his own praise, telling Amy she did a great job. Amy's face lit up with a bashful, happy giggle, her cheeks flushed with warmth from the praise. Nearby, the guild master chuckled, remarking that Amy had certainly made an impression on Beatrice. Joshua agreed, expressing his relief that the Lord had been such a generous man. Seal added her own thoughts, admitting she had been frightened but found the Lord to be a kind and handsome gentleman. Beatrice, with a determined look, then presented something, declaring it was for Amy. She turned to her mother, Victoria, asking if she had noticed the little girl, Amy. Victoria affirmed that she had. Beatrice continued, remarking on what an interesting child Amy was. Her father, Lord Ricard, chuckled, adding that while some might whisper about a dud princess, Amy was, in fact, quite a big hit. Beatrice then exclaimed with a bright smile how truly cute Amy had been. Her father agreed wholeheartedly, finding it especially endearing how surprised the little girl was by her own reflection in the mirror, a memory that brought a fond smile to both their faces. She shakes her head, flustered. That's not what I meant, she insists, though she concedes that Amy is, in fact, very cute. As she struggles to articulate her point, her father, Lord Ricard, turns to his wife with a knowing smile, asking if she had noticed as well. Beatrice finally blurts out the reason for her excitement. It's Achabai-chan's hair and eyes. Her mother, Victoria, processed the observation, her mind replaying images of the young girl, Amy. She recalled that at first glance, the child's hair had seemed merely gray, but there were moments it appeared to refract light in a peculiar way. This, combined with the strange power she used to create things, a power that felt entirely separate from magic, deepened the mystery surrounding her. Her thoughts coalesced into a startling possibility. Turning to her husband, she asked in a low voice, "So then, does this mean what we think it means?" Lord Ricard's expression was grim as he replied. "At this point, there is no confirmation," he stated, though his tone implied the possibility was very real. He resolved that, for now, they would simply have to keep a close watch on her. Unaware of the serious implications being discussed, Amy stood between them and beamed, her expression one of pure, innocent happiness. With a determined grunt, Amy stretches her arms wide, her small fists clenched in anticipation for the day ahead. She stands proudly outside in a new dress, a large bow tied neatly at her collar. Having had a tiring day before, she cheerfully announces her plan. Today will be for relaxing and playing at home. She ponders what to do for the day, considering making new toys to play with everyone. However, she quickly decides against it, thinking it might be a bother to them. Having made up her mind, she arrives at Madame Mary's pharmacy. With a bright smile, she greets Alice, the owner's daughter, explaining that she had so much fun the last time that she came back to play again. Alice returns the greeting warmly. She came to visit Amy's home to play, much to the younger girl's delight. It turned out Alice's house was just on the other side of the tall grass, making visits quite easy. She fondly recalled all the fun they had. They played games like Reversi and used a steel, two-person outdoor swing set that she had created. Amy also remembered the recent event of introducing Laura to the guild, feeling a great sense of satisfaction from all the joyful activities. A cheerful orphan boy greets someone just out of view, waving with a bright smile and wishing them a good morning. Beside him, Alice clasps her hands together, looking slightly flustered but pleased. Their greeting is for Amy, who beams back at them. Alice warmly welcomes her friend. The boy, eager to continue their games, immediately asks if she wants to play Reversi again today. His face falls into a deep frown, clearly distressed by a misunderstanding. Alice, with Amy at her side, speaks to him gently, attempting to clarify. She tells the boy he is mistaken about her, and though she did enjoy their game of Reversi, that isn't the whole story. The boy, however, vehemently shakes his head, insisting that she is the one who has it all wrong. He explains his true intention. He knows Alice wants to move her body and play with all her might. His mind flashes back to a memory of pushing her and Amy on a creaking swing set with all his strength. That was the kind of unrestrained fun he remembered her having, and his invitation was meant to be a thoughtful alternative. He had seen right through her. Alice, flustered and blushing on the swing, realized he understood her perfectly. She was the type to bottle up her frustrations, and what she truly wanted was a way to move her body and play freely. Seizing the opportunity, Amy turned to Marco with a wide, determined grin. "Oni-ai," she declared. "You should teach Alice how to use the trampoline." She was certain Alice would love it. The other boy chimed in with a cheerful okay. She gestures towards a large, circular apparatus with a taut surface and a high safety net. She explains to Alice that it's for jumping up and down, adding that it looks like a lot of fun. Alice peers at the device, her curiosity piqued. "A trampoline?" she asks. The other orphan boy turns to Marco, asking if he prefers this to the swing. Marco considers it for a moment, admitting that while both are enjoyable, he probably likes the trampoline better. Amy, beaming with pride, declares that since it's a trampoline she made, she'll love anything about it. She encourages the other girl, explaining that it's good to move your body a lot. Hearing this, Alice fidgets nervously but agrees, saying that if that's the case, she'll give it a try. With that settled, Amy's mind immediately jumps to her next project, wondering what kind of toy to make next. Her ear twitches as a thought strikes her. It would be good to create something that adds movements one doesn't experience in daily life. A new idea suddenly illuminates her mind. Her next idea manifested with a brilliant flash of light. Using her power of imagination creation, she brought forth a large, spherical metal structure. A revolving globe jungle gym, with an associated cost of 48,400 yen. The sudden appearance of the strange object startled the other children. The orphan boy stared wide-eyed, exclaiming, "What is this?" "Achabai-chan, you made something again, didn't you?" As he voiced his shock, Amy watched him and Alice closely, recalling the unease her potions and the swing set had caused, and carefully gauging their reactions. With a grand flourish, Amy proudly presented her newest creation. She announced that this was a piece of playground equipment called a revolving jungle gym. Her explanation was cut short by the sudden arrival of Beatrice, flanked by 2 uniformed guards. The young noble girl stared with wide, sparkling eyes, utterly bewildered as she took in the scene. "What is this place?" she exclaimed. From a distance, Amy's small voice called out, trying to get her attention. "Beatrice-sama." She smiled warmly at the stunned Amy, explaining that since they were all around the same age, Amy should feel free to speak with her casually. With a flourish, she formally introduced herself. "My name is Beatrice. It's a pleasure to meet you properly," she declared, adding that Amy could call her Bea or Trice, whatever she preferred. Her unexpected request for casual address leaves the orphans completely stunned. Standing amidst the tall grass, Amy, Alice, Seal, and Marco are frozen in disbelief. Alice, sweating with nervousness, is the only one who manages to stammer out a hesitant. She, however, processes the situation differently. Amy considers the fact that Beatrice went out of her way to make such a request. A formal address seems wrong. She wonders if something more like a nickname would be better. With that thought, an idea begins to form.